Yo, what's up guys, hope you guys are doing good. So today we are gonna see, what if Naruto was trained by a devil, and got harem with Kushina, Mito and Kami, part 2. So before we start, go check out the author of this fanfic, TheDemonKingNaruto, link is in the description, and also subscribe to our channel, and like this video. So let's get into the video. Heaven Kami's court. So you're telling me you disregarded the rules, and attacked Hellwing Naruto for keeping the end of his bargain? Which you did so brazenly in front of my own sister resulted in half of the Crusader Legion destroyed. Is that what you're telling me here, Captain? Kami said her words were sharp enough to throw the hardest metal and freeze the sun. Her eyes glaring down on the leader of the force who at the moment was quivering in fright. Megami was on the sidelines watching with a stern expression, as were a few of the gods and goddesses. Yes, Kami-sama was the words from the captain, thinking he hadn't done anything wrong, since he was trying to gain the chosen one's mother from the unholy grasp of that monster. I see, are you a fool? Her words echoed around the court with enough divine power in each word to shake the court, and make the mighty Crusader Legion into a trembling whimpering mess, and made her fellow deities shiver. Her eyes glowed with a languid look within, her face set into a scowl at the fools before her. Kami-sama, were the words the scared captain spoke. You defiled my rules, broke them, ignored them. The laws I set even before you were created. And you want retribution for the law you broke. Your full Hellwing had all rights to attack back when you and your legion tried to interrupt the deal. You should know by now, deals made between demons and humans are set in stone. No matter who they are. The ancient rule never to be broken, yet you did, and so carelessly. Her words make the captain and the rest of the legion go into shock. Kami sighed before sitting up straight, her eyes gaining a stony look. She already had reports from what her guardsmen had done, and she couldn't be more infuriated. They had all but broken her laws and attacked Hellwing. With the words from her sister, as well during the time had all but made her decision she was about to make all the more certain. But Kami-sama only for him to be silenced when Kami fell, but smashed him into the ground with just her glare alone. No buts, I have decided your punishment. This got many raised eyebrows from other deities, unlike her sister who already knew what she was going to decree. The legion though felt confusion rise in them. Punishment. Why were they being punished for a deed they thought was justified? What punishment? The captain spoke, regretting his words almost as quickly as he said them. Your punishment is the most high, second to being killed. I will have you and your men stripped of your rank, title, and banished from the castle, where you will serve the rest of your life in solitude, where you will repent for your actions against me. And to make sure you fools never try this again, I will make an example out of you. Since your punishment is close to heresy, I will treat you as such. Before anyone could understand what she meant, Kami merely raised her hand, and with a subtle twitch of her finger, she caused the coolest captain of the Crusaders to be flung her way by an invisible force, before he was seen floating right in front of her. The shock was present only to be replaced with terror when Kami's cold unforgiving orbs pierced through him, as her words seemed to cause every occupant within the room to stiffen. For your disobedience I will deliver your punishment myself, and teach you what happens when you disobey my laws, she said before she slowly stood up to her full height, before she raised her hand, before pointing her index finger between the captain's eyes. Slowly white energy coated the tip of her finger before she spoke, her azure ice-cold orbs bored through the man's own. Please, Kami-san, no. The man begged and pleaded, but was ignored entirely, as she without hesitation stabbed her finger right into his temple, not enough to pierce it, but enough for her energy to burn through his flesh and bone to mark him. Slowly, as she ignored his agonizing screams, she dragged her finger across the man's forehead, creating a scorched line mark across the man's forehead, which she ran down the left side of his face, before ending it at his left eye, which she with brutal efficiency plunged her energy-coated finger into his eyes, crushing and burning it away, melting it within his eye's socket. Ignoring his screams, Kami emotionlessly grabbed the captain by his head, before effortlessly hurling him into his petrified legion, sending them tumbling to the floor. However, everyone was still stuck in a shocked stupor at what they saw. It was a very rare sight, almost non-existent for Kami to ever hand and deal out such punishment, and to such a degree, but it also reminded them that to cross Kami was the last thing any god or goddess ever dared to do, for it meant this or worse. They could only watch, as she sat back down in her seat, and beckoned the legion out, her tone cold and toneless. Now get out of my sight. While the shocked legion could only nod their heads down before walking out of the court, their honor was gone for disobeying their master, carrying their unconscious captain to seek out medical help for his injury. After they left, the other deities followed, as they too were a bit shaken by Kami's action, leaving only Megami and Kami in the court. Once the door finally shut, Kami's face broke out into a sigh with a frown adorning her face. Megami saw her sister's situation, and spoke. Is there something wrong with Kamini-chan? Her words are softer with only her and her sister alone. Kami just looked up and smiled despite the annoyance in her eyes. No, well, not really, it's just Hellwing, something about him is just so interesting, and I guess when those fools dare to break my law and assault him even causes me to get angrier than usual, she said as her frown turned into a small wistful smile at the mention of that certain devil. Megami only nodded with a smile of her own, as she remembered the devil she saw up close just mere moments ago. To feel the brunt of his power, and see his transformation before her very eyes was something she wouldn't forget for a long time, nor would she try to. After all, the devil was a subject of immense interest between her and Kami. Ah yes, well, all I can really say is that he's a strange one, especially after all the times we've watched him, her face adorning a small smile, as well. Kami just nodded, remembering the times she and her sister watched the strange yet very powerful devil rise in fame in hell. The deities knew she and Megami had watched the devil and had questioned her, and some had just plain thought it was a bit disturbing that she and her sister were so interested in the unholy being. Yet they dared to never question them, leaving the two goddesses to their actions. But watching over him over the years, the two women had strangely developed an immense interest in the devil, to the point one would question if it was admiration, affection, or plain outright love for the devil. They never dwelled on such things, nor did they dare to, but the pegging of such a thing for the two to ever love the devil, the very being who opposes all of heaven, was ludicrous, crazy, insane. And yet they couldn't deny they felt something for the devil. Their feelings for him were strange at best, and could only be described at best that they held interest in him, and kept an eye on him to watch, as he grew into the devil he was today. "Oh, I've got the strangest feeling something big is gonna happen, something catastrophic." Her words make Megami frown. "Who knows, the future is always changing, my dear sister." Kami nodded at her sister's words, but couldn't help but feel something big was gonna happen. And it would shake the three realms immensely. If only the two knew this change would alter their lives forevermore. 60 years later, hell. It's been a small yet very long 60 years in hell, and many things have happened since Naruto brought Kushina in as his slave and made her into a devil. One thing was that Naruto wasn't kidding when he said he would be training her in her demonic powers for the next day. When they arrived, he had pushed her through the same training regimen he did to Mito. He made her do everything to get stronger, just as he did for Mito. And to Naruto's secret approval, she pulled through every challenge he sent at her with fervor to get stronger and prove herself to her master. The one that saved her from her nightmare and gave her a new life away from Ninjinkai. Kushina, to Naruto's standards, was almost up to par with Mito. It would seem Kushina was much more in tune with training, and sparring with either him or Mito made her power jump by leaps and bounds. Mito, though, didn't slack up a bit. If anything, she trained even harder than ever before. Maybe it was because she had someone to train with. Someone that she could actually challenge without being beaten into the ground each time. Or maybe it was something else. Who knows? Only that Naruto knew the two, for the lack of the better word, were the perfect team. Mito, the long-range fighter, as Kushina herself was a close-range fighter. Both worked out their weaknesses and made them their strong points, so their teamwork was most amazing. Hell, when they both fought together against Naruto himself, they were at least able to injure him in their devil forms, going all out, while also making him actually put some effort to fight back. They were at the strength together of a second-level high demon, just under the level of a king then a titan. Now when he gives them the time to gain experience with fighting other demons, their power and skill grow even more amazing. He himself was strong, yes, very strong, but over the last 60 years since his massacre of the Crusader Legion in front of Mito and Megami has made something within him crack, making his power jump each passing day. He didn't know what it was, but did welcome it with open arms, since he knew he was stronger than Lucifer, that he had no doubt in. But why was Lucifer still alive? Simple, Naruto wanted him alive. For one simple purpose, and that was to show him the difference between themselves. In both power and skill. Kushina at one point, as did Mito, once met Lucifer when the devil had come to battle Naruto once more, and saw how amusing it was in Naruto's eyes, as the last time they first fought they were on equal footing. But in that one fight Naruto was toying with the devil, making it look equal, but it was a fake that Naruto had kept up for years since his return with Kushina and Mito. It served his purpose, as it kept Lucifer fueling, and how he wanted to get stronger to kill his former student. The fool he is, and always will be. Though word did reach hell about the Crusader Legion's punishment, and of how they were stripped of their rank before thrown into solitude for disobeying Kami's rule and law. Naruto chuckled when he heard it. It was fitting, really, and amusing, as well, to see how the fools paid the price for their actions. Although if it was him, he'd skin them alive before throwing them into the pits of hell, where they would be tortured for all eternity. Kushina hadn't changed much in appearance since her time in hell, but her attire was more tight-fitting than the loose kimono her friend Mito wore. For Kushina wore a crimson kimono along her body, hugging her hergless figure perfectly, as a black toby was wrapped around her waist, which held her maroon-colored curtain through her toby, as a hoister. Black swirls adored her kimono, while the bangs of her hair were held up by a yellow hair clip. The Uzumaki insignia was etched into the back of her kimono's fabric. Overall she looked deadly. One very deadly devil empress. How many mistook her for the twin sister of Mito for their looks, but different tastes in combat. At the moment we could find both Kushina and Mito kneeling on the ground, panting, their eyes glistening in exhaustion yet pride at their latest achievement. For in front of them was Naruto, standing in front of them, his arms crossed with a giant gash across his chest. His own eyes showed signs of approval, as well. The job you've injured me to this extent, only for Mito to point out her own answer with a smile on her face. True, but that's nowhere near to truly injure you, but I do see the improvement we're making. Naruto just shook his head at Mito's words. True, they did injure him, but the gash already started stitching back together, closing up the wound, leaving in seconds, not a single blood stain. Though to even hurt him was something, for it was impossible to do due to his remarkable regeneration. Alright, that's enough for today. Go rest, you'll need it for tomorrow's training. Which they both nodded at. Though when Naruto cast his gaze from Mito to Kushina, he saw something in her eyes that made him frown. It was sadness. Hell Street of Helma. Walking along the streets of Helma, the village of demons of all kinds, was Naruto, his slaves on both his sides. Demons all parted away from them, or those that knew of Naruto's reputation steered clear. However, it was the children that gazed upon the devil in awe and reverence. It was like the stories they heard were true from their parents. The legendary devil was, as their parents told them about it. The hair, the face, the clothes, everything about him was true. Naruto walked through the street, his face indifferent. As ever, the reason for their visit to this city was for means, as he got word that a demon titan was causing havoc in the town, and was murdering innocent demons and children. But honestly, he didn't care about that. What he did care about was that the fool was using his name as leverage. He heard rumors the demon was his underling, and used that as a way to get away with things he did. He didn't like that. He did not like that at all. If there was another thing Naruto hated with a passion, it was those that used their name or fame to get away with other things. But this demon was using his name to do acts like this that he would not allow. Hey mister. Hearing the words, Naruto looked over his shoulder to see 3 kids with 2 adult demons. All of them were, from what he could tell, the Inu demon. Very powerful demons that could be powerful in their own right, or peaceful beings that wanted nothing to do with violence. Raising an eyebrow, he spoke. Yes, child. His words are cold and indifferent. Mito and Kushina looked on at the sight with curious eyes. It was rare for people to speak to their master, and especially children, since some were either scared of him from stories they were told, or the deeds known throughout hell was told to them made them too awed at his sight to even speak with him. Are you with that big meanie? The little female dog demon asked in a stutter. Naruto raised an eyebrow before giving a slight brief glance to the parents, who were tense before casting worried looks at their children. Looking back down at the children, he spoke. Big meanie? No, I'm not. This made a male Inuyasha look up with hopeful eyes, as his tail wagged back and forth excitedly. Then are you gonna take care of him? I mean, beat him up and take him away from here. He's caused us so much pain. That Naruto just looked at the little child before turning his head back in its original direction. That is correct. Before he walked away, his slaves following in behind him. He never saw the wide and hopeful eyes of all the Inu demons, along with those that heard the conversation. With Naruto, it had only been a few minutes until they got to their designated spot. It was a pub basically, where he and his slaves could already feel the yokai within. So with a slight knock, the door was slammed off its hinges and into the wall, silencing all the actions that just went on in the pub. All eyes were on Naruto, with Kushina and Mito behind him looking upon the wide-eyed demons in cold indifference. Naruto took a step forward and spoke. Now which one of you is named Garrosh? He said, and just as quickly as those words left his mouth, all pointed at a demon that just ran out the door. Twitching, Naruto sighed, rubbing his temples. Pathetic fool, he said before all 3 vanished like the wind, only to appear in front of a demon that halted right in his steps. Its big hulking body froze in mid-step, its red eyes wide in terror, as Naruto appeared in front of him with a sinister look in his purple eyes. They were all on the streets of the Helma, with villagers alike looking upon the scene with fear of what was gonna happen. The demon was named Garrosh Hellscream, who in general was a blood-red skinned fell orc, which dwarfed the size of other regular orcs. This was another demon titan that was known for his brute strength and abilities to rupture and upheave the very ground of hell, earning him a fierce reputation as a demonic killing machine. Yet that meant nothing to the devil before him, not that he knew who this truly was. So you're the one that's been using my name to cover up your crimes, right? Garrosh then right there answered his question by speaking. And just who are you exactly? Cause you know, if you attack me, my boss Howling Naruto will come down here and kill you before taking your little horse with you, it said with a lecherous grin when its gaze set upon Kushina and Mito. Now this was a very bad thing to say, since for one both Mito and Kushina gritted their teeth in anger as their demonic aura came off them in waves. The second thing that happened was Naruto's eyes gained a much more evil look in them, before his eyes quickly gained a slit within. That you foolish child was a mistake for one. Who do you think you're talking to? You say you work for Howling Naruto. Do you even know what he looks like? Well, let me give you the picture right in front of you, for I am Howling Naruto. His words made the demon take a step back in shock once his eyes finally settled upon his appearance. His form started to tremble shakily as the combining demonic auras started to push down on him. Taking a step forward, Naruto spoke once more as his eyes flared purple as his form flashed in demonic aura. And insulting my slaves was your second and worst mistake you'll ever make again. With that, Naruto descended upon the demon, laying down a beating so horrible that many demons that watched flinched and closed their eyes, as the horrible screams from Garrosh echoed all across the village, as his blood painted the walls and flew into the air. Crushing his tusks and jamming one through his chest, he sent the orc through several buildings, before sending him into the ground, causing it to crater beneath the behemoth of an orc. Before the demon had time to even get up, Naruto was already there, his heel coming down, which slammed into the orc chest area, causing a faint crack, before the orcs caved in on itself, while Garrosh's eyes bulged in agonizing pain. Such strength! Soon Garrosh was reintroduced to a whole new realm of pain. 15 minutes later. Once the beating was over, Garrosh was beaten, and bloody was over Naruto's shoulder, as he and his slaves walked down the streets. They were on their way to throw the body into the hellfire pits where the demon could be tormented for what he has done. He didn't get off easy with Naruto, and won't certainly ever again. Too busy screaming for mercy, as his flesh and bones are burnt away only to regrow again, making his pain endless. As they walked though, Naruto kept giving small glances at Kushina, since he had been seeing her act weird lately, strange actually, since she was usually a ball of energy most of the time. That's when he heard something. The mister did it. He beat the big meanie. Was the voice Naruto knew too well. Looking to his right, he saw the family of 5 Inu demons looking at him in either gratefulness from the parents or the Alex from the children. That's when the youngest, a little female-looking Inu, ran over to him, her big black eyes wide in awe. She reached his leg and looked up at him with a smile on her face. "Thank you, sir," she said before doing something shocking. She hugged his leg. This made Naruto freeze up, while Mito and Kushina looked worried at what would happen next. Their master, if anything, was cruel even to children sometimes, and his bloodlust from the little battle might not have been sated. So what if he... Only for the devil to slowly gaze down at the small Inu demon before he spoke tonelessly. "It is of no trouble, he simply deserved punishment for using my name for protecting for his actions, and that is all. Now go to your parents, little one," he said, causing the demon to look before giving a timid nod, once she figured out what she had done before running back to her parents. Without pausing a second time, Naruto walked forth, followed by his 2 Uzumaki servants, though this action had been watched by both 3 deeds, and one being Kushina, who watched this with a small smile on her face, before she remembered her own child. Looking down at her belly, she erupted, as a small tear fell from her eyes when she remembered all the time she spent with the unborn child, the one she gave birth to only to die on her same birth. Though she never saw the frown on Naruto's face, as his eyes were set upon her at her action. Next day, Naruto's residence. It's been a day since their little outing at Helma, and things have been very tense, as of late. Mito noticed how Kushina was sometimes avoiding her and Naruto, and of how she was always silent around them. They both could tell something was wrong with her, but Naruto hadn't said a thing about it yet, and told Mito when she asked him for help that to let it play out. For now. That is until night came did something happen. Tossing and turning in her bed, Kushina gripped her sheets, as she whimpered ever so softly. Tears started to form in her clenched eyes, as her lip trembled and quivered, as the nightmares within her mind kept haunting her every second. "Naruki-chan, no." Kushina screamed, as she watched her unborn child be completely vaporized by the flowing yokai from grasping her head with both hands. She shook her head, only to see another scene of her one-day-old daughter. Her bright blue eyes glazed over, as the chakra of the became too much for her, and soon to Kushina's utmost horror, Naruki's little eyes were soon devoid of any life. "No, no, no, Naruki-chan, Naruki-chan. Naruki-chan." Her shrill scream echoing all in her room. Realizing what she did, she tried to cover it up, only for her face to have tears going down them ever so rapidly. In his room, Naruto's purple eyes snapped open when he heard Kushina's scream, and jumped out of his bed before bursting through his door. Upon getting to her door, he kicked it open only to see the sight of a sobbing Kushina. Walking over to her, he saw she was still asleep, but was still muttering the name Naruki over and over. Grasping her shoulder, he shook her. Kushina woke up. Gasping, she snapped open her eyes only to see the face of her master looking down at her with an impassive face. "Kushina, what's wrong?" His words made her look the other way before she pulled herself up and scooted away from him a bit. Nothing, Naruto saw, though her horrified face said otherwise. Seeing he wouldn't get anywhere with his usual way of speaking, he spoke a bit more gently but still firmly while grasping her shoulder. "Kushina, tell me what's wrong." The woman all but froze at his touch before the proverbial dam broke. His touch alone made her break down. Before Naruto knew it, Kushina was crying into his chest, her arms grasping his shirt as tightly as she could. Her tears and sobs soaking his shirt. Frozen at the sudden contact, he looked down at his sobbing red-headed slave and blinked. "Well, this is awkward." Not seeing any other way to handle this, he awkwardly wrapped his arms around her. Though when he did so, he felt something in him beat a bit faster. He frowned at what it was and pushed it down. It was a strange feeling, but something he didn't want to feel right now. That's when he heard the door open. Glancing, he saw Mito walk in and saw her questioning gaze. Shrugging, she walked over and sat on the other side of Kushina and started to pat her back gently. Rubbing her back tenderly, she spoke, "Kushi-chan, what's wrong?" Only for her to keep crying into Naruto's chest. Seeing she wouldn't be talking for a bit, they all sat there waiting for her to calm down. It took a few minutes, but slowly and assuredly Kushina slowly got control of herself. Yet she was still in Naruto's arms, pulling away a bit as she wiped her eyes from her red puffy eyes. "I'm sorry for that." Mito just rubbed her back, as Naruto kept looking at her with a questioning gaze. "Kushina is no problem, now tell me what is wrong." Knowing she couldn't get out of this, she sighed. "It's just that I miss her. I miss my baby Naruto-sama, my daughter, my Musume, my Naruki-chan. Every time I go to sleep I have nightmares of her little baby from death in so many ways. They won't quit haunting me, and it's starting to tear me apart." She finished before closing her eyes to hide the tears. Mito just looked at her with a sad look in her eyes. Naruto himself frowned before sighing in a bit of irritation. "I was afraid of this. Well, you see Kushina, the reason you're like this is because you didn't live a full life. Unlike Mito here, who lived a good century and 20 years. You died a young life, as a newly first mother, a way that is quite possibly the worst way to die. So it's no surprise you're being haunted by visions from your previous life," he said, looking at Kushina with curious eye. "It also makes it a bit worse that you have these dreams, since you feel you have no one you truly believe will help her. This is what happens when mortals don't live to their fullest, and die so early on," which made Kushina look down sadly, knowing she had died so early on the day of her daughter's birth. "But what I'm curious about is whether Kushina is the subject of her being a Jinchuriki a secret." Which Kushina just nodded, her head still laid upon Naruto's chest, feeling the slightest comfort and warmth from him. "Yes, it is a well-kept secret that she's a. That is how I and Mito's position was kept secret. It was never told of what we contained." Naruto nodded at this. "I see then that your daughter should be okay. If the secret is kept safe, then she should be living a partial normal life, and if she inherited your luck, her life might be better in the future. So there is no need to worry, Kushina," which the woman begrudgingly nodded before falling asleep in Naruto's arms. Seeing this made Naruto feel in an even more awkward position, and looked at Mito. Giggling at his almost nervous expression, she got up before she helped Naruto set her back to sleep. After seeing she was fine, they walked out of the room, still giving her a sad look before she walked out first. As Naruto himself walked out, closing the door, his eyes gave her for one glance with a look in his eyes that showed something. Something none one would see in his eyes ever. It was sadness. Then he closed the door, not knowing this event would be the chain reaction to turn to the three realms forever. But later on, even with her state of being helped by Mito and her beloved master, the force of not seeing her daughter came back to her, and in much more force than ever before. Though she hid it best she could, it was slowly getting harder each passing day. Just seeing her little daughter dead and now ways of calling out to her kept haunting her even more. Now though it finally got to her, she needed help, and she needed it now. She wanted to get rid of the nightmares which haunt her at every turn. So it was a great surprise that, as Naruto and Mito were training on the outskirts of Naruto's residence, did Kushina come out of the forest with a very nervous look in her eyes. Naruto rose and eyebrowed her, as Mito blinked before speaking. "Hey Kushi-chan, is something the matter?" The red-haired woman just stopped in her tracks this time. She stood right in front of Naruto, her head down, as her shoulders shook, her hands were clenched so hard they were cracking and popping under the pressure. "Naruto-sama, I know I've been acting strange lately, but it has been somewhat a strange thing for me to say. It's just that I want to see her. I want to see my child so much, I miss her so dearly." She shouted the last word before falling to her knees before her master. Knowing what she was doing was shameful, so shameful, and especially of her master, but she just couldn't help it anymore. She missed her baby, her little daughter, her Naruki-chan. She wanted to see her, hug her, anything to just see her. Naruto kept his gaze on Kushina, as Mito slowly closed her eyes with a sad smile on her face. That's what's been bothering her. Why didn't she see it? She thought Kushina had gotten past it already, but looking at her master though, she could see the hesitant look in his eyes, as he thought up of how he should answer her. "I see you wish to see her. Is that correct?" Kushina only nodded, not wanting to look up. But Naruto didn't have any of that, so with a slow kneel, he cupped her chin and pulled her face up, slowly showing her tear-stricken face, her eyes glistening wet as tears fell from her eyes. Her lip trembled and quivered each second. "Is that what you want, Kushina?" Which the woman just broke down even further before she spoke. "Yes. I want to see my baby. Damn it." Before she slammed her face into his chest. Hearing her answer, he sighed before giving Mito a glance, to which she nodded. "Very well, then I can do that. I can't take you to her, but I can show you how she's doing at the moment," which Kushina, who at the moment was in Mito's arms, just nodded. "Yes, that's fine. I just want to see if my baby is okay." Her voice strained to the max, as her eyes were cast down in shame for doing what she did. She just couldn't control it anymore. She wanted to see her child, but to break down, cry, and yell at her master. She felt so horrible and disappointed with herself that she only in her sister figure's arms did she feel better. "I understand. I was actually predicting you would ask this, but I just waited for you to ask. Anyway, here we go." With that, Naruto mumbled a few words before speaking. "Akuma no Yona Michiku. Hyoji Mirror, Demon Magic. Viewing Mirror." With that, Naruto opened up a big-sized mirror which viewed the life of the one he wanted to know. He predicted many things when he showed Kushina's daughter. He predicted her living a somewhat normal life, a life where she was protected even. He was dead wrong. For when he opened the mirror, hell would forever be shaken to its core. "Stop it. Leave me alone," was the female childlike cries of the little blonde red-haired girl in the mirror. Her pleas for mercy were unheard, as the people attacking her didn't stop. The girl was at the age of 5, and had long golden hair with red streaked hair. She wore nothing but rags, and had 3 whisker marks on each side of her face. Her eyes were that of the purest blue. It was like staring into an ocean. Though her body looked malnourished beyond possibility, wounds and injuries could be seen among other things. Her face itself was bleeding, as tears freely roamed down her pudgy face. "No? Demon scum. You'll pay for what you've done. Feel the pain from your betters," shouted a drunk shinobi, as civilians and shinobi alike beat and abused the little child. Beer bottles, weapons, kunai, shuriken, and worst of all, katanas. The 3 all watched this in emotions going throughout their bodies. Mito was trembling in anger, sadness, and most of all hate. Her form trembled and shook as tears fell from her furious eyes, as her shoulders and arms shook with each passing hit that was upon the little child. Kushina herself was more on the verge of a breakdown. Her face was formed into the shape of horror and anger mixed in. Her eyes were glistening in anger yet terror for the child. Her arms were wrapped around herself as she watched the scene of the little girl, her own daughter, being tortured. Her daughter's pleas for mercy rang through her ears clear as day. She felt so horrible she wasn't there to help her, keep her safe like a mother should, and tell her it was okay. "Akami, I'm the worst mother." Naruto himself though was acting strange. His eyes were full on the scene with a strange look in his eyes, as his right hand trembled and twitched every so often. His mouth twitched a bit like he was about to growl or snarl something bad. He slowly, ever so slowly, raised his right hand and looked between it and the child in the mirror. Kushina isn't the secret of being a jinchuriki supposed to be kept secret. He got his answer from Kushina when she all but nodded. "Then what the hell am I seeing?" His words were so cold that it made the 2 involuntarily shiver. With that, he looked at his right hand once more. The hand that touched Kushina's swollen, pregnant belly. The same one that felt the many excited kicks from the unborn child. The same one that rubbed and played the little touch and kick game the child acted. He looked upon the child once more to see her tears pouring from her eyes, her pleas of mercy, her cries of pain, her yells of anguish. With that, Naruto's right hand quickly clenched as he looked up at the red sky of hell and spoke. "Do you see it now, Kami? Are you that blind or ignorant of your creations? You precious mortals, look at what they are doing to their savior. They are torturing her, a child, an innocent soul with not a touch of sin in her body. If you won't do something about this," he said, as his eyes glowed purple, as the ground beneath his cracked and shook. Kushina and Mito looked upon him in confusion, as his yokai energy was rising. And fast. "Somebody help me. Please." It was the final plea from Naruki. The choked-back sobs of Mito, the cries, and mutters of Kushina, finally set him off. Like a damn bomb. His eyes then gained an even more sinister glow before his mouth formed into a demonic snarl, as his body just flashed with his rising energies. "Then I will. For those pathetic fools do not deserve such a gift." Within, Naruto broke. An ancient feeling of power rose up into Naruto, his eyes glowed and flashed purple, showing no sign of pupils, before the thin sign of a demonic slit for a pupil formed in his eyes. His body erupted in just pure black yokai with purple streaks here and there, his body hidden from sight, and those of his 2 worried slaves. All across hell, many could feel the massive yokai energy build up, for it was just too gigantic to ignore. The sudden explosion of pure black and purple streaked yokai which erupted into the skies of hell itself could be seen by all of hell. The massive ball of yokai, which got bigger and bigger by each second, made a few so uneasy they would lose control of their bladders, or just die from the sudden expulsion of such yokai. The ground shook, the mountains trembled and crumbled, the sea of blood itself boiled, the sky itself looked as if it was about to shatter all of them. That's when all that yokai, all that power that was just so unimaginable, just condensed, making the ball of energy shrink further and further, as the wild and chaotic demonic energy now did something even more terrifying. It got stronger, passing the demonic titans themselves in power. It towered over all in hell, making many just feel like an insect in comparison. That's when many saw it. The giant shadow loomed all over hell, the source of it being exactly where the explosion occurred. Only when its form shifted and showed its true appearance did many freeze in petrifying terror. For in front of them all was a crimson-eyed apparition, it being passing the red sky itself, looming over hell. It could be seen that the apparition was demonic in nature. No, demonic isn't the right word. What is the right word is hellish, nightmaringly terrifying. It had a maw filled with glowing purple giant razor-sharp teeth which seemed to look as if it could tear through the hardest of divine metal. Curved horns stuck out of its head going past its forehead in a curved pattern. The wings of this thing were massive, all but overshadowed hell, the sea of blood, even the mountains themselves. But the eyes, oh Kami, the eyes, it was like staring into the eyes of a wrathful god. The avatar of death looked to be just within those very eyes. They glowed crimson yet were so full of bloodlust and vengeance that it made many want to actually pray to Kami herself for forgiveness. Deep within a castle, Lucifer himself sensed a very powerful, even godlike energy explosion. Looking out, he saw the one thing that made him scowl. "This is Yajing isn't Hellwing," he said, spitting out the name like it was pure venom. That's when he heard the sound of someone walking from behind him. "So this is Naruto's power, Lucifer, you never told me he was this powerful," was the seductive voice of Lilith. Her purple-skinned body is perfect, as is her seductive smile that could make any mortal man just bow before her. Her eyes glistened in excitement yet curiosity, as she set upon the apparition that loomed over the castle itself. Grunting, Lucifer spoke. "He's been hiding this from me all this time. All our battles, all our fights, he's held back against me. How dare he?" He yelled, as his own demonic energy blasted from him. Lilith herself just stayed where she was, as her eyes danced with amusement at Lucifer's outrage. Though her eyes did shift once more to the apparition, and she licked her lips, as her body trembled and shivered in excitement. "I wonder how our first meeting will be, Hellwing." Explosion sight. Kushina and Mito both looked on at the apparition that appeared in the sky with something akin to fear yet amazement, as they beheld the sight before them. The power, it was so amazing it rose up above the demon titans, and they were pretty sure by now it was up to par with the deities. Though that's when the apparition started to shrink. It condensed smaller and smaller until it got all the way down into the crater. The crater itself looked as if you could place the sea of blood itself within. It was enormous. Only when the apparition reached the very bottom did they see what became of their master. And they did something for his figure that looked shadowy at best, but it struck fear into their hearts when they saw the demonic glowing purple eyes of the shadow loom onto them. Their breath hitched when its gaze fell upon them. They truly felt like nothing to this being. This power was so monstrous. That's when the shadow itself sinked into Naruto's body, showing their master in all his glory, but the wrathful look in his eyes, and the power behind them, and coming off his body showed something happened within him. Something ancient, something powerful awoke, and made him snap. His power was at least tenfold of what it was before. It was like the proverbial dam that held back his true power cracked, and broke after being hit with its last hit. His body was just seeping out of Yaokai, and waves upon waves of his power came off of him. His clothes blew in the wind, as did his hair. The purple glow of his eyes flashed with so much anger that it made the two flinch. "Kushina, Mito, it's time we paid a little visit to Ninjinkai." The demonic tone in his voice made them both shiver in what they didn't know, but there was one thing that was for sure. Their master was beyond irritated now. They have never ever seen him so angry before. But now his eyes just glowed in many emotions that were shocking to be in the eyes of such an unemotional devil. There was many emotions they saw, anger, hate, vengeance, but the noticeable of all was that pure wrathful fury that any could bring forth. But when they remembered the words he spoke, they stood up still, a bit shaken at the state of their master, and jumped to his side. "Yes, Naruto-sama," they uttered, stiffly nodding. Naruto just snapped his fingers before a crimson demonic circle appeared below them. The demonic language was too difficult for either of them to even comprehend, and right then they were enveloped from below by a reddish glow, as the flames of hellfire erupted around them. Soon their bodies were fully covered before they all sunk into the circle, disappearing along with the circle itself, leaving a giant cratered Yaokai-infested land. Ninjinkai Kanahagakure no Sato. Running on the streets of Konoha on her small legs was Naruki, her fear-stricken face with tears running down her eyes. Mobs upon mobs of civilians, and shinobi alike chasing her down with insane grins upon their faces with a murderous look in their eyes. Many wielded weapons of all kinds, many were just in pure glee at being able to hurt the demon. Running around a corner she slowed her pace to catch her breath, blood fell from her arms and legs, as tears fell on the cement ground. Why? Why her? Why was she the one bearing this kind of injustice? It was so painful not having any parents to keep her safe, protected, being alone, as she was with her only friend being the voice inside her head. Why have I done it? Why did her childish voice strain from all the painful screaming she's done, from the beatings she's gotten from the people of the village she lived in? Hey, I found the demon. This way. Her eyes widened in terror before looking back to see the running mob, and right then turned around and ran as fast as she could, hoping and praying she could get away with not getting injured badly this time. Unluckily fate wasn't on her side, for when she ran into the main street of Konoha, her eyes snapping open in horror. For all around her were the many mobs of armed civilians and shinobi alike, all wearing that same sick grin. Looking back, hoping for an escape, she saw to her fading hope that the mob chasing her had surrounded her as well. Quivering a bit, she did the only thing she could do, or of what she only knew what to do. And that was to get on the ground and huddle, hoping the beating would end. Tears fell from her eyes when she heard the many advancing footsteps of the giant mob, and their plans to make her scream. Huddling even more, she whimpered, "Someone, anyone help me please." Her prayer in some way was answered when she heard the many gasps from the mob, and after a while, not feeling any pain, she opened her eyes slightly to see something. Amazing before her, for below her was the slight reddish glow of something she couldn't identify. The Kemi within her mind suddenly gasped. My Kami-sama, this is a teleportation circle used by only those of the strongest of demons. The Kemi ni-chan. The Kemi didn't get to answer her, for the shouts of outrage from the populace rang in her ears. The demon. It's doing something to quickly kill it. Hurry. And the shinobi did, or at least tried to, only for them to the growing horror of many. Upon getting within an inch inside the faintly glowing red circle, did their bodies suddenly combust in strangely colored flames, as their screams erupted from their mouths, echoing all around Konoha. Their flesh melted, as did their eyes. Their bones turned to nothing but dust and ash. Wow, was Naruki's amazed thought, as she watched her attacker only be killed before her eyes in the most breathtaking way possible. What none saw though was that the sky itself was turned blood red in color, as black lightning started to dance across the sky. The reddish circle around Naruki glowed even more before it started to show strange runes, and language none could even hope to decipher. What happened was the words of a terrified civilian. He never got his answer, since the sound of static could be heard before, to all of their horror, and Naruki's growing amazement did the ground start to tremble and shake like a coming earthquake, making many buildings fall and crumble, and civilians all but fall deep within the cracks made by the shaking. That is when they thought it was over, when the same fires that killed the two shinobi suddenly erupted from the cracks, incinerating any that were near the cracks on the ground. Buildings also randomly started to implode in a hellfire blaze. That which lit up the now waking village of Konoha. Only then, when the sound of lightning did one person look up, only to scream. What the? The sky is red. Many look up to, indeed to their fear, see a blood-red sky filled with pitch-black lightning. Naruki looked at the sky in awe before she heard something from behind her. Slowly looking behind, she saw something which looked like that strange fire starting to rise. That's when, to the awe of Naruki and Akemi's tense silence, did these three sparks of hellfire suddenly open up before the sounds of many upon many bats filled the air, getting the attention of the crowd. Following the bats that circled where they came out of in a column, did a red light come out of all three fire holes. That's when, to the horror and fear of the crowd, did the one thing none expected to come out. They were humanoid shapes of what seemed to be humans that were covered in bats from head to toe. The taller of the two, only a foot away from Naruki, when they all came out completely, did the bat's skin crack with crimson lines which glowed faintly. The cracks got more frequent before suddenly the crowd was blown back into the air and yards away from where they stood. Only strangely enough, Naruki was still where she was, her eyes wide and filled with awe and wonder at what she was seeing. For she was seeing two of the prettiest ladies she's ever seen. Their red hair looked so soft and silky she wanted to touch it. The one though with longer red hair was strangely smiling at her. No way, if they're here then that means. Naruki heard her, but turned her gaze at the last person that stood right in front of her. His imposing statue made her shiver. His glowing purple eyes were looking all on Konoha, making her just think Konoha would just implode by his gaze alone. She wondered though who these people were and if they were also gonna hurt her. The thought made her tremble. Naruto himself, after looking around Konoha in just pure distaste, did give a glance down at Naruki, making her break into a shaking mess. When he saw the wounds and blood on her body, made him clench his fist tighter before he looked up at all the squirming humans before him. He could smell their fear, their hatred, and, to his disgust, the disgusting smell of urine. The fools all but soiled themselves. Pathetic. Childish, his words echoing all around the area. Naruki hesitantly looked up at him, seeing his imposing figure. Yes sir. Naruto just walked past her and spoke. Go to your mother. You two have been separated long enough, and your reunion has been long overdue. His words made her go wide-eyed, before he looked back to see Kushina smiling at her. Tears were falling from her eyes, as were Naruki's. Kasan. Her voice was nothing more than a quiver of hope, hoping what she was seeing was true and not one of her many dreams, and not a false reality. Kushina smiled warmly at Naruki before she crouched down and spread out her arms. Naruki-chan came here, that's all the little girl needed before she ran to Kushina and practically jumped into her arms before bursting into tears. Kasan, you're here. She could tell even if she never met her mother before that this woman was her mother. She could feel it deep within her. This pretty woman was her mother. Kushina just let a lone tear fall from her eye as she held Naruki in her arms. Mito kneeled beside her and smiled at the family reunion. That is until she and Naruto heard the humans getting their bearings once more. Who are you? And why are you helping that demon? Shouted a shinobi. Mito just glared immortal before Naruto himself just gave the man a glance before speaking. I do not speak with the likes of your kind, now die like the pathetic filthy mortal you are. With that, Naruto pointed his hand outward at the mob of shinobi and civilian alike and spoke. Kushina stayed with her Mito, who knows when heaven's forces will be here, as darkness started to shroud his stretched out arm. Sensing he wouldn't take a no like she would give him a no anyways, nodded and stayed by Kushina and Naruki's side. Besides, she could feel that Naruto wanted to release some pent-up anger. It was always such a good show when her master always kills. But then, now let the slaughter begin. With that, he gave a glance at the terrified mob and snarled. Daibakuhatsu no Yami no Bakuden, exploding darkness bomb, with that the event which would be counted in history as the most bloodiest of massacres commenced. An orb of darkness shot from Naruto's hand and rioted the mob of humans, shinobi, and civilians alike. Clan members or council members. All were obliterated in a monstrous wave of pure darkness. The wave consumed all in its path, taking multiple buildings, along with part of its walls. The blast was so enormous it gained the attention of every shinobi in Konoha, which all raced to where it came from. Naruki, though, watched what she dubbed Naruto, as the scary man did, and was in a state of awe. Kushina just smiled and held her daughter closer when she saw her eyes at the scene of what Naruto had just done. For before Naruto's outstretched hand was a mob of civilians was nothing more than ash. A giant trench of the explosion's size showed stretching on for miles to miles on end. Spitting on the ground, Naruto's face contorted into plain disgust before he just turned around and spoke. "Quit your hiding, and come on out, you pathetic ninjas." So with that all around, Naruto did multiple shadows of shinobi pop out, many, and Anbu. The numbers were quite many, but, to him, it wasn't even a warm-up. Taking a step forward he spoke, as his demonic aura flared from all around him, cracking the ground, and shattering the building walls around him. Let this be put into the history books, let all of Ninjenkai, and heaven itself know that Konohagakure no Sado has its first ever massacre. With that, Naruto all but jumped at the shocked shinobi. They never saw what came next. Grasping one shinobi's head, he let out a snarl before snapping it. His snarl turned into a cruel cold smirk when he saw the terror-whitened eyes. He looked at the charging shinobi and grunted, twisting the head even more. He ripped it off, spraying blood like a fountain all over the approaching shinobi, before he planted the disembodied head into a sneaking from behind him shinobi into the face, shattering his mask, and practically with just force alone fused the head into the other's, cracking and shattering skulls. Spinning around, slammed his foot into the ground before cracks came from the ground, and, to many of their horror, hellfire suddenly shot up, incinerating them along with buildings around them. Pointing his right hand out in a strange position he spoke. Hair. Titan no Kabushi, Hellfire. Titan's fist, and to the horror of many, a giant Hellfire Titan-sized fist formed over Konoha's civilian district. It is the size of Kyuubi herself. Once it touched the ground, half of Konoha's village was destroyed by a massive explosion of Hellfire. The ball of flame evaporated and destroyed all it touched. None were spared, children, civilian or shinobi. All were killed, none were spared. Men, women, and children alike were not spared his wrath. Soon the corpses of the dead littered the ground, while some were screaming, as their flesh melted from their body from the intense heat. "Wow, Naruto-sama isn't pulling any punches," Mito said, as she watched a fiery ball of doom light up the blood-red sky. She watched, as Naruto just gave a cold chortle, as he butchered more vengeful shinobi. Kushina just nodded, as Naruki kept her gaze on Naruto's form in what seemed like some kind of remembrance of some sort. His cloak billowing in the wind and smoke, Naruto's glowing malevolent eyes cut through the smoke of fire and sulfur like butter. Around him were multiple mutilated bodies of shinobi dead in their own way. The sound of dripping was heard, for upon Naruto's outstretched hand was a dead body of Uchiha hanging off his arm. His hand shot through his skull. Waving his arm, he slid off the Uchiha before looking to his right. Another force of shinobi foolish. With that he faced his to the right and spoke. Akuma Mijiku. Jigoku no Kakaku Shu, demon magic. Skeletal hands of hell, and before the awe and amazement of the Uzumakis behind him, did a rupture upon the ground crack open. Right then a group of shinobi appeared above it. Naruto smirked, as he watched their faces form from hate and anger to horror and fear, as skeletal hands coated in flames of hell shot out, pulled them down from the air and into the rupture. The fire. Oh sweet Kami, the pain. What are these things? Wait, no. The last one silenced via by the bone hand crushing his skull in. Naruto just smirked cruelly and relished in the sounds of the humans' scream and pleas of mercy, as their flesh and bones burned and turned to ash by the fires of hell. He watched them be pulled into the rupture with satisfaction in his eyes. That is when he sensed to his ire another forcing coming from his left, only a chakra signature higher than the others were with them. Bursting out of the streets were shinobi upon shinobi, leading them were Anbu of the highest level, and before them were the shinobi clan heads of Konoha. Finally was the one that made Mito have a twitch in the eyebrow. It was Senju Tsunade, granddaughter of Tobirama Senju, and God Aim Hokage of Konohagakure. Her amber eyes were filled with anger and distaste at the being before them who had destroyed so much of their village. With her were the clan heads of every clan in Konoha garbed and ready for battle, though Naruto just ignored their presence and spoke. Pathetic. If this is how strong Ninjenkai has to offer, then I'm sorely disappointed by his uncaring gaze, shifting back to his normal uncaring one. This seemed to irritate the shinobi that were ignored by him, and Tsunade spoke on their behalf. Who are you? And why have you done this? Which Naruto just gave her a glance, but it was enough to send her into hysterics when his purple demonic eyes set its gaze upon her. Soon an overwhelming feeling of pure demonic energy washed over her, making her shiver in petrifying terror. Snarling at how pathetic the woman was, he turned around, raised his hand up into the air. Pathetic mortals witness the very bringer of your home's slaughter before looking over his shoulder, showing his glowing slitted eye. Before anyone could say anything or utter a single word, Naruto spoke. Hair. Birajinguruk says Shaw, hellfire. Blazing meteor shower. Right then all watched, as the loud rumbling sound could be heard. Looking around, they suddenly looked up to see to the Konoha shinobi's horror, and Tsunade's terror. Hellfire engulfed meteors coming down on them, they being the size of medium-sized buildings. Grinning at their terror, he walked back to Mito and Kushina, as Naruki was still being held in Kushina's arms, but her eyes were glued upon the sky in pure awe. Watch Konoha shall burn, let this be a sign for all of Ninjinkai. His demonic words made Naruki snap out of her stupor and look up at Naruto's form, but when she did, she never felt a pang of hurt come to her head before a flash blinded her vision. What she saw was Naruto kneeling over Kushina, his hand rubbing over her stomach, his purple eyes shining in a somewhat amused light. She looked upon him, memorizing his eyes and face before the light dissipated, before showing she was back where she was before, in the arms of her revealed mother. When she looked back up at Naruto, who at the moment was watching in great pleasure the mortals before him scream and yell in fear. Mito walked up beside him and spoke with her eyes glaring at Tsunade. Naruto-sama allowed me to handle these fools. He just gave her a glance and nodded before disappearing in nothing but a blur. Appearing in front of the shinobi, she slammed her foot into the ground, shaking the area, while making a few shinobi stumble, but it did get the attention of all of them. Though when they saw her, many went gobsmacked, or in Tsunade's case into complete shock. Mito-sama. Her voice showing shock yet awe for seeing the legendary woman herself. Mito just cast a glance at Tsunade before sneering. Don't Mito-sama me Senju. I can already guess what you've done, Tsunade, as your time, as Hokage, and to do such things to Naruki, as low, as your pathetic family. Her words were full of venom, since she could tell that Tsunade had done something to reveal Naruki was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, which led to her being abused and hated. Tsunade flinched at her words and tried to speak, only to be silenced via Mito appearing in front of her, with her being held in the air by Mito's hand wrapped around her neck in a steel-like grip. Her feet dangled off the ground as she tried to desperately lessen the grip, only for Mito to grip tighter. Now Senju Watchmasters, work on your pitiful village watch, as your foolish family's creation is reduced to nothing more than a smoldering crater. With that she turned Tsunade in the direction of the blazing meteors, and made her watch in horror, as the flaming rocks came upon impact with the ground. Boom. Konoha lit up like a Christmas tree, as multiple spheres of hellfire sprouted all in Konoha, destroying it and killing all in its wake. Screams could be heard, as civilians and shinobi alike ran around, their bodies lit on fire, with them too falling on the ground, leaving nothing behind but ash. Buildings were nothing but dust in the wind, leaving nothing but smoldering dirt. Ash, dust, and smoke blew in the wind, as the echoes of screams and yells of humans rang through Konoha, as well as the cries of children. Tsunade watched it all, as tears fell from her eyes before Mito uncaringly threw her into a building, with it collapsing all on her. With that done, she spat on the ground before turning to her master and walked to his location. The shinobi that watched the scene just saw it and charged in blind fury, only to make their last mistake. Fools, Akuma Michiku. Sour, demon magic. So leading dragons, and to the horror of the shinobi, a dark circle appeared behind Mito, and in a blink, multiple black dragons shot out with their maws wide open. Too late to react, their mouths flew open in a silent scream as the dragon shot onto them. Never breaking stride, she walked over to the others and bowed her head at Naruto, which she just nodded before she got Kushina's side once more. Naruto himself looked around, seeing no others coming for them, then suddenly he looked up in the sky and frowned. And so they sent him. Quite desperate, they heard his words and looked at him questioningly before they saw him looking up. Doing the same thing, Naruki gasped, as did Kushina and Mito. For a bright hole opened up, splitting up the crimson sky before a figure could be seen floating down. Naruto just frowned when he was confirmed of who it was. When it was clear to see who it was a man. He was tall, around the 6'5" stature, but everything else was cloaked under a massive black cloak, with ripped ends at the end. His face, as well, was covered with only his glowing white eyes showing boredom. But the real eye-catcher, as the angelic wings upon his back were spread out in a 15-foot span, with them being a dull gray in color. Finally was the giant Zanbato strapped to his back. Naruto merely stared at the being and spoke. And so Kami sends her best of the best when she can barely even keep her own creations in check. Isn't that right, Abaddon? His tone changed to a more demonic tone. Said man just looked upon him, his eyes changing from boredom to a joyful yet curious look. Howling. It's been millennia. How are you? Naruto just shook his head at the man's choice of words. His two slaves and Naruki watched on in curiosity. You never change, but then again you wouldn't be Abaddon if you had, which made a glowing white smirk appear on the shadowed man's face. As have you caused trouble, have we? This made Naruto roll his eyes, that is, until the man's cloaked figure tensed and spoke in a more serious tone. Now what have you done this time to enact the wrath of the deities as a whole this time? Which Naruto just waved off his question in a non-nonchalant manner. Nothing really, just doing a little cleaning up pathetic humans here and there, which made the man's eyes narrow. You mean slaughter like this, right? Gesturing a Konoha's smoldering form, shrugging, Naruto gave an uncaring glance. Yeah, you can call it that if you want. I have seen enough of these pathetic humans to know they just aren't worth living. There is nothing but sinful beings of the highest order, you know that, as well as I. And the man just shook his head in exasperation. True, I will not deny it, but you have angered the court of Kami with this action, Naruto, for you have the child of prophecy in your grasp, and that is something Kami cannot let continue, which Naruto just grunted. Like I care what she thinks, if she's just gonna stand up there and sit upon her throne and watch as a child is beaten, then no, I'll do whatever I like, and I'd like to see anyone trying to stop me, whether they be God or not. His voice gained a much colder, aggressive tone, none of which Mito and Kushina had ever heard before. Abaddon himself eyed Naruto with a solemn look before he grasped his Zanbato. Then you give me no choice for angering the deities and upsetting the court of Kami. I am ordered to kill you. Howling, Naruto said. The devil just gained a grave look and shook his head. You are full. With that, Abaddon disappeared along did Naruto. Then it was like a deadly silence filled the area, and before anyone could utter a word, clang, Naruto and Abaddon appeared in the air, with the Zanbato being blocked by Naruto's Nadaichi. They disappeared once more in godly speeds before they appeared once more on the ground, another resulting clash uprooting trees before setting them ablaze. Leaning to the left, Naruto dodged a sweat before giving Abaddon a quick slash across his chest, giving a long gash on his cloak. Said angel just grunted, but before he could retaliate, Naruto was on him even more with much more aggression he thought possible. Moving to the right, he dodged a stab before he felt pain in his stomach. Looking down, he saw Naruto's fist embedded into his stomach. You've gotten slow. With those words, Naruto pulled his fist back, making Abaddon hold his stomach in pain, and before the angel could gain his breath, Naruto brought his Nadaichi out and crouched with his weapon being held in a firm grip. Seeing what Naruto was about to do, Abaddon cursed. Now I end this with that in but a mere flash, Naruto appeared behind the angel, his weapon outstretched in a manner indicating it was swung. With that, he stood back up and let his Nadaichi disappear in a pillar of hellfire. Abaddon stood there before in a blink. Multiple gashes appeared on his cloak as his Zanbato itself broke in two. What, you were never this strong before? His words came out in a strained tone. Naruto heard his words but ignored them before walking up to him. Grasping his cloak, he spoke with his other hand glowing in a dark aura. Now go deliver this as a message to Kami and those other fools. If they come after me again, I will make Ninjinkai my own personal underworld. Now begging from my sight and become stronger. You've become weak. With it, he threw him into the air before disappearing. Before reappearing in front of Abaddon's suspended body spinning around, he delivered a bone-breaking kick to his ribs. Hearing an audible crack and grunt of pain from him, the angel was sent flying through the air and into the high no Kuni forests, passing through trees at speeds none could possibly comprehend. Seeing him out of the way, Naruto vanished and appeared in front of the three Uzumakis and grunted. Now let us go. I tire of this place, and the child needs some food before she dies of starvation. Nodding at his assumption, they all stood up with Naruki held gently in Kushina's arm, but her eyes were still on Naruto's form, in akin to awe. Mito looked at her master, and still remembered how he talked with the angel in a somewhat friendly manner, thus made her very curious. Naruto-sama, if I may, who was that man? Which the devil just snapped his fingers, making a portal appear as he spoke. He is Kami's strongest of her angels, going beyond that of the Crusader Legion. He in a sense is Kami's bounty hunter. He is the Archangel Abaddon, and at one time a fellow acquaintance, but he has let his skills get rusty. That made her raise an eyebrow, but didn't push any further, knowing it was her master's past, and she didn't need to know too much. With that, all four of them walked through the portal, never to see Ninjinkai for quite a long time. Walking out of the dark portal, the party of four walked out from Ninjinkai. Leading them all was howling Naruto himself. A perpetual emotionless face portrayed upon his masculine pale face. Beside him was Kushina, his second slave, holding a sleeping Naruki in her arms. Her purple eyes seemed to just radiate love and affection for the girl. Mito on his left was looking at the now joined together family. Glancing at her master, she gave him a thankful smile. Naruto felt Mito's gaze on him, and looked to his left to see her smiling at him, rolling his eyes as he grunted before moving forward. As he did so, he gave an ever-discreet glance at Kushina smothering the little child, and couldn't help but feel a small jolt of something strike at his black heart. What it was he didn't know, but he was assuring himself it wasn't anything of what he thought it was. Narrowing his eyes though, he did feel the accumulation of yokai gathering around Naruki, and knew they needed to hurry before the child suffered from the drawbacks of being in hell. And, looking around the area of where his outpost and house used to be, he mentally scowled. Looking over at the Uzumaki, he spoke, Mito, Kushina, come, we must hurry before the yokai affect her. Since the residence was destroyed and will be going to my secondary base of operations. He received confused glances from the two women, as the little 5-year-old girl just snuggled more into her mother's warmth. Naruto-sama, not to sound rude, but where is this other home? Mito asked, which her devil master just gave her a glance before snapping his fingers, creating a portal once more. Walking toward it followed by the two he spoke. It is located near the volcano of Unmei. Once there we shall go into the house where we can begin Naruki's transformation. Kushina and Mito nodded at this, knowing the only way for Naruki to live in hell, if she was to be doing so, was to become a demon. They both knew this, and didn't quite care. Humanity was all but a disgusting term to them. They honestly couldn't be happier to have chosen the life they had now, especially Kushina, as she held her little museum in her arms once again. But what none saw or sensed for that matter was a pair of eyes watching them with pure disgust and hatred for the three devils. Cliff side of the volcano. Stepping out of the portal, Naruto and the group came upon the cliff of one giant volcano, one where the very peak itself reached past the dark blood clouds itself. The two seemed to be marveled at the sight, as lava seemed to run down its shell somehow separated from the cliff side itself. Mito, Kushina stopped standing, and hurry up. Naruto's voice shook them of their stupors, and rushed toward him. Kushina, while following her master, looked down at Naruki, only to see to her growing horror, her face scrunched up like she was in some sort of pain. The whimpering didn't help it either. Naruto seemed to have heard the small whimpers, and appeared beside Kushina with an impatient look in his eyes. Damn it, the effect of the yokai is spreading faster than I thought. I'm gonna need to improvise, he said before taking Naruki from Kushina's shocked form. Then he looked at both Kushina and Mito. Follow me with it. He shot off deep into a cavern within the volcano. Without a second of hesitation they followed him in, not knowing what their master was going to do. They never did see a shadow of a being within the darkened cliffside. Within the cavern, Kushina and Mito had both caught up to their master, only to see him standing in a runic circle similar to the ones he used on them, only this one being written differently this time. The other thing that was different, instead of a dead body in the center of the ceiling circle, was Naruto himself holding the little girl in his arms. His yokai seemed to slowly seep out of him, and into the runes in the arcanic circle. His eyes seemed to glow ever so slowly, as his hands held the trembling Naruki. Casting his gaze at the two worried slaves, he spoke in a slightly demonic tone. Kushina, Mito, things are gonna have to be done differently with the girl's case. It would seem the Bijuu's yokai within her, and the infinite amount of yokai in Makai is slowly tearing her apart on the inside. Her soul itself is being corrupted, and soon will either die or she would become nothing more than a bloodthirsty demon. Kushina, hearing this, almost burst into tears. Seeing this, he spoke before she could interrupt him. Do not worry though, I have another way to fix this, but I will say Naruki won't be human any longer, and will become a devil like we are. To counterbalance the yokai coming from within her, and the one outside pushing into her, I will need to infuse not only my own yokai into her, but my own blood, as well. For you see, the power of the yokai I give her would literally tear her apart, no questions asked, but if I were to override her human genes with my blood, it will change her into a devil like myself. Thus her body would survive the transfer. Hearing that, they both had to nod at that. They knew the only way for the little girl to survive was to become a demon. It was a miracle she wasn't already torn apart by the energies within Makai, but both guessed the chemi within her was protecting her in a way, even if it was hurting her a little in the process. Kushina, gaining her words, looked at her master with a determined look in her eyes. Master, please save my little girl. I don't care what happens, I just want her to live. Where I can hold her in my arms, and protect her like I should have done when she was just born. Hearing this, Naruto turned back to the little girl in his arms, and sighed. Very well then, Uzumaki Naruki shall be saved from a fate worse than death or hell's torture themselves. Let her be transformed, and become my daughter in all but flesh. Let her be born anew. He shouted before his eyes practically lit on fire. Purple flames engulfed his eyes, as blood started to pour from his eyes and body. It all but soaking the little girl in his arms, and the blood touching the runic circle he stood upon. Looking down at the girl, he set her down in the puddle of blood before he kneeled down at her side, and spoke a spell that he had yet to ever, and thought he would never use. The Kuma Majiku. The Kuma no Kai Tenzum, demon magic. Demonic blood transfer, and with that he placed both his hands on the puddle of his blood. He watched, as did Kushina and Mito, as blood-red runes appeared in the blood before it stretched toward the shivering body of Naruki. They watched when the runes touched her body. She seemed to stop shivering completely, like she was completely frozen in place, as the blood seemed to be soaked into the runes, and it flowed into the girl. As it did so, Naruto and the other two could already see the differences happening to her. Her hair seemed to have changed a bit, the red streaks seemed to have grown, and the main blonde hair was replaced by the red hair. Now her hair resembled Kushina, but golden streaks laid within. Her skin, that was the same tone as Kushina's, seemed to have gotten a bit paler like Naruto's own. The whisker marks on her face seemed to fade a bit, but still there, and face seemed to lose some of its tomato-shaped look, but still some there, only a bit less baby fat. As the blood finished going into the frozen form of the changed Naruki, Naruto sighed before he placed his hand upon the girl's head, and spoke once more. Now for the last part, to have her actually survive in Makai, she will need not only my blood but some of my devil power to awaken her own devil blood. So when this is finished she should be just fine. The two nodded, and watched with bated breath, as they watched their master practically save Kushina's daughter from death, and bring her to a new life they knew she would love than the one she had before. channeling his devil power while condensing it into a much weaker version. As to not kill the child due to overpower, he channeled it through his body and to his hands before he spoke Akuma Michiku. Akuma no Potenzum. Kakuse, demon magic. Demonic power transfer. Awakening. With that, his hands burst into purple flames before they traveled to Naruki, engulfing her body. Though the flames didn't harm her, more like it was welcoming her, covering her up like a warm blanket. Plus the comfort showing on the girl's face showed exactly how much she felt comforted at the flames engulfing her body. But soon, they like the blood slipped into her body, most assuredly into her new demonic genes, to awaken her devil blood. It seemed to work on her body, soon let out a small shockwave, creating a small crater where she laid. Yet it didn't disturb Naruto or the other two Uzumakis in the slightest, though Naruto did raise an eyebrow at the power output she just released. That's interesting. Even if the power level she released was lower than most demons, it was enough. It was around the level of a low mid-class demon before going into the trained demon's Yokai levels. Most demon children never have such power at such an age. He was cut out of his thoughts when he heard a slight murmur under him. Looking down, he saw Naruki's face scrunching up before she slowly opened her eyes, only to close them while rubbing her tiny fists in her eyes, to get them situated at the sudden little light she saw. Once she opened them again, Naruto did see, to his slight surprise, her eyes now looked more like Kushina than the azure they once were. They were a mix of his own eyes, and Kushina's a light violet instead of the deep violet Kushina had. Looking up, she saw the man that she had dubbed the scary man looking down at her with an almost impassive face. Blinking rapidly, she spoke, "Ano sir. Where am I? And where's Kasen?" She spoke timidly yet with a fire in her tone. Naruto just kept staring at her, as he listened to her question, that is before he spoke. It seems I've missed something. Oh, that's right. I need to pull that past out of you to fully reach your demonic abilities. Naruki blinked confusingly at this, while Kushina and Mito's eyes widened, knowing what he meant in his words. Somehow sensing their distress like he always does, he spoke, not looking back at them. "Do not worry, the girl shall not be harmed in any shape or form, though I can't say the same for the kitsune," within her, his words at the end carrying a slight edge. Nodding, knowing she would be okay, Naruto placed a hand on her shoulder and spoke. "Children, do not speak, move, for if you do you'll be in more pain than you could possibly imagine, understand?" The girl, despite her young age, understood what he meant, sensing the seriousness in his voice, and nodded at him. Curiosity just blazing in her eyes. Seeing this, he nodded before placing his other hand onto her navel, before his hand glowed bright purple before he spoke. "Akuma no Michiku. Akuma no Chishutsu, demon magic. Demonic extraction." His hand soon blazed once again in purple flames, only now it was shaped into a claw of some sort. He then suddenly plunged his hand through Naruki's stomach and into the seal. Though somehow Naruki didn't let out a small whimper of pain. Naruto's eyes were closed in small concentration, as his spiritually blazed hand searched the depth of the divine of Megami, before he snapped them open, and spoke, "There you are," and with a small flick of his wrist, he pulled out his hand, and flung his arm outward, sending a red blur away from himself and Naruki. Right then, as he did so, a red-crimson flash erupted from Naruki's form, blinding Kushina and Mito, but Naruto just cast his gaze at her form, his eyebrow raised ever so slightly at the development happening before his eyes. Naruki's body hadn't changed, but the new appendages did make him guess. For now a red-crimson foxtail waved past her backside, as two crimson fluffy fox ears twitched above her head. Her whisker marks seemed to have deepened a bit, but not so much. Seeing she was fine, he waved his arm, and the runic circle soon cracked before breaking away like glass before dissolving into the air in a black smoke. "Okay, she should be fine," he said before his gaze shifted toward another occupant inside the cavern. His purple eyes crackled with anger at the sight before him. Kushina and Mito wasted no time, and appeared beside the confused Naruki, and before the girl knew it, she was pulled into an almost crushing hug by Kushina. She blinked rapidly, as she was practically smothered by Kushina. Mito didn't help matters, as she too was hugging them both in a great embrace. Seeing struggling futilely, she snuggled in her mother's arms, letting a small purr, as her ears twitched, as did her new tail. The two saw this, and gave Naruto a questioning gaze, to which he grunted. "I'd say it's a side effect of being the Kyuubi's container. Unlike you two, Naruki became a devil differently, and just having the Kyuubi's Yaokai still in her. Even after the extraction it fused with her genes, making her into a hybrid of a devil and a kitsune," he said with a nonchalant tone. Kushina accepted it without question before she nuzzled her face into her museum's hair. As the three Uzumaki stayed together, Naruto's gaze was now dead set upon the figure before him. "Now what to do with you?" Hearing his words, Kushina and Mito, and the slightly awakening Naruki would turn their gazes at him, only to see what he was talking to, and to their immense shock, it was Akemi. Her form was kneeling on the ground, her long crimson blood-red hair sprayed out upon her back and ground. Her crimson slitted eyes showed exhaustion beyond measure, as her milky skin looked more pale than usual. Her kimono scuffled a bit from the sudden extraction, but when her eyes soon landed upon Naruto's own purple ones, they soon swelled up in immense fear. Naruto shifting his body to her, he walked up to her with an impassive look on his face. Sensing something wrong, Naruto struggled out of Kushina's arms and ran toward Naruto. As the devil got to Akemi, he suddenly felt a sudden pull on his leg. Slowly looking down, he saw the worried face of the newly transformed Naruto. "Wait, sir, please don't hurt her. She's my friend. She was my only friend I had, and I don't want to lose her. Please let her stay with us." Naruto just kept his impassive stare on the girl before he cast his gaze to Kushina, giving her a pointed gaze. Seeing this, she quickly went to him and kneeled to her daughter, and slowly but gently wrapped her arms around her body and pulled her from her master's leg. Even as she clinged, as best she could, Kushina wouldn't have it and pulled her daughter away. "No? Kasen. Let me go, please. She's my friend, and I don't want her to get hurt," Naruto shouted, thrashing and yelling in her mother's arms. Kushina quickly walked to Mito before she stopped her daughter's thrashing by falling to her knees and hugging her daughter to her completely, letting her small muffled yells be silenced by her chest. When she started to calm down, she looked down at her daughter and gave a sad, tearful smile. "Naruto-chan, can you be a big girl and listen to Kasen for a moment?" The girl slowly looked at her mother while stopping her thrashing completely. Her eyes swelled up with inevitable tears, them being red and puffy. Giving a small kiss to her forehead, she spoke. "You see, Akemi-chan has done many bad things which have made Naruto-sama very displeased with her. Believe me, I know what you feel for Akemi-chan." Hearing this, the little hybrid snapped her gaze at her, tearing up Kasen, her eyes widening at the realization before she blinked her eyes, trying to erase the tears. She was. Kushina just smiled before nodding. Looking in her daughter's eyes, she spoke. "Yes, she was. In fact, Akemi-chan was my friend just like she was to you. During my time growing up, she was always there for me when no one else was. Sometimes during my life, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here right now. Heck, when she found out about me having you, she was completely ecstatic and was wanting to always meet you." Naruto looked at Kushina, shocked at what she said, and couldn't help a wide smile cross her face. That is before the situation came back down on her, but Kushina saw this and continued, "But that's a story for another time. You see, Naruto-chan, there are just some things Akemi-chan has done that must be redeemed in any way that can be done. Naruto-sama has to deal with her in his own way, and we can't do anything about this." "But she's my friend," Kushina nodded, pulling her daughter even more into an embrace, and spoke softly. "I know, Naruto-chan, but like I said, there is nothing we can do." This caused Naruto to go silent and look worryingly at her savior and her friend. Standing in front of Akemi, Naruto's eyes staring down her own without a shred of hesitation, his body imposing like a wrathful titan, pressing down on Akemi like a monstrous weight pressing down on her. That is before the sound of lightning struck the area. Looking fearfully, she saw Naruto's left hand crackling with pure black-purple streak lightning. She could feel the great power condensed within the lightning that was way beyond her understanding. She honestly believed the power was strong enough to kill the Kyuubi itself. Depending on who was making the attack, she didn't doubt it. Naruto gave her an unforgiving look as he walked up to her and spoke with his lightning-encased hand inches away from Akemi's head. "Now, give me one good reason why I should not obliterate you where you stand. For the mockery you have inflicted upon our kind's name, dragging it through the damn mud, and allowing yourself, you, the mightiest of the Biju, controlled by mere humans, and not only once, but 3 times. His tone was sinisterly demonic, which scared the already trembling Akemi even more. The Kitsune Biju couldn't tear her gaze away from the man's eyes. She couldn't help herself but be completely terrified more than she had ever been. I mean, who could blame her? Standing before her, ready to completely destroy her, was a legend, yet also a nightmare among the demon kind. The mightiest of the demon titans, an individual of all demons, and even titans feared. The devil of legend is said to have created and brought the apocalypse countless times upon hell with his fights against Lucifer. Someone no one wanted as an enemy, for he himself made the deities themselves shake in fury at his name. And right now, that very devil was before her, ready to completely destroy her and her soul and send them both to the oblivion. She bowed her head in complete submission, something she never or rarely ever does, for it was against her demonic pride. But when it comes to someone that can kill you with a flick of his hand, she didn't give a rat's ass for her damn pride. Speaking in the most respectful tone she ever used, Akemi spoke. "I know, and I know there's nothing that can ever change for the things I've done and let pass. I knew I should have been more careful around humans, especially when I knew they could enslave others, but I never expected to be caught like that." Her words laced with the greatest of honesty and truth. Naruto narrowed his eyes. As the potency of the lightning got even stronger, a dark aura started to shroud his body. When she saw this, her eyes widened even more before she practically slammed her head to the ground, bowing before the devil that held her life in his hands, literally so. She spoke with the utmost pleading and truth that it shocked the 3 saddened Uzumakis. "But I really want to make amends for all the mistakes I've made, even if it would take me countless years. I want nothing more than to make amends for my past failures. I swear it to you on my demon honor, and every 9 of my Kitsune tails." This made Naruto raise an eyebrow in slight curiosity. It was a known fact, the kitsune can never break a promise no matter what it was. By swearing on her tails, she was declaring how much she would sacrifice to make up for her mistakes. Not only swearing on her demon honor but her tails, as well. This is an interesting development. Looking into her eyes he spoke, and what pray tell do you have that I could honestly want, and it best be good, lest your soul be obliterated right now. He kept the lightning-encased hand near her face to strengthen his words. It did its job to make the kitsune tremble even more in fright. I'm willing to become your slave for eternity, her words leaving her mouth filled with desperation and honesty. Naruto narrowed his eyes on the words she just uttered. To speak such things, her, a weakling, become his slave. That was an insult. He'd have nothing to do with a slave that was as weak as she was. She was a mockery to the whole demonic race, since if a pathetic fleshbag of a human can control her with a weak little bloodline, then a demon could do so with but a swift of their hand. The Kemi seemed to hear his thoughts, and spoke even more desperation and fear lacing her tone with even shockingly enough tears starting to escape her eyes. I know I'm weak right now, but I want nothing more than to regain my worth, and if you would be willing to help me regain my true powers, then I would be ever so much more useful to you. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He knew what she was speaking about when she said true powers. She was saying she would become the Kyuubi. She was speaking about devouring her siblings, the other 8, and becoming the new Kyuubi. Then again, the first Kyuubi was just a power-hungry fool that couldn't control his own power, and became a slave to that pathetic sage. He thought before he looked down at the trembling form of Akemi before he spoke. That would be interesting. If you were to devour your siblings, and become the new Kyuubi, you would most certainly become much stronger. Then you are now. Akemi gained a small flicker of hope that started to build in her stomach, only for it to be squashed down when he spoke again. But you should know, the previous Kyuubi couldn't hold a candle to Lucifer. His elites are generals, but also Yami's guardians. And now they are 10 times stronger than back then. At best all you can really do if you were to become 2, and that's if you can control that power, you'd only be able to at best defeat some of Lucifer's rebel field commanders. Since the quality is quite low these days, he said while awaiting her response, and if he didn't like it then there would be one less Biju alive. Akemi nervously swallowed the lump in her throat, as she bit her lip frantically thinking of what she could do before an idea popped into her mind. What if I ate their hearts? Her answer all but a shaky one that would seem so unseemly to be said from her, the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Now this got his attention. Looking down at her, the potency of the lightning seemed to lessen, as did his dark aura, making her able to breathe a bit easier. Whose heart do you speak of? Interest, and curiously in his tone. Akemi looked a bit hopeful now, hoping she was getting a second chance. The generals, the elites of Lucifer, and Yami's guardians, and chosen ones. Her answer made him quirk an eyebrow at her words. Before he stared deep into her eyes into breaking contact for a good few minutes. Unlike him, Akemi was having a very hard time keeping contact with his eyes, for the overwhelming power he excluded made her so very weak in the knees, and her demonic instincts just screaming at her that this was the ultimate alpha. He stared at her before he spoke. As you are now, their Yaokai would rip you to shreds in just a few seconds. Now if you were to become the Kyuubi, and stronger than the previous, many times stronger, since we both know the first Kyuubi was weak, and couldn't control his power due to his immense bloodlust which soon swallowed him whole, and became nothing more than a mindless beast before he somehow gained entrance to Ninjinkai, and, you know the rest, how he became a slave to that sage. And split his power. Now tell me, can you, unlike the first, handle the power of the Kyuubi, and get stronger along the way, or will you become a mindless beast the same as the first Kyuubi? His words cutting deep into Akemi's soul. The kitsune lowered her head, as she thought for a moment, which didn't take very long. When she snapped her face up to him, her crimson-slitted eyes that were once filled with fear and nervousness were now just flowing with determination, her gaze standing strong with his own. For you, your lordship. I will, and shall endure even worse than that, and in your name I will become stronger, and not let the power consume me, and bind me like my predecessor. That I swear utterly and completely. Her words rang true. Staring her down, Naruto could see she was speaking the complete truth. Then with a slight twitch of his wrist, he flicked his hand away, cancelling the lightning around his hand. His aura diminishes, allowing Akemi to breathe all the easier. The Uzumakis that watched looked ever so hopeful at what he was gonna do. The little girl Naruki looked the most hopeful out of them all. Turning around slightly, he looked over his shoulder and gave her an expecting gaze. Very well then, prove to me how much you're willing to go. Prove to me you want to get stronger, and if you should impress me, then you will be spared and become my slave, he said before looking back at the Uzumaki women. Walking up to them, ignoring the thankful look Akemi was giving him, he spoke with a commanding tone that made the three freeze. Mito in the field, show me what exactly she's capable of, and do not hold back, making her know he wanted her to not hold anything back. Even if he is a friend, she isn't to hold anything back on her. Mito bowed slightly before heading toward Akemi, an impassive look on her face that conveyed how much she was mentally thanking her master for giving Akemi one chance. Walking up to Kushina and Naruki, he turned around and watched the fight about to come. When he felt two pairs of eyes on him though, he briefly looked down to see the thankful pair of violet eyes of Kushina and the happy giddy ones of Naruki. Kushina was quickly up on her feet when her master was right beside her. That didn't mean she relinquished Naruki from her arms. As the three watched Mito and Akemi get ready, Kushina cast her gaze to her master every so often, and back to the front. She couldn't help but feel even more happy of being the slave of someone like him, even if he was close to killing Akemi. She sighed in a silent content while ever so slowly inching a bit closer to him before inwardly making Naruto stiffen, leaning her head onto his shoulder, thus making him widen his eyes slightly while Naruki watched the action curiously. Looking down at the Raidid leaning on his shoulder, Naruto narrowed his eyes, as that jolt came back, and in full force, as well. Honestly, he didn't know what it was, and it was starting to irritate him. But he honestly felt compelled to not push Kushina off him, and threatened if she did that again he'd kill her. It was like something was forcing him down, telling him to just let her do what she was doing. He let out a sigh, and continued to watch the battle that was bound to happen. He never saw the wide smile on Kushina's face or the blush on her face that could make a tomato look deathly pale. She thought when she did this he'd push her away instantly, but to her immense shock he didn't. He was letting her lean on him. More so, the way he shifted a bit, allowing her head to comfortably rest between his shoulder and chest, made it all the more better for her. She sighed once more, this time feeling the overall warmth coming from her master, which blanketed her body like a warm blanket, a blanket that would protect her and Naruki from the cold. Briefly looking at her daughter, she saw her slight surprise that she was asleep right then, quietly snuggling into her more and more. "Naruto-sama, thank you for giving her this chance," she muttered, to which he just grunted. "It still depends on Kushina. If she cannot impress me with fighting Mito, then she shall not get this chance. It all depends if she is willing to go beyond everything to get stronger and make amends for the mistakes she's made. If not, she will die no matter what." She just nodded, knowing it was absolute. His word was law to the man, knew it couldn't be broken, no matter how much he didn't want it to be so. So Kushina just closed her eyes for a moment, enjoying herself from feeling herself leaning against her master. She then opened her eyes to watch the battle that was about to begin. "Very well then, master." With Mito and Akemi standing on opposite ends, Mito and Akemi eyed each other as they stood ready to fight one another. Mito eyed her former prisoner with an impassive look as her demonic aura started to leak off her and shrouded her body in a crimson-purple aura. As Akemi gave her a stare filled with determination and the will to win, something that made her mentally smile at. Akemi, letting loose her demonic power, made her appendages come out with 2 long crimson fox ears, and 9 flowing fox tails flow from out her backside. The whiskers on her face deepened till they literally became real. Her hands soon became claws, as fangs protruded from her mouth. Mito, seeing Akemi was ready to speak, "Now Akemi, let's see how willing you are ready to go to impress the master." With that, Mito pulls out her hands, and before speeding toward Akemi, the Bijuu does the same. Her purple eyes glowing, as Akemi's own crimson doing the same. Once they appeared inches from each other, it signaled the fight had begun. Boom. An explosion of smoke and dust erupted, as Mito and Akemi struggled with a headlock grasp, their hands grasping the others in an ever-tightening grip. They stood firm on the cracking ground, as each held their ground. Mito looked impassive as ever, as Akemi struggled to keep her stance, since Mito's overwhelming strength was pushing hers down quickly. Reacting quickly, she had one of her tails coming from her left, coming from behind Mito's guard, and swatting her away and into the cavern walls. Not letting up, she charged right at the silence, as ever Mito, only to stop when she felt a sudden impact hit her stomach. Looking down, she saw Mito's foot slammed into her stomach. Not able to let out a sound, she was sent flying into the opposite wall, thus cracking it. As rubble started to fall around her, she was still trying to wave off the hit she felt that knocked the air right out of her, only to see a pair of glowing purple eyes converge right on her. "Don't let up or you will lose." Akemi was Mito's only warning before her hand grasped Akemi's face before she swung right past her master, and Kushina making the wind blow past them, making their hair blow back as she sped past them after her target. Naruki was still amazingly asleep throughout it all. Kushina blinked slowly while Naruto just turned around and walked toward where the battle would be taking place. Kushina beside him instantly held her child in her arms. Looking at her master, she spoke. "Seems this is gonna get a bit rowdy, don't you think so, Naruto-sama?" she said while inwardly pouting at not able to lean on him again. She was enjoying that, damn it. Looking to Kushina, he sighed. "It is of no trouble, no demon would dare come to this volcano, and besides, the level of Yaokai that is gonna be used here will vaporize many lower level demons," he said, to which she nodded in understanding. Before they walked out of the entrance to the cavern before looking down to continue watching the fight, knowing it was gonna be quite the hectic fight. With Akemi and Mito skidding on the mountainside, Akemi snarled before she looked up to see Mito coming down like a missile. Reacting quickly, she crouched before jumping away. As she did, Mito practically slammed right into the mountainside, making the area shake as a pillar of smoke shot into the air. It quickly disappeared, showing Mito crouching on the ground, her fist implanted into the ground, a crater all around formed by her fist. When she snapped her eyes to Akemi, they glared, as did her own crimson ones. But that both disappeared only to appear in the air again clashing, their clashes making small shockwaves erupt from them making the ground crack and shatter, boulders explode, and dead trees uproot. It soon ended when Mito punched Akemi in the stomach before giving her a spin kick to the head, sending into the ground creating yet another crater. Not letting up, Mito shot down toward Akemi, readying her hands once more. Only when the smoke cleared did her eyes whiten slightly when she saw Akemi gathering Yaokai into her claws. Blaring at her oncoming target, Akemi concentrated her Yaokai into her claws before shouting, "Kitsunoni no, Fox Demon Claw." Soon both her claws were engulfed in a crimson fire-shaped claw, before she swung both her arms toward Mito, making them shoot toward her like a speeding missile. Seeing them come, Mito silently cursed before quickly moving in the sky, avoiding the flaming claws. Getting irritated with her maneuvering, Akemi moved them once more onto Mito, which she dodged once more only to the Uzumaki's surprise. Another pair of flaming claws shoot out of the first pair, which soon grasped her body in a dual grip. And with a grin, swung her arms down, which the flaming claws soon followed. "Take this, Mito," she screamed before slamming the Devil Empress into the ground, splitting it like a small earthquake, as a medium-sized ravine appeared. Yet again another crater formed, only this time, as Akemi glared into the smoke she suddenly felt her fire claws start to turn grey. Seeing this happen, her eyes widened before cancelling the technique. That thing she did, because once she did, the fire-engulfed claws soon became nothing but stone, which soon cracked and shattered, turning to dust that flowed in the wind. "That was good, now keep going," were the words that whispered into her ear. Spinning around, she was quick enough to dodge or guard against the incoming punch, and was planted into her face, making it cave in itself. Not stopping, Mito slammed her other hand into Akemi's stomach, making the Biju gasp before coughing up blood. Mito didn't let up before grabbing by one of her tails, and swung her around before letting her missile through, and ram into a couple of dead trees which she soon followed in, since now Akemi was inside the forest of dead trees. Through it all, Naruto's scanning, calculating eyes moved from one end to another, watching the fight with a calculative eye. In the forest, Akemi panted, her hair cascading over her eyes. She had a hand on a tree, as she regained some air. As she did so, her mind thought a mile a second, as to how to fight Mito, who she knew was much stronger than her. "But I won't give up. His lordship is giving me a second chance. I promised I'll do anything, and I damn well meant it." With a renewed vigor, Akemi narrowed her eyes before twisting around, blocking a kick from Mito. She stood her ground, but the ground behind her didn't, for it uprooted behind her, shattering and cracking. Her long blood-red hair billowed in the wind before she grasped Mito's foot before swinging her up before slamming her into the ground. She didn't stop there. After letting go of her leg, she grasped her head, and started to repeatedly slam her face into the ground, with each hit making the ground gain a bigger crater with each one. A multiple sound of banging could be heard from within the forest. When she was done, Akemi grasped Mito by her neck, only to be swatted away when a clearly unscathed Mito grasped her arm, and pulled her to her before kneeing her in the chest before ramming her fist into her face once more, rocketing her through several more trees. As she did so, Mito brought up both her hands, and spoke. "Take this, Rufia. Face it, Mu, Hellfire. Firestorm," and then suddenly she raised her arms into the air, as her hands suddenly shot out multiple orbs of hellfire into the air surrounding the minuscule area where Akemi was. As she did so, her eyes glared at the struggling Akemi. "If you don't want to die, then I suggest you get up," was her words before she dropped her arms downward, which the orbs somehow followed her movement. They suddenly shot down toward Akemi. Seeing this, and seeing no other way out, Akemi grit her teeth before expelling her Yaokai outward, surrounding her body in a sphere of blood-red Yaokai. She hoped it would withstand. Boom. A sphere of hellfire erupted from the forest, destroying all in its path. The ground shook and cracked as the chaotic winds and shockwaves from the attack blew past Naruto and Kushina, which didn't do much but ruffle their hair. Their eyes were on the fight completely, while Kushina let a small thank you that Naruki wasn't awake right now. That was smart of her, condensing her Yaokai around herself like a protective barrier. "It was a good plan," Kushina said, to which Naruto just grunted. It wasn't enough, his words flowing in the chaotic winds of the aftermath shockwave, but his eyes were now showing a flicker of interest. Forest crater. Within the giant crater that still had smoke rising from within was Mito, standing there impassive as ever, her kimono billowing slightly in the wind. Her hair covered part of her eyes, which didn't stop them from glaring down below her at the smoking form at her feet. On the ground was Akemi, not dead but not fine either. Her body had slight burns, and her kimono was burned greatly, showing much of her body. Parts of her silk black bra and panties, but none to show. Her face though showed frustration above all. "Damn it, I won't lose here, no I won't," she said, not wanting to lose this last chance at life. A life she so desperately wanted more than anything. Mito, looking down at Akemi, just sighed. "Akemi, you need to do a lot better than that to impress your master, if not you will die here," she said. Akemi seemed to stop struggling, as she thought of what Mito said. "She's right, I've been doing nothing to her, she doesn't have a scratch on her. I've been doing this all logically. I don't want to lose here, I want to make amends, I want to win this, I want to gain his lordship's interest, I." Akemi's eyes soon snapped open, as her crimson eyes soon glowed pure blood red. An animalistic growl escaped her throat. Her eyes were glaring into Mito's own purple ones before she clawed at the ground. Then with a quick snap, Akemi abruptly stood up, her features getting more animalistic, her tails now waving around her in a slow motion. Crouching low on all fours, Mito let out a small smile. "But you getting serious, then show us what you have, Kyuubi no Kitsune." But the Akemi rocketed toward Mito at a much faster speed, making Mito's eyes widen slightly. She didn't have time to put up a guard, as a clawed hand rammed onto the side of her head. Her eyes widened a bit before her face met the ground once more, only this time the ground exploded upon impact. She briefly looked up to see Akemi's face, her crimson slitted eyes flashing, her growling like that of the true demonic fox she was. She smiled before it vanished. She soon kicked Akemi off her, sending the Bijuu into the air, which she soon flipped in the air. Standing up, Mito cracked her fingers before speaking. "But come to me." Akemi shows master your resolve, shows him your will to get stronger, and make up for your mistakes, her demonic voice carrying a softer tone. With those two shots toward each other, they both spoke in their own demonic tones, as their demonic aura flared from them, destroying the ground around them or distorting the air in Akemi's case. "Hair. Burajinguken, Hellfire." "Blazing Fist," she said, as her whole right was engulfed in hellfire, not burning her a bit, as a sphere of hellfire shrouded her fist, making her whole arm blaze with hellfire, and a condensed sphere of highly concentrated hellfire surround her fist. Akemi didn't let up either, for she channeled most of her Yaokai in her left claw, making it explode with her Yaokai, making it glow with her crimson flame-colored Yaokai. She let out a small growl before she spoke of her technique. It soon formed into a snarling crimson-eyed Yaokai Kitsune, its maw wide open, showing a pure black orb within its maw getting bigger each second. Ojutsu. Kitsune, kick by Furukat Maridama. Bijuu art. Kitsune style. Nine-tailed full-powered Imari sphere. Hearing her words made Mito's eyes snap wide open. As did Kushina's, Naruto's own eyes lit up with full interest, as a small smirk crossed his features. "That crazy little vixen," he thought, giving a slight chuckle, as his hair shadowed his eyes from the swing winds of both techniques giving off. Kushina eyed the technique until she hugged her daughter a bit more, worried the aftermath might hurt Naruki. Naruto, seeing her distress, spoke. "Don't worry, this aftershock won't hurt the child." She immediately calmed down. Just hearing her master's calming words made her feel at peace. "Yes, Naruto-sama," she uttered. Seeing she was calm, Naruto turned his gaze back at the two fighters, and eyed Akemi with an approved eye, even if she didn't see it. The fact the approval was there showed how much she had already impressed him. Mito, seeing the attack coming at her, pushing her fist toward the attack, knowing the surrounding area was gonna be in great destruction afterwards. How right she was. Akemi shouted, plunging her full-powered attack towards Mito's own. The Devil Empress was impassive, as ever slammed her own attack with the opposing one. Hoping her master was watching, for she could see how determined Akemi was. As she was using something like this. Boom. An earth-trembling explosion appeared, destroying all that it touched. A sphere of mixing Yaokai erupted from the forest, incinerating all in its path. It was the color of hellfire mixed in with crimson Yaokai, making it look like a true sphere of fire. The shockwaves erupting from the sphere shattered small mountains, and made the turbulent rushing winds blow past the impassive Naruto, and quite surprised Kushina. Their hair once again billowed behind their backs, not once ruffling their hair. They watched the sphere of fire and death spread out more and more each second. The ground being completely incinerated and tearing itself apart, the clouds in the sky swirled around the monumental release of Yaokai, as black lightning lighting raced the sky itself. Seeing the sphere getting closer and closer to the volcano made Naruto sigh before he stretched out his hand and spoke. Barrier, he spoke, as a giant non-visible barrier covered the whole volcano. It did its job when the sphere touched the sphere completely and utterly halted, unable to move any further. Expectantly, since it didn't go any further, the sphere started to build up more and more into the sky like an oval before Naruto just closed his eyes. Boom. It was exactly that the sphere exploded, making a pillar of smoke rise high above the sky of hell itself. Going through clouds all the way, it was never ending. Naruto stood in front of Kushina, knowing this aftershock would pass through the barrier and would hurt the child, and he couldn't let that happen. So, as the aftershocks blew past him, he continued to gaze down at the now smoke-filled crater, with an impassive look that concealed the impressed look within his eyes. That attack Akemi used was actually strong enough to injure one of Lucifer's generals, and could quite possibly wipe out a small group of the rebel forces. He was quite surprised at how much Yaokai Akemi used, and in such a condensed manner, as well. It was much stronger than the other Bijuu's normal Imari, that was for sure. A few minutes later, when the smoke disappointed, Naruto and Kushina could see two shadows within the crater. Concentrating his gaze on the two, he let out a small smile before he spoke. "Come Kushina, it would seem the fight is over," he said before jumping off the cliff before floating down toward the crater, Kushina following him. Crater. Within the giant crater, the smoke rose into the air ever so slowly, as the remaining Yaokai in the air seemed to float around like a never-ending fog. The fires of hell littered the ground in many different patterns. Within the raging aftermath of smoke and fire were two shadowed forms, one standing, another laying upon the ground. The first was an amazingly unscathed Mito who had not a single scratch upon her flawless body. Her kimono was slightly burned, if anything, showing her bare shoulders and more of her toned legs. Everything else was unscathed, but, unlike her, Akemi was much worse off. The nine-tailed Bijuru, laying upon the ground with severe burns, was Akemi. Her body was covered in multiple burns that were already healing, but were quite severe. Her body had no clothing since her kimono was all but incinerated in the attack, with only her sewed black bra and panties still there, but they themselves were barely hanging. Her eyes were closed, yet her slight breathing showed she was unconscious. Her fox ears laid flat upon her head, as her tail sprawled out on the ground, not moving but with just a slight twitch. Kneeling before Akemi, Mito let a smile grace her features, as she took her hand in her own, and spoke of her impassive face, now a gentle and sisterly one. She placed a hand on her cheek, and smiled at her. "You did great, Akemi-chan, you did absolutely wonderful." Her words flowed into the unconscious Kitsune's ears, and possibly the other. That's when she heard two soft taps land on the ground, so looking behind her, she saw the smiling happily Kushina, who was holding a sleeping Naruki, as Naruto himself was eyeing both her and Akemi with his usual impassive gaze. She gave them both a bow of her head before Kushina rushed to her side, checking if she was okay. As Mito frantically told her she was okay, Naruto walked over to the unconscious and stood over her with a strange look in his eyes that had yet to show any intent to end her right there. More like the fact he was looking into her very being and analyzing her very soul. The two Uzumakis saw this and waited with bated breath on what their master was gonna do. But the next thing he did shocked them both. He gained a small smirk before speaking. "To use that, and in such a highly condensed manner, you would have died if you were in Ninjenkai if you used that. To have overpowered that attack, and forcing everything into it, you are crazy, you little vixen," his words carrying a small amount of amusement and humor with each word. After a few seconds of no response, he kneeled down on his knee and picked up the unconscious Akemi. Carrying her in a bridal carry, he ignored the state of dress she was in and turned toward the surprised Uzumakis. "Purr" was the sound that came from Akemi before she unconsciously snuggled into Naruto, her head resting against his chest, making the devil gain a twitch in his eyebrow. Looking down at her, he half contemplated to just drop her right there and have Mito carry her. "Mito, Kushina, follow me. The woman needs rest," he said before he started to float back up to the cliffside. Kushina and Mito blinked before looking at each other before blinking again. Mito opened her mouth and spoke. "You think she started? That he's gonna let her stay?" Kushina finished. They blinked once more before giant smiles graced their faces before they shot up toward their master, with pure joy flowing through their body. Kushina knew her daughter would be even more excited at this. Once reaching their master, they saw he was already walking into the cavern, which they quickly followed him inside. Though once they were by his side, they regained a slow pace with his own. Now Kushina, being the very curious redhead, had to ask. "Ano Naruto-sama?" The devil just gave her a glance which she saw, as she had his attention. What are you going to do with Akemi, if I may ask?" This earned a sigh from the man. Before he kept walking. "Well, I'll cut straight to the point with you, Kushina, as well as you, Mito." She wasn't going anywhere fast during the fight. But even when she was losing, she threw away her logical thinking and gave into her demonic instincts. Now this is in some cases bad, but when it comes to Kitsune, relying on their instincts alone makes them a much more deadly enemy. Kyuubi here before this has been relying on her mind, which weakened and allowed those humans to enslave her. That's not the only reason, but that when you two had that last clash, the power she put into that attack was a great deal of amount," he said, getting both of their attention as they absorbed the information from him. "How much was it?" This caused their master to just give a small chuckle before he spoke again, this time though with approval in his tone, which was quite rare to ever be heard from him, except during their time they trained under him. Included with all the power of a nine-tailed Bijuru. She forcibly pushed more Yaokai into the attack, making it have the same amount of Yaokai compared to one, and one had Chibi. This got gasps from both of them, since they both knew from personal experience that using such levels of Yaokai was very deadly to yourself. If you were to overexert yourself, you could start to die slowly if you emptied your reserves to complete zero, and even beyond that. Your body would slowly tear itself apart without Yaokai to help keep your body stabilized. "How does she have that much Yaokai?" Kushina asked, her eyes gazing down on the unconscious Kitsune with awe and admiration in her eyes. Naruto just gave her a glance, not breaking pace. "Remember about the Yaokai gates each demon and devil has?" He received a nod. They remembered that lesson. The Yaokai gates were similar to the celestial gates the humans have, but the Yaokai gates obtain much more Yaokai and increase your power 100x with each one you open. There are said to be 7 in all, named for each sin known to the 3 realms. That had seen their master release one, just for a demonstration, and when he unleashed the first gate, they were immediately slammed into the ground by just the immense pressure of the Yaokai flooding from their master's body. They still had nightmares when they remembered his appearance. It was so terrifying they were nervous around their master for a good couple of weeks. Even now they get extremely nervous if you were to ever resort to releasing one. Are you saying Akemi-chan released a gate? Mito said, to which Naruto just nodded. Yes, from what I saw and felt, Akemi had unintentionally released not one but 2 gates worth of Yaokai, thus giving her the power of a whole Hachibi, after fully powering her attack. She had flooded the attack with that extra jump start of Yaokai just to win. She's lucky to be alive, he said, as he gazed down at the sleeping Kitsune woman in his arms. Which has impressed me. His next words made them snap their gaze at him in shock. Sensing this, he elaborated, for her to go to such extremes to prove her worth shows me how much she can keep her word. She went hit her limit and went over it all to gain my approval. He said, making a flickering flame of hope come to life within Kushina and Mito's hearts. Does that mean? They both uttered silently, their words filled with such hope it was quite surprising. Naruto just sighed while closing his eyes. Yes, she has proved her worth. Starting tomorrow, Kyuubi no Kitsune, or better yet Akemi no Yuko, becomes my new slave. This made both Kushina and Mito both gain great big grins on their faces, before Mito actually squealed of all things. Kushina couldn't do much because she would wake up her sleeping daughter, but she was pumping her fist into the hair, giving a quiet databing. Naruto himself just sighed even more in annoyance since he could see both Mito and Kushina's actions from even behind himself. Looking down at the woman in his arms, he sighed. Things are gonna get very hectic soon, and why do I feel like I'll be the center of it all? 10 minutes later. After falling through the cavern, the group of 3 with the sleeping Naruki and unconscious Akemi counting, as 2 they had arrived to Kushina and Mito's shock, something that was completely beautiful, in their opinion, for before either eyes, after going through so many channels within the cavern, they had come on the outside of the giant volcano, and in front of their eyes was a house. No, not a house. What the hell were they thinking? They were seeing a freaking castle before their very eyes. It was a giant pitch-black castle. Surrounding the castle though was even more a shocker, especially in hell. The ground wasn't dead of life or barren of any plant life. But in fact, the land had green grass that was completely never seen in hell. Trees that were usually dead were in this one area fully alive. Of course, the sky itself was the usual blood red like always. They stood there shocked for quite a few minutes, as Naruto just gazed at the place with irritation. Don't ask, he stopped their obvious question before he walked on, ignoring the grass around him or the fully alive trees. Kushina and Mito looked all around them, seeing nature alive, unlike the rest of hell, who was completely dead. No wildlife was here, but just the grass and trees were enough to bring a small tear to both their eyes. If there was one thing they missed from their old lives, it was the green grass and fully bloomed trees. Despite Kushina missing her daughter even more than anything, this was her second missed thing from Ninjinkai. They briefly wondered how or exactly why their master, a devil, and one of the most brutal ones to ever live, would live in such a place. The castle though was an opposite of the land, being midnight black and all. The bubbling lava around the castle with the black lightning dancing across the sky made it all the more suited place for a devil. Even if the green grass and trees didn't fit the area. The castle's design was strange at best, and they've seen a few of them in hell during their attacks with their master on Lucifer's strongholds. At least Naruki-chan has a place to play at. Were Kushina's thoughts on the matter. Knowing her daughter was a bit too young to train at the moment, and was a bit happy she could enjoy what childhood she has left, even if it was in Makai. They followed their master till they came in front of the castle, and when they felt their master flare his Yaokai once, the giant wooden bridge came down slowly before ending with a loud click before he kept walking, which they followed. Once all 3 of them were off the bridge, it came back up once more. Now when Kushina and Mito were inside the castle, their jaws would have crashed right through the ground if it was possible. For before them something that was absolutely marvelous in their eyes. The outside of the castle was pitch black, but the inside was painted differently. The halls were mainly pitch black with purple streaks mixed in. A long red crimson blood carpet graced the hallway with white marble flooring, and even most rooms had this, except the flooring had black marble instead. Statues of demons and gargoyles stood on both sides of the hallway. Metal knight statues, as well, stood tall and imposing to children if they ever saw one. Paintings of all kinds littered the hall, some showing great battles between demons and angels, some with demons fighting against other demons. On the ceiling were 2 chandeliers that lit with a bright glow. They knew there was more to the castle though, since they had yet to even explore the whole place yet. Following their master though, they marveled at the side of the castle, its architecture and design. It was weird actually, for just being inside this castle made them feel right at home. Like this was their true home or something. After following their master for a good 5 minutes, they came before a door which he soon opened, leading to a room of great proportions. It was painted black, as well as a huge red carpet on the floor. 2 dressers with a built-in bathroom. 2 nightstands on both sides of a king-size bed. The bed being designed beautifully in Kushina's opinion, for it was beautifully crafted, showing artistic designs within the wood. Soft silk black sheets, and soft pillows that felt like the softest thing Kushina or Mito for that matter have ever touched. A giant blood red cover finished it off with black flames licking the bottom of the cover. Smaller pillows littered the bed, as a sign of decoration. They stood there amazed at the sight, as Naruto just grunted before throwing the pillows off before pulling the covers and sheets back. Then he set the sleeping yet healing Kitsune woman into the bed before he looked back at Kushina and Mito. Kushina placed the girl in the bed too. I doubt she's had any good rest for a while now. Afterwards when they both wake up she can get something to eat. She looks malnourished beyond reason. He said, to which she nodded. Walking to the other end of the bed before she gently placed Naruki inside. Then ever so slowly she covered her frame up with the sheet and covered it before giving a kiss to her forehead. "Good to have you back, Naruki-chan," she uttered before going back to Mito. With that, Naruto covered up Akemi before walking out the door, turning off the lights, Kushina and Mito following them, casting one more worried gaze on the two. "Don't worry, you two. This castle is protected by special barriers and runes that make it completely impenetrable to any outside force. Anyone that tries to sneak in will be vaporized on the spot, no matter who they are." His words of reassurance relieved them immensely. The questions started to pop into their minds as to what this place was and how it was linked to their master. Following him downstairs, they all came to another room they finalized as the living room. They could see it was greatly decorated with 2 midnight black sofas and 2 dark violet chairs facing a giant fireplace, and facing the sofas was a giant plasma screen TV. Above the fireplace was a large painting of something Mito and Kushina couldn't identify. It looked like a couple holding a little child in their arms. "Kushina, Mito, stop dawdling and sit down. It's time to start explaining our next move." Their master's voice quickly shakes them of their stupor. Looking back at him, they could see him standing in front of the fireplace. A firm look in his eyes made them audibly gulp. Once they sat down, Naruto turned around and gave them a sharp gaze that made them tremble on the spot. No matter what, if there was one thing that they feared yet respected, it was their master. "Things have changed, you two. Your training is gonna be upped by a few standards. I feel something stirring in the 3 realms, and it's only a matter of time before more battles break out. Added with my actions against heaven today, I'd say they're gonna be much more hostile than they ever were before. So from now on, you two, along with Akemi, she'll be trained even harder than ever before." He started making both of them nod in unison. Seeing this, he continued, now on a lighter note. "You may be wondering what this place is, and why it's behind such a giant volcano. Well, the truth is, the place we were living at before was nothing more than an outpost. A training area for me and you two, but was also a lookout post for Lucifer's armies. Seeing as it's gone now, we'll have to resort to this place from now on," he mumbled irritatedly. Quirking an eyebrow, Kushina spoke, "Master, as I may, but what is this place, and how is there even living plant life in this area?" This made Naruto gain a twitch in his eyebrow before he sighed in slight annoyance. "Well, this castle was once my old home, but I've never used it, since I've always been on the road facing off against Lucifer and his men. As for your second question, I never really knew for sure, but I can only think after the great forest of Eden was destroyed by the first war between heaven and hell, its land was but obliterated. I think some of its soil, which held holy qualities that not even hell could poison, landed into hell, and more specifically this area behind the volcano." He answered both of Kushina's questions. The woman just nodded as she ran the information through her mind. Naruto sighed before he plopped right onto one of the purple chairs. Mito, seeing his exhausted state, got a bit worried and spoke. "Naruto sama, not to sound pushy, but it would help if you got some sleep if you've got no sleep for the past week or so. Due to all the training, fighting Lucifer, and getting Naruki," her words gaining Kushina's attention. Naruto just grunted, waving off Mito's concern. Even though she was right, he hadn't had much sleep for a while, but he had to be on guard. Lucifer could send his men out anytime, but knowing he was inside this castle was all the assurance he needed to lower his guard. "Just a bit. My health and sleep isn't important." What is he couldn't finish before his eyelids slowly started to fall. Seeing this, Mito and Kushina stood up, worried only to see him in a few seconds passed out on the chair. Seeing he was asleep, Kushina and Mito both smiled briefly. "The master is always watching out for us even when he doesn't show it, huh?" Kushina said, her eyes staring at her master's form with the gentleness of that of a worried woman. Mito nodded in agreement, her own smile plastered on angelic face. "Yes, even if he hides it well, very well. I can sense he cares for us in his own way, and is doing everything he can to make sure we're protected while training us to become stronger, so we can protect ourselves," she said, as she slowly walked to his side before kneeling beside the chair, gazing at her master's sleeping face. "Yeah, he deserves some rest for all that he's done," Kushina said in agreement with that. They both slowly put his arms over their shoulders and struggled to lift his body off the chair. After doing so, they gently yet quickly went to find another room for him to sleep in. It took a few minutes, but to their luck they found a room with the same designs. But the bed's color was that of dark violet with midnight violet covers. Slowly they unveiled the sheets before they started to place him in bed. They did have to struggle though, for whatever was beneath his clothing weighed more than a few tons or so. But what the two didn't encounter though, as they did this, was Mito. Kushina stopped right there, the stern voice of which they recognized immediately made them freeze in front of the doorway. Nervous yet feared expressions crossed their faces. Turn around they did so without hesitation, but they did it quite slowly, not wanting to meet their master's angered, in their minds, gaze. What they saw made their eyes widen in shock. Naruto, their master, was looking at them with an impassive look. He was sitting on the bed with his feet touching the floor. But what shocked them was that he was pointing to the other side of the bed. If you two are gonna drag me to bed, then you're gonna sleep in the same room. Now get over here, and get in bed, he said, to which they just nodded slowly while trying, and failing, at hiding their reddening cheeks. It only got worse for the two when their master took off his coat and boots before he discarded his shirt, as well. When he discarded his shirt though, it was almost too much for the two women, for they were seeing the upper body of a god. Not a single flap of fat was upon his chest. He had a rock-hard 8-pack. His chest is cleanly cut yet leather. His skin unblemished, yet a few scars on his shoulders, and axe-shaped scar where his heart is. Besides that though, they couldn't help but eye his body to their extreme embarrassment. They quickly got under the covers to hide their practical red glowing faces. It got redder when they felt Naruto get in the bed also. Those poor women would be like that for the rest of the night, sleeping completely on one side of the bed, as to not wanting to disturb Naruto's sleep. If only they knew the situation, they'd wake up in tomorrow. It was early in the morning for all of Makai, the shifting sky going from a pitch black to its everyday crimson. The early morning, which started to appear with the ever blood-colored clouds, lit up all of Makai. Demons all around started to shift awake to start their everyday activities, whether that being torturing someone, eating some poor soul of a mortal, or just plain slaughtering those weaker than themselves. As the inhabitants of all in Makai slowly started to wake from their slumber for their daily activities, so too did another group of demons. Or mostly devils, but you get the idea. Behind the greatest volcano known in all of Makai, Mount Unmei, was a shockingly beautiful landscape filled to the brim with vibrant green trees and grassy green fields. It would be shocking to all of Makai if they saw such a place in a realm known for its chaotic environment and brimstone-filled air. Passing this field of green lively trees was a separated plot of land with a giant pool of lava, thus separating the land from the other piece of dirt floating above the bubbling pool of lava. Sitting on the giant mound of dirt was none other than a castle of nightmarish design that did not fit the greenery view, but more of mockery itself. Its pitch-black walls and demonic design showed it belonged to a demon of some sort. Though living inside this castle was not a demon, but a devil of such power that it made all of Makai itself tremble. With only 2 people in Makai that could give him a good fight. All others were nothing more than sheep to the slaughter to him, and nothing more. How in Castle Naruto's room. He was still asleep. Laying upon the king-size bed were 3 figures, one of them being a male that now could be recognized, as Naruto himself sounded asleep unaware of the world around him. Though the 2 other figures could be seen as female, for both were either snuggled up to him. It had to be a very exceptional dream to put her in the state she was in now. Mito's face was flushed, yet showed her comfortable, almost euphoric dream she was having. Yet Kushina knew she had to wake her up lest their master wakes up to this. She could only imagine what would happen if he woke up to see them both in such a position. How is he still asleep anyway? Slowly and quietly did Kushina prop herself on her elbow before moving her hand toward Mito before placing it on her shoulder. At first she gave a slight push to her fellow sister, yet didn't get a reaction, with only for her to mumble even more. Again she shook her shoulder with a bit more force, making her this time grumble in irritation. Growing irritated, Kushina quietly yet forcefully shook her again while speaking her name. Mito woke up, she uttered ever so quietly, as to not wake her slumbering master. It took a bit, but Mito did finally stir, signaling she was waking. But oh gods, when she awoke, Mito gave such a glare that it made Kushina flinch in complete utter fear. Her glare was so evil it was like being stared at by Naruto's own eyes, purple striking orbs that could send the strongest of demons to their knees in terror with but a glance. She must have inherited his glare after being with him the longest. "Why did you wake me?" was Mito's quiet yet oh so cold deadly tone that it made the woman shiver. That is before she silently pointed in Naruto's direction. Quirking an eyebrow at Kushina's nervous expression did she look up. Only for her eyes to widen comically yet fearfully at the sight of the slightly stirring yet still asleep Naruto. His face slightly twitched a bit from something, yet it was unknown what it was. Mito only reacted right then and there when she practically jumped from the bed and to the doorway so fast Kushina herself blinked a few times to adjust as she saw. It was nothing more than a blur, but it sure as hell was the fastest she's seen Mito go. Looking in the woman's direction did she see her extremely burning face, her cheeks inflamed with a flush so deep it could make a cherry look pale. Ghostly pale. Kushina would have laughed at Mito's condition if the situation wasn't so serious. Slowly she crawled off the bed, so as to not wake her master before she and Mito looked at each other. A silent conversation went through their eyes on how to handle this predicament they found themselves in. "Let's clean this up and leave before he finds out, then we talk." Nodding with this, the two slowly yet quietly got to work cleaning up their hem fluids, making sure it was all cleaned up before leaving quietly, as to not wake their master. After closing the door and heading away did they speak quietly, with Kushina breaking the ice between them. Mito-chan, I think we need to speak about our feelings for Naruto-sama later on. If what I heard and what I dreamt were what I think similar, then we need to speak about this later, that is," she said with a cute blush adorning her cheeks. The position she and Mito were in was fresh in her mind. Looking over at her sister figure, did she see Mito's own cheeks and face itself set aflame at the mere mention of what just happened? "Yeah, I think we do," she uttered in a quiet yet embarrassed tone, glancing toward Kushina, their violet eyes meeting one another. Did they both give nervous smiles before heading away from Naruto's room? It was time they talked about what they felt for their devil master, before such a thing like that happens again. She could only imagine what would have happened if Naruto was to wake up during that. Okami, what would he do? Would he have been mad, disgusted with our actions, or remain neutral like always? So many theories yet unanswered. What would have Naruto-sama do if he was woken up during that, was the thoughts of not only Mito but Kushina as well. They knew their master well, but not enough to the point of what he would have done in such a situation. She and Kushina could only hope that they could ease the building pressure of their overwhelming feelings for him before it gets out of control. If they could, it would thus stop those happenings in the future. Hopefully. Howling Castle, Naruto's room. 30 seconds after Kushina and Mito left cleaning up their mess, do we find our favorite devil waking up for another day of training and fighting. His purple eyes slowly opened as his face shifted into a more impassive manner like always, yet as his eyes adjusted to his whereabouts, did a flicker of confusement appear in his eyes. For, as he slowly shifted himself in the bed he lay in and placed his feet onto the floor, did he not see that Kushina nor Mito must have already woken up? Then all of a sudden a strange scent invaded his nostrils. What it was he didn't exactly know yet, at the same time had a slight kindling suspicion of what it was. The thought made an ever-small frown appear on his face, not one of anger, spite nor hate, but one of bewilderment. An emotion he rarely ever feels. That scent is musky yet intoxicating was the inner thoughts of our very own Devil Emperor, our favorite nightmare of Makai. If one would ever hear those very thoughts, they would have passed out right there to hear such a thing, for it was known to all the entities of such power had such thoughts on the matter. Placing the thought for later, did Naruto just snap his fingers, resulting in the slightly messed up bed to make itself in an invisible shift of wind. He gave it but a glance before getting a pair of clean clothes for the new day, a day he knew all too well would be busy for all residents in the castle. Mostly for Kushina, Mito, and Akemi, though, he thought in mild amusement, as he pictured the three women's faces for their training. That was to come, mostly Akemi's though. That brought a smirk on his face that was so filled with the utter malice and evil that it would have made even Yami, the god of Makai, cringe. Seeing the bed done, and his clothes over his arm, did he walk to the shower ready to cleanse his body before starting the day. Howling Castle kitchen. Back with both Kushina and Mito, it had been only 15 minutes since their little accident in Naruto's room, due to their awakening from their slumber. Since then, two have been oddly silent between each other, as both were fixing breakfast for all of them. Kushina being the one happily humming, as she stood over the stove with shockingly enough a pink apron that said "One Hot Mama." Moving swiftly and expertly over the stove did Kushina stir and toss the food she was cooking for both herself and Mito, as she moved to another pan before she gracefully flipped a pancake into the air. 1, 2, 3, they went onto a plate with practiced ease, that is before she also opened the oven, pulling two trays having what looked two giant legs. Happily smiling all the while, as she placed the two trays on the other side of the stove, she never noticed Mito's amused gaze on her. She herself was setting the table for breakfast, and such. Now she never did this before, but seeing, as they were using this castle as a home, as well, she think it'd be good to have a somewhat normal breakfast before the training began. Though she knew it was coming, if anything like tomorrow was any indication not only of Akemi, but herself and Kushina would be receiving even more training, and more hellish than before. It sent shivers down her spine. She'd admitted she feared the regime her master gives her, and Kushina, but couldn't deny it was effective. Very effective. The sound of footsteps could be heard, which made both Mito and Kushina look back to see a sleepy-eyed Naruki walking down the stairs with the sleepy Akemi in tow. The little newly changed Naruki rubbed her eyes while giving out a cute yawn that made both Mito and Kushina giggle. That is before her ears perked up and her nose twitched. "What's that smell?" She spoke, looking around. That is before she laid eyes on her Kosan looking at her with an amused expression, as she and Mito placed plates on the table. Turning to her daughter, she gave a smile. "It's breakfast, Musume. Now come on, you two, let us sit down and wait for master before we eat," she said, ushering the two toward their seats. Naruki expectantly beside her Kosan, as she looked strangely at the stack of pancakes on her plate. Lightly she started to poke at it, which was quite a funny little scene to the other three women. Even more so when she sniffed it like the curious child she was. That is until they heard another sound of footsteps somehow in the area. The overwhelming presence of that which only engulfed the room made both Kushina and Mito stiffen, and Akemi became extremely nervous, as Naruki blinked confusingly at her mother's flinch. They looked up at the stairs to see one howling Naruto, the master in all his glory, walking down impassive as ever, yet he seemed somehow rejuvenated in a way. For his very aura just showed he was back to normal from his overly exhausted state, and even then there was something about him that was there. What it was they couldn't figure out, but both Mito and Kushina could see it was something, and it made them smile seeing, as he was now more relaxed than before. As he walked, his purple eyes glanced down at them with something akin to confusion to what was going on before they settled on the food on the table. Suddenly realization came into his eyes, that is, before it was squashed down, as he came up to his own seat, which was at the head of the table itself. Sitting down, did he give each of the residents a look over. He could see Kemi's nervous state, which was understandable after all that had happened yesterday, and Naruki, the little girl's confused yet silent one, showed she was at least respectful. Looking at the last two, he saw them strangely nervous, yet kept it hidden the best they could. He could still see it though, thus making him note later on to talk to them. Glancing at his food at the table, seeing it set up in a tray that had bowls of selective food, that made him raise an eyebrow. Giving a small shrug, he began to eat, signaling the others to do the same. Which was funny, for soon Naruki needed help eating her own, which Kushina caught hers, while also teaching her to do it at the same time. Overall, it was a strange yet somehow pleasant silence for the group. For Mito and Kushina, they never had a breakfast with their master at the table in such a manner. As they finished eating though, did Naruto get their attention before speaking. Kushina spoke, the devil getting the attention of his beautiful red-haired slave, who was taking the dishes with her, so when she went to get his own he had spoken. Yes? Her voice strangely hesitant and nervous of what he was gonna say. Sure, she can be the fiery woman she was always known for, but when it comes to the man that changed her life for the better and showed such unbelievable power, and even more so the one who took her daughter away from the life she had in Jinkai, it was understandable she was nervous. The food was excellent. I never knew you were such a skilled cook, especially the cooked org leg meat and the blood herb seasoning, truly that was very sublime, he said with approval in his tone. Honestly, every word he said was true. Her food was just perfect. Even for him, that was the best thing he has ever tasted in his long immortal life. Yes, he ate meat from dead demons, what other demons didn't. Raw or cooked, seasoned or fresh did not matter, but what Kushina did was just purely scrumptious. Kushina herself, hearing his words, was frozen on the spot, as Naruto's words reverberated within her mind repeatedly. That is, before her cheeks started to flush so much that it looked like she was gonna pass out due to how fast the blood was flowing to her head. Giving a quick yet respectful bow, did she speak. Thank you, Naruto-sama, I don't deserve such praise, she said, to which the man just gave a wave of his hand while shaking his head. Pushing his own chair in, did he grasp his plate and walk towards the sink to wash his own dish. While doing so, did he speak. Nonsense, you deserve as such, but nevertheless I want you and Mito to gather both Naruki and Akemi and meet in the living room. It is time we began to plan out the training for all of you. She just gave a curt nod before leaving. Good thing too, since Naruto never saw her heartfelt smile, nor her giant blush that could make the very flames of hellfire look cold in comparison. But she did, as told, and went to gather along with Mito the other two before they left for the living chambers, knowing it was gonna be a serious discussion between Naruto and them all. Especially with what he told them last night, if that was anything to go by. If only they knew how true their thoughts were. Howling Castle living chambers. Within the living chambers was the assembled group of three women, with little Naruki sitting on her cousin's lap. All four on the couch, as they stared upon the master of their lives, more so for Mito, Kushina, and Akemi, while Naruki just looked around confusingly. The three older women couldn't help but be extremely nervous from the serious atmosphere that engulfed the chambers. It was like a never-ending void of darkness, swallowing you up into the nothingness that is the void. Turning around, did Naruto eye each and every occupant before him, each his slave in a manner either through a contract of their choosing or their own choice. Two former humans shifted into the devils, a forsaken ready to do any and all to prove herself to him, and a small child daughter of his second slave, and hybrid between kitsune and devil. Interesting. Naruto, stomping his inner thoughts, collected himself before speaking. Now, as Mito and Kushina know, we now have two new guests added to our little group. I don't think we need any introduction, seeing as you all know each other by some extension, to which was true. All four of them had a connection to one another, linking them like a spiritual line of sorts. The girls gave a nod, or in Naruki's case, a confused blink tilt of her adorable little head. Understandably, she was confused with Naruto's words, yet all she cared about was that she was with her cousin, and in a home where she never has to look around for the slightest attack on her. He soon continued after seeing their complete attention. Now, as of today, I'm gonna be planning a training schedule for Akemi. Now that she's my slave, she will do any and all the training I give her, and not once complain. I shall be putting you through controlling your yokai till I say otherwise, physical conditioning to strengthen your body and power. For right now, you are nothing more than a newborn infant, compared to the weakest of demons in both Lucifer and Yomi's armies. We will also be working on you controlling your kitsune no bi foxfire, and your second affinity. All kitsunes have that, being darkness itself. I will also be personally training you and Kushina and Mito in honing your reflexes with my own personal way of doing so. I want you to increase your yokai and control, so for when you do become the Kyuubi, this will increase your chance of controlling the power boost without going insane like your predecessor. Meaning you will also be learning how to control the 7 Sin Yokai gates without attaining the backlash. He explained to the group. He ignored the wide-eyed look of Akemi as he kept speaking, also during the test with you against Mito yesterday. What I saw was your instincts taking over, and well, that is somewhat of a good thing for kitsunes, and kitsunes only, it's also deadly, as well. For if you don't have control over your instincts, you will make bad choices that could lead to your death. So you will also be learning how to master that, as well. You are to never let your instincts control you like that again, and stomp them down, thus controlling them, making you far superior in a fight. The devil said, making the pale white-eyed Akemi give a slow nod, as she processed everything he said through her mind. Naruto saw this before he looked into her eyes, thus making her flinch when she saw the cold yet stone-firm purple orbs stare right into her own crimson ruby-slitted ones. She utterly felt the oxygen within her leave, as her whole body started to tremble. She was sure she was standing that she would have fallen to her knees. It was like staring. He had his hand firmly wrapped around her soul, and was ready to pull it out at any time. Though that wasn't very far from the truth. Seeing her state, Naruto was obviously trembling. Now do you understand? He said in a tone that broke any and all arguments. He either ignored her trembling pale state or the child called Naruki worried-filled eyes. He did take note both Mito and Kushina were impassive, knowing Akemi needed to answer this truthfully and honestly, to show she was truly determined to see this through, even to face his training. Yes, I am Naruto-sama, I will follow through it all, and without a single complaint, I swear it to you my lord. Her words are filled with the utmost honesty a kitsune could give. It seemed to do the job since Naruto gave a slight nod. That is before he turned his attention to both Kushina and Mito, making them straighten under his powerful yet cold gaze. Good, as for both Mito and Kushina, you two shall have your training up 10 times than before. You two will also be participating with Akemi in honing your reflexes, as well, seeing as the both of you need it, as well. Like I told you both last night, things are gonna get very bloody, and very soon that is why your training will be up so far, and so fast. I will also be doing my personal training when I get the chance. As I train you three, we will also by the end of each week have a spar. And occasion I'll take each of you on a training trip, as the two left behind will continue their training regimen, upping it up each day. He said to the 3 women, thus they nodded, even if all 3 were pale white, their eyes white and greatly more so on Akemi's part than Mito or Kushina. Now with this settled, we shall begin training, as of today, so go get yourselves ready. After which meet me in the back so we could begin your training. His tone sent shivers down all 3 of the demonesses' spines, while making the very hairs on the back of their necks stand straight up. And with that the girls' training began. Though the horrors they faced, though what awaited them all, would soon shift the very future for all living beings, for all of Ninjinkai, Makai, and Heaven. 5 days later. It's only been 5 days since Naruto began the training of his new slave, and upped the training regimen for Mito and Kushina. And in just those days alone did Akemi have the word pain completely thrown out the window. Her whole understanding of the word was shattered before her very eyes, as she was pushed into the training her master gave her. In just 1 day alone she couldn't move a single part of her body, falling face first to the ground in sheer utter exhaustion, making her completely immobile. It took Mito to carry her into the castle to rest up on the first. It was somewhat amusing to see her, the strongest of the Bijuu, and queen of the Kitsune race, reduced to a new slave of Makai's most powerful devil, but more so. To have fallen out in exhaustion alone, being completely out before she hit the ground. Of course she wasn't the only one, because on that same day both Mito and Kushina were introduced to their up training. Having it laid before them added with it up 10 times, than before made it all the more harder and hellish for them. They persevered, sure, but they were almost no better than Akemi, yet having years of dealing with their master's training, gave them a stronger physique. Thus they could take much more punishment. But that didn't stop Kushina uttering tiredly, as she, Mito, and Akemi were leaving the training site, that their master's training was truly the boot camp from hell. And that was not all. The training to hone their reflexes was something that could only be described as pure horror, for this training was second to sparing against him. What it was that Naruto cast multiple lightning spells on either of them, thus making them dodge. Now if this was normal lightning, it would have been a walk in the park. But this was by no means normal lightning. It was the pitch black purple streak lightning that Naruto was close to killing Akemi with. The very lightning that had enough power to kill itself. So yes, the 3 did their best to dodge the lightning spells, especially Akemi, since if she didn't, well, she would have died. Luckily her kitsune reflexes saved her on multiple occasions. Though on the 4th day of their training did both Mito and Kushina receive shocks of their lives when they were soaking in the hot spring after a hard day of training. Flashback. Soaking in the hot spring was both Mito and Kushina releasing sighs of content as the water eased their tense muscles and injuries as they healed. The 2 women's faces were slightly flushed due to the temperature of the hot spring. As they relaxed the warm steaming water, did Kushina idly glance at Mito. You know, Mito-chan, sometimes I wonder if Naruto-sama is trying to kill us with his training. She said, to which Mito, despite herself, gave out a small chuckle. Deciding to answer her, she spoke. That may sound true, but we both know Naruto-sama would never ever kill us intentionally. Unless we betrayed him, then he would, but we would never do that. He just wants us to be stronger than before. The war with Lucifer and Yami is making him feel all the more tense. He wants us to protect ourselves should he not be there. So in a way, from what I can see, he cares for us in his own way, and that is through this training. Well, that's what I can decipher, she said, sighing contentedly a bit, as her thoughts did go back to her master, making the flush go a bit deeper. Kushina was the same. As Mito's words replayed through her mind, she herself remembered the time she never rarely saw her master care for them. Remembering the time he commented on her beauty, her cooking, and the time he actually let her lean against him during Mito and Akemi's fight. Now that made her blush intensely, but not as much as the memory of both her and Mito sleeping in the same bed as him, thus ending in that predicament. Thinking about it made her whole face just explode in a cherry red, which gained Mito's attention. Worried for the woman she sees as a little sister, she spoke. "Oi, Kushina-chan, you okay?" "Oi, she said, worried for the redeed. Though when she only got an undignified response, she quickly started to shake and comically, might I add, slap across face repeatedly. After a few times, Mito finally got a response when Kushina blinked blankly at her, not caring about the stinging pain of being slapped so many times. Looking through her glazed eyes, did she give a goofy smile while mumbling, "Namito-chan, sorry, I was just remembering that event with Naruto-kun, you remember, don't you?" she said somewhat teasingly. When Mito heard about that, she immediately flushed a blood red, remembering exactly what happened. It was still fresh in her mind like it only happened yesterday. Just thinking about herself in such a compromising position, her oh so lovely dream about her master. Just remembering herself rubbing against his muscled rock-hard body, mumbling her love for him over and over sent chills down her spine. That's when she remembered that particular talk she and Kushina had right after that, which led to her blushing all the more, but controlled enough to speak. "No, Kushina-chan, I think we need to talk about what she said," referencing that made Kushina completely come out of her stupor. She knew what Mito was talking about, since they did promise to discuss this matter, lest that predicament happens again. Just thinking about it, like Mito sent her into a flushing mess. Looking at Mito wearily, she gave a nod. "Hi, I think we do," she stuttered, making Mito nod in confirmation despite her blush. A tense yet nervous silence followed for the two, which slowly started to take effect on them, as both were fidgeting. As the seconds followed by, the two got worse and worse until finally they couldn't help themselves. "I love Naruto-sama, I love Naruto-sama," they said in perfect unison, and once again a now immense agonizing silence followed, as the two beautiful women stared at the other with wide shocked eyes at the other's proclamation. "Well, that is before," again both pointed at one another and spoke. "Do you like Naruto-sama, Naruto-kun?" Again they spoke in unison, only this time Mito gave a shaky sigh before looking at the equally shocked Kushina. Gathering her shaky thoughts, did Mito speak first, this time breaking the awkward silence. "So I was right, you like him, as well. I had my suspicions, but to hear you say it with such a fiery proclamation, shows you love him just as much as I do, Kushi-chan," she said to her fellow slave and sister. She got a positive response when the Redid blushed at her words before giving a hesitant response, yet her words were filled with as much love and passion that made Mito's smile all the wider. "Yes, I've loved him for a long time now. For as long as I've been with him, I can't help but feel when I'm with him I am complete. It's hard to describe, but when he just commented on my beauty that one time, that alone sent me into a blissful state that sent my heart practically soaring. I love him so much and dearly wish to stay by his side for the rest of our eternal lives and the end of days. Even then I'll love him forever and ever." Kushina started with both her hands close to her chest in a praying fashion. Her cheeks now slightly pink as she expressed herself and her feelings for the man she loved to her fellow sister. "He saved my baby girl Naruki-chan, despite knowing there would be consequences if he went and did so. He's given me and Naruki a new life that I can honestly say is much better than my old one. I owe him everything he's given to me, and I will pay in full with everything I can give back, whether that be my life, my very soul. I'd gladly give my love to him in full just to be with him and by his side for eternity," she said, a few tears escaping her eyes. Mito throughout Kushina's talk was staring into her violet eyes, seeing the genuine love and affection she had for Naruto just as she did. Closing her eyes, Mito wrapped Kushina in a hug, bringing her closer to her, which the younger woman responded by hugging her back. Running a hand through her hair, Mito let out a small sigh, which soon turned into a soft smile directed at the woman in her arms. "You know, Kushina-chan, sometimes you can be so much stronger than myself. To admit this must have taken a lot of courage, something that I lack when it comes to this kind of thing. Let me tell you, what you've said is just like myself. When I first met our master, I was honestly both scared of him, but also entranced by him. The devil of Makai is what I truly saw when I first met him," she said, making the woman pull back to look at her, showing she was listening to her. Seeing this, Mito smiled before continuing, "But after a while I saw him differently. He is more than just a feared Akuma, devil of Makai. I saw him as the man that saved my life from a fate worse than death, a fate of slavery and servitude. From that day forward I eagerly awaited for his return to take my soul and finish our deal. I found it enticing in his presence even when I died. As time passed during our time together, I grew closer to him even if he doesn't know it or not. I love him so much to the point I'd die for him with a smile on my face. Even one day when he told me I looked beautiful without my hair done up in a bun. On that day my feelings for him, no matter how ridiculous it sounds, grew from just that one compliment she said, her eyes glazing over in remembrance of that day. Kushina, hearing this, smiled even more as she hugged Mito tighter. Looking down at her, Mito's eyes softened before placing her head on Kushina's own, sinking a bit further into the steamy water. Our master, Naruto-kun, he's a very complicated man for sure, but he's one I would never leave. It's been a small dream of mine just to make that man smile other than when he's fighting in battles or killing, to make him smile for something other than violence or mutilating his enemies. My love for him, you could say, runs deep, very deep, spoke the equally rosy pink-flushed Mito. Kushina heard her words as she embraced Mito, feeling her hands running through her hair. She let out a sigh of content before slowly she started to speak. I see, but you know, Mito-chan, if we want to stop those predicaments from happening again until we tell him how we feel, we're gonna need to outlet our emotions in another way. That is, she said, pulling back, now tears gone but her flush still in place. If anything, it was darker than before. You catch my drift, she said in a husky tone that sent shivers down Mito's spine, even more so when she saw that smirk on Kushina's face that was somehow infectious for it to spread across her angelic face. Leaning toward her, she spoke. I think I can agree with that, Kushi-chan, and with that somehow the steam got more visible as the two women closed the distance. If only they knew what was happening behind there. Flashback end. Ever since that day, both Mito and Kushina were strangely a lot closer than ever before, expressing their feelings for the man they loved, and seeing they needed an outlet for their pent-up emotions, they went with a different method, some could say. They were sisters, and practically knew one another like they lived the other person's life. Of course they kept their actions a secret from Naruto, and from both Akemi and Naruki. That would be a little awkward if that was known by them. Of course, due to this, the two women were now a lot more relaxed, and could further concentrate on their training with their pent-up emotions released. They still both loved their master dearly, and on that night promised one another they would show him how much they loved him. No matter how long it would take, they will show him one way or another, and bring a smile to his face. When that wasn't used for either killing demons, slaughtering armies of Yami or Lucifer's men. A smile they would cherish forever if they can bring it out of him. But that in itself is a challenge. But like the fiery women, they were more so Kushina. They wouldn't give up till they made that goal a reality, but also in one way or another express their feelings to him. So they wouldn't have to keep it pent up every time they walked by his side or be in his mere presence. Other than that though, not much had changed, with only Naruto noticing them working harder and more concentrated than ever before. It made him raise an eyebrow at their actions, but after a while just gave them a nod of approval, to which they blushed before giving bows, showing their gratitude. That wasn't the only thing for watching the three women train was the little Naruki, who upon seeing their training was practically awed at the sight. Understandably, she, as a child, was expected to be awed at such a sight, yet even more excited at seeing such things. Naruki had surprisingly enough asked Naruto politely yet excitingly if she could learn at what she deemed as the super cool moves Ka-san was doing. Yet to the child's disappointment, Naruto denied it, for this training would kill her no doubt. Her body was too young to deal with the ungodly strain of what he would need to teach her to just get up to speed with the normal training. So that was why right now Naruki was now seen walking with Akemi, as the little girl wanted to go outside the castle for a bit, and Kushina, trusting Akemi with Naruki's safety, let them go with Naruto's somewhat acceptance. Now originally Naruki was at first upset she couldn't train, but, like the smart little girl she is for her age, she, with the help of her Ka-san, told her the repercussions of her training and what they were doing, the consequences, and all. Understanding at least a little, she was still upset over it all. That was why she wanted to go outside and play like any other child her age would. Smiling up at Akemi, who smiled back at the girl she's come to see as her own daughter, and technically was her daughter by technicality. She held the little girl's hand with her own, as they walked over the tree that was a pretty big size, naturally so since it was nurtured in the soil of Eden itself. Only, as she and Naruki were walking, did neither of them see the shadowed figure within the forest, glaring at her specifically, with only the side of his white angel wings being seen. Demonic scum trying to poison the chosen one no longer. With that he moved. Same time, Hellwing Castle. As this went on, within the Hellwing Castle, both Mito and Kushina could be seen laying down on the couches, utterly exhausted from their training, disheveled and injured, yet they were already healing. Their mental exhaustion though wouldn't heal the same way. Shame. Naruto himself was looking at the two in approval. They were taking to their upgraded training quickly enough, and so too was Akemi, even if she was near death every time. He slowly nodded though that the results were already showing that Akemi was in only 5 days stronger than she was before. Not overly so, but she showed improvement. Though, as he slowly gazed out at the window, he couldn't shake the feeling something was about to happen. The embodiment of slight anxiety settled into him, that which made him slightly frown in both confusion, yet to his own confusion anger. Yet why? Ever since he let Akemi and Naruki outside for a bit, he was hit with a sudden rush of something that which resulted in him frowning further. What is this sense of dread? That's when he and Kushina and Mito felt it. The sudden spike of power coming down on them, yet none flinched, but they did feel the holy power within. Thus making both Mito and Kushina gain worried expressions, as Naruto's own eyes narrowed, as they suddenly flashed a dark crimson when he felt that power. Though that's when he reached out with his senses only to feel Akemi's power signature incredibly low, and Naruki. Sensing Naruki's made his fist clench so tight it drew blood, for hers was gone. This better not be what I think it is, or there is gonna be hell. Reacting quickly, Naruto turned to both Mito and Kushina before speaking. Girls, come, we have an intruder outside the castle, let's go, he said, but, as the girls were coming into shock, they could feel his pure anger rolling off him in waves. Yes, Naruto-sama. They spoke, and with that the three quickly disappeared in 3 pillars of hellfire. 2 of them hoping both Akemi and Naruki were okay, while the last was a different case altogether. Same time, Kami's court. As this was going on, we could see in the court of Kami once again the sound of arguing was being thrown back and forth on the recent events of heaven's #1 enemy besides Lucifer himself. With the recent actions of one devil have sent the once controlled and somewhat calm court of the all-powerful deities into disarray and total chaos. One deity blamed the other, insults were thrown to another, even the higher-than-thou deities were acting immature to this recent uproar that has shifted heaven off course and into the proverbial realm of disorder. Basically, the lower and mid-level deities were acting like spoiled little children that just had their favorite toy taken from them. Elwing has gone too far this time. Not only has he taken in the Chosen One's mother as his slave, but now has the very Chosen One in his damned clutches. We can't let him get away with this for too long. Have we let him go with his sins against us? Yelled out one of these very deities, this being the infamous Susanoo, elder sibling of Izanagi's children, and got over the storms. His outcry caused even further chaos within the very court. Usually the deity is calm and kept to himself, but with this recent action even he himself is outraged by this being's action against them. It was like spitting in their faces before rubbing it in, further antagonizing them. Honestly, he didn't know why Kami or Megami for that matter were lenient on the set being. Maybe it had something to do with them watching over him for so long. Now said deities were both extremely annoyed with their fellow deities, if you could call them that, with how they were acting. Yes, Naruto had performed a heinous act against them and all of heaven, but in reality they were relieved for him doing such a thing. Kami by all rights was inwardly thanking him over and over inwardly, while berating herself for even putting that damnable prophecy on her in the first place. She may be the strongest deity of all of them, second only to the god of creation Izanagi himself, but she had her faults, and this was her biggest one. She could only once again thank Naruto for this, inwardly correcting her mistake, even albeit in his own way, which in itself was unique. Yet she had to keep appearances, so standing up she let out a small burst of her power, quickly silencing all of the deities in the room, and making them fall flat on their asses in their respective seats. All of them, unlike Megami, were shaking in their seats from the immense pressure of power that Kami had just given off. If there was one thing they all agreed on, it was that. Never ever piss off Kami, for she is called the deity of life for a damned reason. Giving it she can as easily take it away. Now that you all are done acting like little children, we can truly begin this meeting. Now, as you all know by now, one howling Naruto, Akuma, Demon Titan, of Makai, has committed the act of taking not only a human to Makai, but not just any human, the one I have chosen to be the savior of humanity. It is a heinous act for sure, but let me remind you all, if he hadn't arrived she would have been dead by now. She said, making a few of them flinch at that. That is before Yami snorted before speaking. That may be true, Kami-sama, but do not forget taking a human to Makai is a serious offense. He was allowed to take both Uzumaki Mito and Uzumaki Kushina's souls and bodies to Makai, since they made a deal with him. Now Uzumaki Naruki is different. For one, she never made a deal with him, and two, she is the chosen one, thus that should give her an even more important role considering this. Spoke the deity and ruler of hell. His response got a few nods from other deities, for it was true, taking a human to mockery, if they had nothing to do with that demon, was against the laws set by Kami herself. If that mortal had no affiliation with that certain demon, but was still taken to mockery, then by all rights the demon is said to be killed on sight by all means. But there are certain conditions. Kami inwardly cursed Yami, but outwardly nodded with his response. That is true, but that is not the case for you. See, in Naruki's case, it's that she is in reality when howling Naruto marked Kushina during her pregnancy, so, but before she could finish, the court doors slammed open, alerting all deities within. Looking toward those that interrupted the meeting came in a bloody, struggling armored angel guard. A few deities let out a gasp or two, as Kami and Megami quickly stood up with urgent, concerned expressions planted on their faces. Daisuke Taicho, what happened to you? Questioned Megami. Said Taicho slowly walked forward, blood dripping from his severely injured body. He spoke while doing so, but his words alone made all the deities pale, and made Kami and Megami both become shocked than the rest. It was Nora. He and the Crusader Legion, the ones who put in solitude, broke out, and Nora set out to make it to get the chosen one. His men held us off. I'm sorry. He trailed off before falling, that is before he was caught by a fellow guard. As he was dragged off to the medical bay, his words rang throughout all of the court. Some were shocked, mostly all of them were shocked at the news recently given to them. Hell, even Yami was wide-eyed at the words spoken. Well, that is before the words of a trembling Kami rang throughout the court. The words spoke of how Kami was feeling at the moment, and that was both anger and, shockingly enough, a slight trace of fear. Those fools have no idea what they've done. The now trembling Kami Megami was in a similar state, as she too knew exactly what was about to happen. Right then, before anyone could question her. Boom. A giant explosion of pure power pressured on court as well, making the very chamber crack and tremble. Some deities had to hold onto the table to keep their damned balance from both the pressure and shaking of their very realm. That is before they felt a very familiar spike of Yaokai that made all of the deities' eyes widen at both realizing just who it was and how powerful the Yaokai was itself. Megami could only utter a few words that summed up all their thoughts at that moment, as she stared at the swirling mass of darkness and hellfire outside of the Crusader Legion's headquarters. He's here. Hellwing has come. Earlier Hellwing Castle grounds. Before this, within Nakai we find outside of Hellwing Castle both Naruto, Mito, and Kushina appearing in pillars of hellfire. Just at the spot Naruto sensed the spike before feeling Naruki's signature completely vanish. As they appeared though, Naruto quickly caught Akemi lying on the ground severely injured from what he could see. This was followed by both Kushina and Mito, who quickly rushed to her side. As they did, Naruto slowly surveyed the area only to make his suspicion all the more positive, resulting in him clenching his fist tighter and tighter by the second. Walking forward to huddled women, he looked down at Akemi's fallen form. He eyed her and saw injuries only a holy one could give. Her left arm was cauterized, as was her whole back from what seemed like a blade. Though when he saw Akemi crying and mumbling about Naruki, did he pay close attention. I tried to stop him, but I see couldn't. He overwhelmed me. I'm so sorry I failed you. I couldn't protect her. I failed her. I'm sorry, Naruto-sama. She spoke undeterred. As they were spoken, Mito and Kushina's eyes were wide at the revelation that is before the trickling of fear started to seep into them. That is before Naruto slowly, ever so slowly, kneeled down, the bangs of his spiky hair shadowing his eyes, giving him all the more of an eerily appearance. He slowly placed his hand on Akemi's forehead before speaking in a quiet manner that somewhat surprised both Mito and Kushina. Well, that is until they could hear the underlying tone of what made them both shiver, since it was the coldness of which could not be matched with his voice. I do not worry any longer. Akemi sleeps, he said, and in some way, despite her injuries, Akemi's eyes suddenly started to close. As they finally closed, Naruto channeled his Yaokai into his hand before closing his eyes. Murmuring a few words, did the devil speak. Chikai yawned, mind read. Using this technique, Naruto saw what Akemi saw. Basically, everything she saw he saw ever so recently. And what he saw confirmed his suspicions, so slowly releasing the technique did he stand up, his eyes still shadowed by the bangs of his golden hair. His fists clenched so tight the knuckles were bleached white, as blood seemed to drip rapidly onto the ground. He did good, Akemi holding him off long enough to make him spike his power. Now rest, you deserve that much. With that, Naruto slightly turned his head in Mito and Kushina's direction to where he spoke. It would seem a certain legion, and their captain need to learn something. Mito, Kushina, take Akemi in and start healing her. Those wounds are from a holy blade. If left alone too long, it will poison her. Spoke Naruto, his tone cold and impassive as ever, but the two women could practically see the anger rolling off him in waves. Mito quickly hefted Akemi up in a bridal carry, that is before Kushina looked at her master and lord and spoke, already sensing what he was gonna do. She could see Naruki gone, and that worried her oh so very much, but if there was one thing that she knew about Naruto, it was that when you've taken what was his, then you are plain out dead. Naruki was, and is his daughter, and thus his family was practically handing himself to the Grim Reaper. She wouldn't plead him to bring her back, no matter how much she wanted to just go with him herself. For she knew deep within her that he would do it. Even if he had to bring heaven down to do so. All she could do was utter a few words to him before rushing to the castle. Naruto-sama, good luck, she said, giving a quick bow before she turned around and started forward to the castle. Though when she said this, the beautiful Redeed never saw Naruto's small smirk at her words, which was soon replaced with a frown, as his purple glowing eyes flashed vibrantly. Kushina, don't worry, Naruki will be just fine. Hearing those words brought a smile to her face, for even if he didn't mean to, his very words made her heart and soul swell up in warmth and protection. Just hearing those words again made her smile grow all the more wide, to which she responded back. Her words were quiet and soft, but he heard her perfectly clear. I know, after all, her father is coming to get her to go get Naruto-sama. Her words made him mentally raise an eyebrow, yet chose not to say anything, but to give a small nod. With that, Kushina dashed toward the castle, intent to heal Akemi of her severe wounds. Feeling she was gone, Naruto inhaled before his eyes closed for only a brief second. As he did, he was suddenly enveloped in a swirling mass of pure darkness that had the occasional streak of black lightning. Within that second Naruto sunk into the swirling mass, eyes closed off, but his very body was outlined with a purple aura of some sort. It was like he was channeling something. If only heaven knew was coming. Present time heaven. Just like before, as those within the court of Kami could see from the palace of divinity like all other residents in heaven, the giant swirling black mass of darkness and lightning circulated in front of the Tengoku no Kuroseed Gundam HQ, Heavenly Crusader Legion headquarters. Black lightning surged the giant mass of darkness, as it shadowed over most of heaven itself. Residents and soldiers alike looked up at the giant mass that just radiated bloodlust, yet so much power it was both astounding and terrifying at the same time. Seeing it spread further and further made some of the weak-willed angels just pass out right where they stood due to the immense pressure, and Yaokai just coming down like a storm. It was simply shocking, more so to the surprise and shocked deities, for beings of supreme power and control something like this has never once occurred, for not a single demon from Makai had the power to come right into their very realm, but to actually bring down such power that made the weaker ones fall to their very knees. But what no one saw was both Kami and Megami's small smirks, as they both gazed at the both terrifying yet somewhat enticing whirlpool cloud of darkness. It made them ever so slightly shiver, but what would make the two supreme goddesses over life and death have such a reaction? It was because of the anxiety of what was to come. Then without a single warning, a violet light could be seen in the middle of the swirling mass. It twinkled in a deadly light before it suddenly shot off like a missile, catching all of the deities' attention. They could only stare as the violet comet of light shot down onto the Crusader Legion. Before anyone could utter a single word. Boom. The frontal building of the HQ exploded in a fiery blaze of hellfire from the sudden impact. This explosion rocked even the palace walls itself, as the shockwaves of the crash blew through all of the HQ's vicinity. That was not all, for lay burning on the ground where once Crusaders of said attack legion burned by the very fires of hell itself. Soon though the building that exploded upon being hit exploded once more, only this time a giant pillar of hellfire shot up into heaven's skies, darkening it all the more. What the hell is Hellwing doing? Has that fool truly lost his mind? Shouted the shocked flabbergasted deity called Amatsu Mikabashi. Spoke his eyes wide as can be, as he along with his fellow deities, stared at the destruction that just happened before their very eyes. I agree, has he truly become arrogant enough to attack head-on? I knew he was stupid, but to really come into a realm and have the audacity to make such an attack on us. I say we get rid of this pest right now. Spoke another deity, this one being Kanjin, god of fire. Though he is said to be god of fire, his flames are not nearly as powerful as those of the goddess of the sun Amaterasu. His very own flames could burn him into ashes in mere seconds. Megami rolled her eyes at their words, that is until she looked at her sister, to which she saw Kami looking at the destruction happening before them with calm, serene divine azure blue eyes. She suddenly spiked her powers when she saw other deities beginning to issue orders. Do not do anything, this is business between only the Crusader Legion and Hellwing Naruto. All I want right now is our soldiers to surround the Crusader HQ outer walls, in case Hellwing does attack further from the area. Other than that, no one is to provoke him or attack him in any way. Spoke Kami, her power spike getting all of the deities to instantly freeze up. But upon hearing her words made them all go into shock, other than Megami, that is, being the one to speak. Tsukiyomi spoke with a shocked tone, but Kami-sama. What he's doing is a direct assault upon heaven and a declaration of war. You can't mean to say we're gonna let him go. Her words spoken, to which Kami let out a sigh. That may be true, but you all need to take into account that one Hellwing has only come here for what is his, and his alone, that was wrongfully taken from him. 2 is that Nora and the Crusader Legion, as a whole, has betrayed me, their leader. Such actions against me are given a punishment, but this being their second time doing so, their punishment is death. Thirdly, this is no declaration for war. As I said earlier, Hellwing is here to retrieve what was taken from him, and by all rights he will get it back with or without our interference. She said in a tone of commandance that made all of them have a cold chill run up their spine. Megami discreetly smiled at her fellow sister's words. What she said was the complete truth, and she knew both her and Kami did not want to send their troops to Naruto. For one, they'd be killed easily, and second, they didn't want to anger him further than he already is. Plus, we don't want him dead. That man is so interesting, she mentally thought. Now, as the deities replayed their leader's words, they suddenly came to an immediate halt when something came over them. Speaking up, did Raijin speak for all of his fellow deities? Kami-sama, at least tell me what exactly was taken from Hellwing for him to do such act against us. What in the three realms could make a devil from Makai of his stature come into heaven like he has, and do so much destruction? What I'm trying to say is, what exactly was taken from him to cause so much chaos? He asked, summing up all of their thoughts. Kami's angelic face surprisingly formed into a more frown expression, as her eyes took on a glint of something akin to anger of sorts, to which made few of those that looked into her eyes flinch ever so much. Narrowing her eyes, Kami waved her hand, forming a spiritually made window of sorts that was showing what was directly happening at the Crusader Legion HQ. While doing so, she decided to answer Raijin's question. That fool Nora kidnapped one Uzumaki Naruki, took her from Hellwing and her mother. Not only that, but that fool broke the law. He has not only taken the slave of Hellwing, since the little child was branded by his mark when Hellwing originally branded Uzumaki Kushina her mother. She was branded as well from within Kushina's womb. She gained the mark as well, giving her the very same status as her mother. But also nor that fool has taken Hellwing's daughter, and honestly I don't blame him for doing what he's doing right now. And with that the Kami and Megami watched on, ignoring the utterly shocked deities before them. Their eyes were planted on the window that showed what was happening right now, and if one were to look close, they would see the interest brimming in their eyes. Heaven Crusader Legion HQ. Within the once honored and famed HQ of Heaven's strongest military force known in all the 3 realms. A place that was once renowned for its making of the strongest crusaders ever to be seen before. A place of such praise by the very deities themselves that made it famed to be the strongest academy for crusaders. Now it was in total chaos and disorder, dishonored and stripped of their ranks, and the HQ up in flames. Destruction all around the area made the younger ones flee in terror as the veterans charged into battle. The very skies above them were not the normal heavenly blue like before, but were now a dark crimson streaked with blackness from the rising smoke of the destroyed building and burning bodies. At the frontal building of said HQ could we find it nothing more than completely destroyed, now replaced with a giant crater, the size of which was impossible to measure. The outer rim of said crater had the flames of hell dancing around the circular disfigurement in the ground. Bodies of veteran crusaders laid on the ground burning and screaming bloody murder, as their very skin and organs burned to ashes, as their blood boiled to such extreme temperatures. Some were long dead, showing only a hellfire engulfed skeleton, or others were rolling around trying to put out the flames that could not be quenched. Their screams made the surrounding crusaders flinch at their comrades' pain and agony, yet they all paid attention to what was in the middle of this crater of death and destruction. For within this crater, as the smoke from the impact disappeared, did it show the kneeling form of one Hellwing Naruto. His form was slowly rising. The flames of hell slowly circled around him like they were responding to their master. Slowly standing up to his full height, did the said devil slowly look up from the crater he was in, and into the faces of the crusaders surrounding him completely. Though when the first crusader saw his eyes through his spiny golden bangs, did the man start to shake uncontrollably, as did many others when they met the gaze of said devil. For what could be seen was his demonic pair of violet pupil eyes filled with no other than a sinister violet shade that could only be described as the ultimate bloodlust, for in both eyes was a demonic slit of sorts that seemed to penetrate the souls of all that looked into his very demonic orbs. Slowly walking forward did Naruto speak only one word that sent every single crusader into disarray and charged at him like a stampede of raging yet desperate bulls. Die. Crusader HQ Main Temple. As the sounds of screams and explosions could be heard that shook every temple in the HQ, could there be seen in the main building an uncountable number of veteran crusaders armed to the teeth. There were so many that filled the room that it could be noted that it was all of the set veteran crusaders. All were armed and ready, facing a giant threshold that stood attached to the walls. It stood tall and imposing, with it being 10 feet high and 10 feet in width. It was made out of some kind of metal, but it sure did look impenetrable. Upon these countless crusaders stood in the very middle of them all was what could be seen as the leader of them all. The captain of the Crusader Legion, the once honored and famed military force, and right hand of Kami herself. The man named Norris stood armored and all weapons held in hand, while the other had the struggling child of one Uzumaki Naruki by the collar of her shirt. "Let me go, you big jerk," you heard Akemi-chan. "You're in so much trouble when my mama gets here," shouted the struggling yet teary-eyed Naruki. Her kitsune ears flapped and twitched angrily as her tail waved around frantically. She tried greatly to get out of Nora's grasp, but to no avail, from both his strength and height far outweighed her own. Though she did sense the many explosions and screams and tremors from outside this big place, and a weird feeling that made her feel like she knew this feeling from somewhere before. And somehow it made her unlike the crusaders that were shivering in the armor, both warm and protected. She thought it was Kushina that was coming for her, since she thought Naruto as the big meanie. Nor the man just grunted, "Shush, child, you've been tainted by that meddling little bastard Hellwing. You're the chosen one of Kami-sama, and I will not have you be churned into that unholy one's clutches to make you his weapon," spat the once honorary crusader leader. Now when Naruki heard this, she had blinked confusingly, as the man's words made her confused. Nora had said the big meanie was churning her. Yet he had not trained her in the least, due to the training being too lethal to her health and very being. Now she may be a very young child, but she wasn't stupid. As she clashed the two sayings, she finally came to a realization that made her frown. "That Nora, this jerk is lying. Naruto told me that training me now is too dangerous. This guy is lying. Nora Taicho. He's broken through the third barricade," shouted a crusader who had just flown in through the ceiling, his armor broken and burnt in many places. Part of his wings were burnt, but looked to have been torn off from further burnings. But the glaring thing was that his left arm looked to have been torn completely off. It made Nora and some crusaders, seeing his injury, frown. Naruki perked up when she heard the man's words, especially when he said he instead of she. It made her think on exactly who was coming if it wasn't her beloved Ka-chan. That is until her kitsune ears twitched before perking up suddenly, when she suddenly sensed that something closing in fast. Very fast. Who's that, and why does this familiar feeling come to me when I sense that something, thought the confused Naruki. Nora's eyes, though, upon hearing his soldier's words, whitened slightly, and before anyone could even utter a word or make a single action. Clang. The sound of metal bending and pounding reverberated the area. Everyone's attention was quickly focused upon the giant threshold of a door that now had an imprint of something akin to a fist of some sort. Even Naruki was focused upon this with a slight amount of awe and growing curiosity of who was exactly behind that door. Clang. Another fist imprint hit the door, making it tremble and bend as the walls cracked with every resounding boom from the metal giant door. Suddenly Nora yelled out, "He's coming to brandish your weapons. We will not allow this unholy creature take the chosen one back into his evil clutches." His shout echoed all around the room. Her. The sound of sword drawing sounded, as every crusader that was within the proverbial sea of crusaders held out their own weapon of choice. As did Nora when he channeled his holy energy into his blade, making it be engulfed in some type of white aura of sorts. Clang. Clang. 4 more resounding bangs on the giant threshold sounded once more, with 4 more imprints embedded within. Each one making it separate from being closed off from the outside to now being slightly open. Now upon the 4th clang everyone could see the door's middle were slightly open to the outside world. But what next appeared though shook everyone to their very core. But Naruki, when she saw the same as the others, she wasn't scared nor terrified, but instead she felt herself be engulfed in a sense of both familiarity and warmth of the utmost degree that it sent a shiver down her spine. A chill that made her smile for some reason that she did not understand, yet didn't question it, for she was stuck in a growing awe of sorts. Now what exactly was in this split of the once thought impenetrable threshold was the dark and violet slitted eyes of one very pissed devil. It only happened, but in just that 1 second alone, from the protections the Crusaders and Nora thought they had, they now find themselves utterly and completely wrong. Do you think this little door can hold me back? Fools. They weren't prepared for what happened next, for suddenly the dented beyond all repair slabs of giant steel were suddenly blown open, and off the walls they were hinged from, of course, the doors flew right into the Crusaders, to which some had the unfortunate luck of being hit by the slabs of metal, resulting in them becoming nothing more than a bloody smear on the floor. As this happened, the smoke from the doors having been blown off started to clear up. As it did so, the sound of footsteps could be heard. Yet not a sound other than this could be heard. Many of the Crusaders were still in shock at what just happened to their strongest door be blown away like nothing, and the death of their fellow Crusaders. Them dying in such a way, they didn't die fighting, but died by being smashed like a pumpkin. From the door. Though through it all, the little Naruki, being held by the collar of her shirt, was gazing at the shadowed figure walking closer and closer. His very footsteps somehow echoed in the eerily silent HQ temple area. As the shadowed figure could be seen getting closer and closer with the smoke clearing up, did Naruki's eyes widen, and Nora's own narrow in both disgust and hatred. For when the smoke fully cleared did the figure known as Howling Naruto be seen, walking ever so calmly to Nora and Naruki, his eyes trained only on Naruki alone, neither caring for the countless armed crusaders before him. His demonic gaze lingered on Naruki for a brief moment until they settled on Nora, to where they showed the utter coldness only Naruto could produce. His hands at his sides, his facial expression impassive as ever, but those that could see within his eyes would see the cold fury beneath his cold demonic slitted visage. As he walked closer and closer to both Nora and the Crusaders, he didn't show a hint of surprise when suddenly 2 Crusaders appeared at his sides in mid-swing of their weapons. Even when the blades were about an inch from his head, he did not show a single emotion. He ignored Naruki's shocked and worried expression or smug one from Nora's, thinking he was gonna be killed. Wrong, for suddenly, Naruto appeared behind the Crusaders, and still kept walking toward Nora, leaving behind the 2 Crusaders looking at his back in something akin to both shock and, strangely enough, pain. Then a second later both Crusaders had just exploded in a gory mess, brain matter, bone, and blood showering the air before raining down on the ground and Crusaders alike. Their headless bodies slowly fell forward, resulting in both hitting the floor dead all the same, resulting in more blood painting the ground. Yet without a glance or hesitation, Naruto didn't stop, nor did he turn his demonic gaze from Nora's face. The devil didn't care for those around him. All he did care about was his target, and target alone. The one who dared to take what was his. He was gonna get it back. This foolish little fallen crusader will pay for his transgression. And he will pay with his death. As he walked toward them, Naruto narrowed his violet-slitted eyes on Nora. That's all the Crusaders saw, Naruto's demonic violet-slitted gaze, before he felt an immeasurable agonizing pain erupt in his stomach, that is before something grasped his face hard, before whatever had him by his face started to squeeze his face hard, making him let out a grunt of pain. Due to this, Nora was not able to see, unlike everyone else who was able to see what was happening before them. With Naruki we could find her held in the free left arm of Naruto, her eyes though wide, as can be, as she was held protectively by Naruto. His very aura made all tension she had fade away before unintentionally snuggling further into him. She could feel a warmth of some kind exuding from him, that made her feel all the more safe from any and all danger outside his grasp. Her purple orbs were staring up in total shock, yet a growing awe at the scene happening before her. Right before her eyes was the one person she saw, as the big meteor scary man was now standing tall and imposing, holding up Nora by his face while lifting him up ever so slowly. She noticed Naruto had not glanced at her during this, for his gaze was shadowed by the bangs of his hair as he did this. Honestly, the child was trying to think of all possible reasons as to why this man was here. She would get her answer with his next action though, as before her very eyes did she see Naruto lift the struggling Nora off the ground inch by agonizing inch, as his fingers dug into his face, ever so slowly making Nora's scream to which was muffled by his offender's palm. "You foolish little angel, think you can get away for your action against me? Coming in Makai, and taking what did not belong to you for this, you shall die not only for taking what was mine, but also giving you death befitting for someone who thought to be able to kill me with such a lowly trap as this," spoke Naruto in a very calm tone that had the hidden coldness of 1,000 glaciers within. All he got in response was Nora screaming all the more, which was muffled by his palm. He however didn't stop his increasing grip on the Crusader's face and forehead. He gripped even harder, resulting in a loud crack. The sound of bone cracking sounded, as Nora let out an anguished muffled scream of immense pain, as his forehead now cracked under the tremendous pressure of Naruto's ever iron increasing grip. Slowly blood started to seep not only out of Nora's nose, but also his very eyes and ears. Due to such extreme pressure being put on him, the blood gathered up in his head was trying to find a way out. And it was ever so slowly. "MFFFHGGHGH. Was the muffled Nora trying to speak, only to scream all the more when Naruto squeezed tighter, cracking and shattering most of his teeth. He didn't stop there though, as Naruto spoke. "This is your end, you pathetic piece of filth. You who dared take what was mine, and not think of the consequences, deserves this death. Now pay for your actions against me and my slave person. Akuma Mom. Fuhai, demon magic. Rot." And just like its namesake, Nora's body was suddenly enveloped by Naruto's hand by a sickening deep brown color, which slowly seeped into Nora's body. A second later, until Nora's eyes suddenly snapped open until his screams could be heard even through Naruto's hand, he was struggling all the more with a painful agonizing vigor. Yet proved fruitless, as suddenly his left arm fell right off his shoulder, and hitting the ground, it left a poisonous green smoke from the arm and shoulder. Then like that his right arm slid right off next, as did his eyeballs, literally rolling out of their sockets, as his hair literally fell out of his head. His legs had fallen to the ground, as well, leaving him nothing more than a rotting torso and waist. Naruto let out a small frown of disgust when he felt the blood of the dying angel held in his grasp flood his palm and leak off his hand. Disgusting, and with but a swing of his hand, he sent the rotting angel away from him, before pointing his palm toward Nora, making it crackle with black lightning, before an orb of darkness formed in his palm. The worm, then the orb suddenly shot off from his palm. It hurtled toward Nora, and when it hit him it exploded, completely decimating him utterly and completely, along with a few hundred crusaders. They didn't stand a chance from the orb of darkness and destruction taking them out and part of the temple walls. Seeing the full dead, Naruto slowly looked around him to see the now shocked yet enraged crusaders surrounding him. Not a single way out for him and Naruki, or so thought the crusaders thought. For slowly Naruto glanced down at the little girl held in his arm, and upon seeing her wide shocked purple eyes, did he give her a sign of acknowledgement. "Child, hold on to me, for this is about to get very wild and very bloody real fast." Now when the little devil kitsune hybrid heard this, she didn't waste a minute before she did, as she asked, grasping onto him, did she wait and watch for what was to come. Seeing, as she did, as told, Naruto moved his gaze from her to the crusaders surrounding him. He didn't waste a second when he let out all of his titanic power, come crashing down all of those within the Crusader Temple and HQ altogether. An unbearable pressure had crashed down all of the Crusaders, as Naruto's form suddenly exploded with both the fires of hell wrapping around him, as the tendrils of pure sickening darkness waved around him. The very ground cracked, as the very area started to tremble, making many stumble in shock from the shaking. Even outside of the attack KQ with the surrounding of said area was the other divine legions had to hold their ground, as the ground beneath them started to shift uncontrollably. If one were to look up into the very skies of heaven, they'd see it being pitch black with the occasional crimson and purple lightning. It was like an earthquake had come forth in heaven's main dominion, and it was getting stronger and stronger each second. The only safe place was the temple of the deities, and even it started to crack bit by the power coming forth. It was like a damned monsoon was coming down on them all, about to crush them all and take them away to their death. Watching this within the palace, the deities from all realms could only watch in utter shock at what was happening before their very eyes. The sudden spike of power caught them off guard, yes, but with it rapidly increasing to levels they thought was impossible even for the famed devil race of Makai. But right now, before their eyes showed Hellwing Naruto, standing there killing Nora, now holding the child taken from him with the Makai elements of darkness, and hellfire circling around him, as if he was their master. His golden spiky hair seemed to shift and sway in the chaotic winds of his ungodly power, making him all the more fierce and fearful in the eyes of those that were below his power. Even some of the low-level deities were shaking when his power increased all the more. As they watched Naruto from the spiritual window made by Kami, his power breaking every boundary they thought was possible, they never saw the excited eyes of both Kami nor Megami looking upon Naruto's form. They both looked upon him, seeing his power increasing further than thought possible even to them, and that was what excited them, a being of such lineage and power that not even they knew existed until now. Hellwing Naruto was most certainly a very interesting being to the two goddesses, and they were inwardly adamant to know more of him than they already knew. Truly his power now increasingly caused their very palace to shake, and if not for them, and the other deities' presence within it would have most assuredly fallen into nothing more than rubble beneath Hellwing's power coming down on it. They could all watch, as Naruto's body started to glow, a mix of three shades, them being a dark violet, a bloody crimson, and a void-less shade black. The elements of hellfire seemed to circulate around him, as did the tendrils of darkness combining into one, resulting in a giant pillar. With Naruto, as the pillar came around him, it mixed with the fires of hell, and darkness did not notice the changes happening to him, as he let himself transform into his true form. The one he used back during Naruki's very birth, the form that shocked even the goddess of death herself, Megami. The form that will now shake heaven to its very foundations, and shift it in a state of pure chaos. As he immersed himself in his form, he would be surprised at the changes to his form, and how this event would change the watching wide-eyed Naruki who beheld him from within the pillar of fire and darkness in a gaze of pure awe. Her eyes twinkling, as she beheld the changing form of the man that saved her life, and changed it all for the better. Her eyes gazed with a look only a child her age could give at seeing something so amazing. What was all Naruki could think of, as she watched the man that held her change before her very eyes, into something that made her eyes get wider and wider with each passing second. Now on the outside of this giant pillar of mixed energies, it tearing through the devastated temple, and piercing the very skies of heaven, made it be seen by all of heaven, as it lit up like a blazing torch in the darkest of nights. But those that thought the shaking would stop or ease up were dead wrong, for suddenly it got even worse when Naruto's power suddenly spiked even higher than ever, before making a proverbial rip appear in the sky. Even Kami and Megami's eyes had widened when they felt Naruto's power go beyond what they thought it ever could, reaching levels that both excited them and disturbed their fellow deities. That is before, right there in the HQ of the Crusader Legion of Heaven, did the pillar coming out of it suddenly expand inch by inch, decimating all in its path. That is before it stopped, before it suddenly all went down into the ruined temple. Then again, this was all the calm before the storm, as the saying goes. And they were all right. Megami let out a small grin before whispering to her sister, "Now Kami-ni-chan, watch, it's about to get real good." She said to Kami, who watched with her eyes set in place at what was happening before her. At the temple, deep within its first floor, could we find the Crusaders all surrounding a crater that had been formed by the giant pillar that was, but a moment ago, piercing their very sky. As they all looked deep within, did they see a shadowed figure in the smoke that couldn't be seen. That is until the smoke suddenly was blown away, revealing a newly changed Hellwing Naruto. And by Izanagi himself, what a change he undergone. For now, standing in the crater that made every single crusader on that floor shake in pure unadulterated fear, did they see the fully transformed of the man that had annihilated over half of their veterans on the night of Naruki's birth. Only this time they could see changes upon him that sent many weak-willed ones to their knees in sheer terror. It was understandable really, for before their very eyes was the same 7-foot pitch black knight of Hellwing Naruto in his true and all-powerful form. Only changes could be seen that were not there from all those years ago, that were not there before. These changes being that his golden violet-tipped hair could be seen flowing down his back in a wild spiky mane. His demonic armor overall had even more spikes coming out, while also his demonic claws were all the more defined than before, as were the spikes jutting out of his elbows and kneecaps, both being a foot long and glinting in what little light that was shown. That was not all for his demonic helmet. It seemed to have fused with his face somewhat, since his demonic glowing eyes seemed all the more stronger than before, a power long thought gone, and so ancient seemed to glow within his eyes, that mixed with his now cold fury that he held. Though on the lower part of the helmet was the one thing that truly scared most of the Crusaders, and disturbed most of the observing deities. It seemed, as Naruto's jaw and teeth melded with the helmet, giving him all the more nightmarish image, for when Naruto's mouth opened in a slight grin, it did show his giant razor-sharp mauve-green fangs. Every tooth was a giant fang that could tear and shred through all. What was even more disturbing was the smoke coming out of his mouth and nostrils. Then, as Naruto stepped out, did his final changes make their appearance, them being both his wings and tail. Or should I say tails? For now his 6-foot demonic tail was now occupied by a similar tail, looking just like the other scales, spikes and all, only both bigger in length, reaching 7 feet now. while on his back where his pitch black angel wings was there was now another pair of wings below the first pair, them being the same shade and shape as the first, but with all 4 wingers 14 feet in length, thus they stretched outward, touching the ends of his self-made crater. As he took another step, the demonic entity of power and bloodlust slowly looked down, ignoring all those around him. When he looked held firmly yet protectively in his left arm was the once again wide-eyed Naruki, who was looking back into his eyes, her light purple orbs meeting dark violet slitted ones. That is before Naruki saw something in his eyes that made her feel the most extreme comfort that only someone of a parent could give. No, a father could give to their child. She subtly snuggled further into him, ignoring his cold metallized body, just embracing the warmth he somehow gave off, that which slowly filled her very being. Letting out a slight mewl, did Naruki mutter out something that which Naruto did hear yet chose not to respond. Papa. Naruto eyed the child before he closed his eyes. Slowly he started to float off the ground and out of the crater. He reached the flat ground to where Crusaders gave him a wide berth, before surrounding his demonic form once again. He ignored all those around him, as he gazed at the child in his arms. A feeling of something swelled up within him, as he held the little hybrid child in his arm. What that was he did not know, and it made him frown from within his helmet. That is before foolishly 5 Crusaders quickly attacked him from all sides, aiming toward him, 2 swinging their blades at him, and 3 others chanting spells to blast him. Naruto's eyes widened though before they narrowed, and in but a flash of silver, those 5 Crusaders found themselves without a head. The sound of decapitated angels fell to the ground, as Naruto stood there, his right arm stretched outward, holding his signature blood-forged Adachi. Only this time, like himself, did his weapon change. It looked the same as before, with only slight differences. The guard changed from a demon's maw into 4 devil horns facing the opposite direction from each other. A scale of some sort traveled a bit up the blade, as the demonic red runes within seemed to have melted, and melded with his obsidian blade, giving it a hue of bloody crimson. The pommel of his Nadachi was spiked as well. The chain was still there, only longer than before, about 2 feet in length, with strangely a demonic horned skull of sorts dangling at the end. A small grin planted on his face, as its empty eye sockets seemed to glow red like a twinkling flicker of sorts, but it was there. The length of his newly changed blade was 8 feet in length, thus giving it more reach and more destructive power. Looking upon his newly changed blade, did Naruto just give a small nod of approval, before he slowly turned his head at the enemies around him. Gripping the Kushiroku, Apocalypse, making it burst forth with the fires of hell and darkness enveloping it, did he speak in a tone that showed just how angry this enraged devil truly was. You little brats will pay the price for angering me and taking my child from me. Feel the wrath of a wrathful Akuma. And with but a second did Naruto disappear, only to appear behind a group of several hundred Crusaders. In that split second though, all those Crusaders suddenly erupted in multiple spouts of blood, gore, flesh, and bone. Their organs flying through the air and falling to the ground, as did multiple dead bodies of the dead Crusaders. But he did not stop there. Channeling darkness and hellfire into his blade, did Naruto rear back before appearing in front of another few hundred Crusaders. His blade flaming with the mixed elements of hellfire and darkness, did he unleash his attack. Jigoku Pia's Hell Piercer, and with not a second to spare, the giant blade-like attack shot off from Naruto's blade after swinging it, being after the merging a dark shade of violet, now it cutting down every Crusader in its trajectory. After this, Naruto channeled hellfire into his blade, making it burst forth, as if it were live before speaking, in Mikado, melting cut, and like its namesake, when Naruto teleported behind a group of charging Crusaders, did the attack do its job perfectly, for when Naruto swung, the fires of amplified hell cut through them, melting them on the spot in not a second, for they just fell dead, melting right there. Looking over his shoulder, Naruto pointed his blade toward a charging enraged Crusaders, the sharp point of his blade straight at them before ushering his next attack, as the element of darkness enshrouded his obsidian blade, Yami no, darkness destruction, and like that a highly condensed beam of darkness shot off from Apocalypse, before hitting the group of Crusaders. Boom. There went the group of Crusaders, who just walked right to their death in a blaze of death and destruction, as did half of their once honored now ruined temple. The gaping hole from the attack showed half of said temple was decimated, along with the Crusaders caught in the attack's range. As Naruto ignores their pleas and begs for mercy, as he continues his attack on them, he never did see Naruki's gaze on him. Her purple eyes gazed upon his form, as he fought and killed all in his path, without a hint of remorse nor regret. She wasn't disturbed by the mass death or blood around her. If anything, she was getting used to it, and found it strangely exciting to see such things. But the things she was seeing now, the attacks, the fighting Naruto was doing, slaughtering all in his path, but a swing of his newly changed blade showed her that Naruto was much stronger than anyone thought. Looking upon him, all Naruki could do was smile happily before nuzzling him in his form, a few tears escaping her eyes. Smiling happily did she speak, ignoring the fight, death going on around her. "Otusama," she uttered. Oblivious to Naruki's word, did Naruto decapitate a Crusader, before he looked over his shoulder to see a group of them coming, so grasping his blade in a spear-like fashion, did he hurl it at them. thus resulting in 10 of them all being stabbed through before they hit the wall, stabbed through like a shish kebab. Then using his free hand, Naruto channeled darkness before facing it outward at the majority of the Crusaders, them being over 10,000 in number before speaking. Kureami no Bore, darkness volley. Suddenly orbs of darkness rapidly shot out of Naruto's free hand, each hitting the Crusaders, resulting in multiple explosions, which rocked the very temple all the more, as part of the explosions destroyed more of its main walls, and part of its roof caving in. Suddenly a shadow appeared over him, resulting in Naruki to look up only for her eyes to widen. She closed her eyes, shouting out to Naruto, "Papa. Behind you." Hearing her scream, did Naruto turn around only to see something that made his eyes flare in anger. The Crusader had shot a spell at him, most of it missing him, but some of it had hit him, but more specifically it hit Naruki. It was only a scratch, but just seeing her hurt, her bleeding made his senses go haywire. Baring his teeth, did he shift his gaze at the nervously sweating Crusader. With no time to react, Naruto was on him, his free hand grasping his neck in a vice-like grip. Snarling at the full, he opened his giant mauve teeth before biting onto the Crusader's head. He didn't hesitate, as he violently shook his head, jerking the Crusader's head violently in so many directions. That is until with the final tug. RIPPPE. Did the Crusader's head come off, blood spurting out everywhere, as Naruto heard the man's severed head in his jaw, that is before he threw it into the air, before opening his jaw even more, resulting in the man's head falling right into his mouth before he closed his mouth. Crunch. With a good loud crunch of bone breaking, flesh tearing, blood spurting, did the head inside Naruto's mouth be crunched down by his devil fangs. Blood dribbled down his mouth, as he chewed on the head before allowing a big gulp, swallowing the chewed up head down before scowling. "Meh, orcs' heads taste better," he said before spitting out an eyeball of said Crusader. While he did so, he ignored the horrified, disgusted looks from the remaining Crusaders, or the shocked yet excited expression on Naruki's face when she saw what he just did. To her that was the most awesome thing she has ever seen, second only to him killing and slaughtering the mean people around them. Spitting out teeth and remaining bone, did Naruto suddenly look down at Naruki to see her injury, only to see it closed up due to both her healing regeneration and his overwhelming presence destroying the holy power in the injury. Narrowing his eyes, did he glare through his helmet at the remaining Crusaders. Stretching his hand outward, did he speak in his demonic tone. "This is the end for you all, dying knowing this wouldn't have happened had you not followed your foolish leader Big Iban Yami no Bakuden." Big bang, destruction, darkness bomb, thus gathering darkness in the palm of his hand before blasting it forward, resulting in a big explosion. A very big explosion. Seeing the rest of them gone, either decimated by the attack or something burning alive, he mentally called his blade back, making it disappear before reappearing in his hand. After which vanished from his hand, after which he shifted Naruki a little bit in his demonic metallized arms, and did Naruto slowly look in a direction, and glare. "I know you're watching, Kami, and let this be a warning, if anything, and I do mean anything like this happens again, I'll come back, and make this look like child's play when I'm through with the next person that angers me. Till then watch yourselves, deities." With that, Naruto let his transformation go, making him be enveloped in a pillar of darkness and hellfire before it disappeared, showing him back in his normal form. Not a change was on him, but the power coming from him, all the more stronger than ever before. With that, he shifted Naruki a bit in his arms, as he walked through a portal of darkness with it closing up behind him. Heaven, Court of Kami. Silence was all that could be known in the Court of Kami, as every single deity watched Naruto, the devil of Nakai, decimate the once honorary Crusader Legion into nothing more but multiple dead corpses, with the main HQ being nothing more but completely ruined. Every deity was still reeling in shock at what just happened, while both Kami and Nagami fought down a smile at the events that just played out before them. All they could do was keep watching over Hellwing from now on, and make sure they keep a tighter leash on their soldiers lest something like this happens again. Though they couldn't themselves, but let a shiver go down their spines when they remembered Naruto's last message to them. His overbearing violet-slitted eyes glaring at them from within his demonic helmet of his devil form, made them tingle with so much excitement they would have smiled if not for the tense situation. "Hellwing Naruto, you just keep blowing every expectation I see for you. You're such an interesting being that we both can't hope to see grow further," and further were the identical thoughts of both Kami and Nagami. Nakai Hellwing Castle. Upon stepping out of the portal of darkness, did Naruto come walking out holding the sleeping soundly Naruki in his left arm. His face impassive, as ever, but his eyes did hold a somewhat content look when they glanced down at the sleeping child. It felt odd when he held the child, him a devil of such hatred, coldness, and power, that it was nigh unthinkable for him to be holding such a child. It made him slightly frown due to the alien feelings he was having, but when he felt the rushing signatures he knew all too well, did he just hold them down. "For now. Naruto-sama, you're back," was the collective shout of three females, looking up at Mito, Kushina, and the newly healed Akemi standing before him. He looked at all three of them before giving a small nod, that is before Naruki made a small noise, making Kushina snap her gaze at her, before she looked up at him with wide eyes. Seeing this, he slowly gave Naruki to her. "There you go, Kushina, the child is safe," he said, as the red-headed beauty took her child back into her arms. Her eyes swelled up in glistening tears, as her shoulders shook before she slowly embraced her child. Her little baby girl. Thank you so much Naruto-kun, she said, not knowing of the change in suffix. She then did something that made both Mito and Akemi's eyes widen, and Naruto to stand in slight surprise when she stood up and kissed his cheek before walking away back to the castle to get her little girl in bed. Naruto just stood there, his eyes wide, as can be, as both Mito and Akemi stood looking at the scene in shock. That is before she mentally smiled at the action, and just hoped her master was alright with such an action. Grasping Akemi, she bowed, as did Akemi before they both walked back to the castle. Standing there did Naruto slowly place his hand where Kushina pecked him on the cheek, that is before he frowned in confusion from the feelings coming back with full force, the feelings he had back then coming back, as well. This made him frown further before he literally stomped down on them, once again squashing these feelings within him. Looking at his castle, did he take a step forward while letting out a sigh. Why do I feel the future years are gonna be hectic? He had no idea. 7 years later. It's been a total of 7 years that's passed within Makati, ever since the kidnapping of Naruki, and Naruto getting her back after annihilating one of Heaven's legionary forces. Ever since then things have gone back to normal. Except for a few things. Naruto of course had gone back to training the 3 women, of that being Mito, Kushina, and Akemi. Since then, Naruto has made sure to push the 3 girls' training farther and farther to make them stronger with each passing day. And it has worked. Through blood, sweat, and tears did the 3 women get majorly stronger through his methods. They all showed improvement in their own fields and in their weaknesses. He had them improve on their weak points and strengthen them, as to not of them known by the enemy. Akemi, the former Biju, has shown more improvement of all, though due to all the harsh training Naruto put her through, added with the training trips he took each girl on for weeks on end. On her trip she was put through a second hell. Naruto had her fighting demons that equaled in power with the first, or in some rare cases, demons that were stronger than the first. But through all of it she proved herself time and time again, defeating each demon. She didn't come unscathed, though proving each battle was challenging, almost near death with a few. But through each battle she got stronger and wiser for both herself and her prowess in combat. She was able to train further and longer though, and was able to become stronger doing so, becoming stronger than the first Kyuubi long ago. But there was one event that almost had her killed if not for her master stopping it in time. Ever since this event Akemi had become a bit closer to the man that had given her a second chance, close enough to him she would admit she had feelings for the devil. Yet being afraid to admit them, she was caught red-handed by both Mito and Kushina, who surprisingly enough welcomed her and helped her through her state of self-depression. Through these trips he took the girls on that could last for weeks on end. When he took one woman he had the other 2 training themselves harder than ever before. If it was either Mito or Kushina, he had the 2 girls prove themselves to him, and part of their training to raid and destroy one of Lucifer or Yami's fortresses. Destroying them, and the leader of each fortress. This worked in 2 ways. The first was that he trained both Uzumakis in the harshest conditions, and that was a one-person war against an army of demons of high power, and take down their main stronghold. While the second was it delayed both Lucifer and Yami's expanding their territory, and having major losses for the both of them, made it all the more sweeter. So through it all, Naruto put the 3 women through everything, and back for the last 7 years. Making them stronger, honing their skills and reflexes. Naruto was putting them through it all to make them able to defend themselves from any and all demons. There was also something interesting that happened when Makai knew of Naruto gaining another slave and a daughter, that they started to become all the more chaotic. Hounding both Mito and Kushina got worse, and residents of Makai treated Akemi coldly. While not as bad as Naruki was treated in Nigenkai, she was still treated badly due to her being a Biju, and them having such a reputation that has shamed Makai for so very long. It came to a point where Naruto received a letter from a demon named Dragnori, who had a personal grudge against the first for killing his mate and children and mate, and has held an immense hatred for the Kyuubi and Biju as one. Thus this demon lord had said if he were to hand over Akemi, he would give him several forbidden spell books and 6 of his best slaves. Now normally if Naruto was the same one from his past, he would have accepted just for the demon to shut up, but now he did something else. He had Akemi, who was terrified after reading the letter, place a few forbidden kitsune curses upon the letter that would give Ragnori a very unpleasant surprise. This action made Akemi all the more sure she had fallen for him all over again, for he was willing to keep her despite her past history as a former Biju, now kitsune demon. Her love and affection for him grew by leaps and bounds when this event happened, that it took everything she had to not just kiss him right there on the spot for keeping her. So instead she just kept the urge down, and just smiled ever so happily at him, thanking him profusely, to which he just waved her off. More things have happened though in the last 7 years, like Naruto himself, after slaughtering the Crusaders and decimating their HQ, he had undergone a shift in power, where he could sense it had spiked up in a level that surprised even him. It was so powerful that he himself had to go training even harder to control his newfound power, so as to not lose himself in a bloodlust craze. But there was one thing that has changed the most out of them all, and that was the once little child named Uzumaki Naruki, who from the tender age of 5 had developed into a healthy young hybrid girl of the age of 12. Over the course of these past 7 years did the once defenseless little girl become a preteen that took any and all training she got very seriously. Yes, that's correct, for when Naruki had become the age of 12, Naruto took to his word and gave her training, but nothing like he gave Mito, Kushina or Kemi for that matter. She was still too young to train in what he gives the older women, for if he did that training would tear her apart due to how young she was. That was why he started her on something slow and easy for her to get used to for the training he'd give her in the future years. This is for her to start controlling her yokai and honing her physical prowess, meaning increasing her strength, speed, reflexes, and senses as best she could alone. The young Uzumaki thought throughout the 7 years has not changed. She was still the hot-tempered little girl that her mother and her other 2 surrogate family members, Akemi-ni-chan and Mito Oba-chan, all loved and adored. But if there was one thing that has changed for her, that was her relationship with Naruto. Ever since he saved her from the Crusaders, did she see him in a totally different light. This different light was what Makai has now thought to Naruki being so important to Hellwing for him to do something so shocking. She saw him as her papa, her beloved father, the man she treasured as much as her lovely Ka-chan. Her ever so precious Otu-sama, her view of him was of her seeing him as both their father and master, but mostly as a father. He had kept her safe, raised her through the years. It was only natural she would see him as such. She adored him utterly and completely devoted to him. She took her training so seriously as to impress him in ways that only an intellectual child could think of. This brought her into somewhat of a limelight, portrayed as the adopted daughter of Hellwing Naruto, the supreme devil of Makai, and strongest demon titan in all of history. She was wanted by demons all over for her beautiful appearance and heritage, that being her first ever hybrid of kitsune and devil mix. But through it all, Naruki denied them, as to further show she didn't care for any of those bastard demons by beating each and every one of those lust-filled demons into the ground before killing them. She did this, and on one day beating up a few of these demons, did she receive a very rare sign of affection from her surrogate father when he patted her head. Now this would seem normal between a father and their child, but to Naruki it was a lot more. A whole lot more. Of course, this also put Naruto up even higher in Makai, as to have not only gained a slave out of the strongest named Akemi, but also a daughter of all things, thus leading him with more political shit from other demons. Though it didn't make a difference, it did get on his nerves to where he'd go to that demon's household and annihilate them on the spot for just annoying him. But there have been things that have happened to Naruto mentally that he's kept from everyone, for he himself didn't know exactly what it was, but was starting to slowly realize that it had something to do with spending time with all of the females in his life. Other than this though, not much has changed, and so we move on to our favorite band of demons, and our favorite devil in a particular little place in Makai. Circles of Makai 9 Circle Treachery. Deep within the legendary Jigoku no S-Kuru, Circles of Hell, could we find in the last circle of hell called Treachery, our group of 5 deep within. They had come to this due to Naruto's expense for both a training trip and a personal expedition for his own use. They didn't question him since this was a training trip for the 3 women, and a new experience for the 12-year-old Naruki. They had come into the circles of Makai early on, and since then been traversing it with the deadly trio of Mito, Kushina, and Akemi fighting guardians, and demonic beings within that gave them all a run for their money when they were still fighting together. They fought against demons and guardians that have only been told in legend or explained to them by Naruto himself. Demons like Agramon, the demon of fear, and of nightmares, the living embodiment that is fear. Another demon by the name of Alistair, the executioner of sinners, the demon of legend, is said to have fought in the second war against heaven. The third demon they had fought was one they almost died fighting, and that one being the guardian of the 7th circle, its name being called Amducius the Destroyer, as he is called. The fight with this demon almost cost the 3 women's lives, but they were able to beat him, leaving them very exhausted and injured greatly. They thanked their healing regeneration greatly for coming in handy. But once they came upon the 9th and the final circle did things get very hectic. Leading them was Hellwing Naruto, calm as ever, blissfully ignoring all those around him. Even if he was being followed by 3 very beautiful demonesses, and his rumored daughter who was by his side like always looking around her eyes, taking all that was the last circle of hell. The 4 other than Naruki haven't changed all that much, except for very small things like Kushina's change of clothing, becoming more like Mito's own with her wearing a battle-made kimono that fit perfectly snug on her body, showing her perfect hergless figure, wide hips, and DD bust her Nadachi held in her right hand in a reverse grip as she too walked closely by Naruto's side. Over the past 7 years, Kushina had become even more affectionate to Naruto to the point her small hugs became even more frequent, as did the ever so rare peck on his cheek. Though that has only happened 2 other times then when he saved Naruki. Slowly glancing at him did she let out a small warm happy-filled smile, as a pink hue crept up to her cheeks as she beheld his form. His endearing stature, as always flowing out of him like a raging river that she found was one of the things she loved about him. Beside her was the equally smiling Mito, who had gazed at her sister counterpart to her beloved master. The 7 years have done her good, as she and Kushina had somehow in a way gotten closer to their master than ever before. Kushina didn't know how, but he seemed a bit more open than he ever was when they first started knowing him. Of course, he was still the devil that made all of Makai shake and tremble at the mere mention of his name, his very presence striking the utmost fear into any and all residents of Makai's souls. Of course, she and Kushina still had their moments, but those happened ever so rarely, when they needed a releasing outlet for their raging emotions, especially when they got very chaotic. As for Kemi, who walked beside Naruki, she ever so randomly glanced at Naruto before looking away, as a flustered reddish hue appeared on her cheeks, which only happened when she looked at him or was in his very presence. It made her extremely happy to know she had made him give his approval to her every so often, especially when he saved her life 2 times. One on a training trip, and the other from the letter from Ragnar's. She hadn't changed much either, except for her wearing something like Kushina was, a kimono made for close combat fighting, as it was her style to do so. It is like Kushina hugging her goddess-like body, showing her perfectly shaped hips and butt, as her DD bust was shown with a small amount of cleavage due to her kimono. Her long crimson-red hair fell past her shoulder, touching her buttocks with 2 large bangs over his shoulders. Now the one who had undergone the most physical change would be the youngest of the group, being Uzumaki Naruki, standing a good 5'2" due to her good eating. Now she had a normal height for someone her age. She had a healthy pale tone like her mother, but her eyes were just like her beloved papa's. Her hair, now longer than before, was like her mother's, long to where it fell below her lower back with streaks of golden within. Her heart-shaped face with little baby fat could be seen. Lastly was her developed low C-cup bust that was developing. And fast for her age, as well. She was wearing something like her father than her mother, as she found it more fitting, since she liked to fight up close and personal. So she wore an almost exact replica of what Naruto wore, only hers mainly red in color with the Uzumaki swirl embedded upon her cloak's back. She also had a katana strapped to her left hip, with her starting to learn the basics of Kinjutsu. Upon her torso she wore a tight black t-shirt that was acting like a second skin. Upon her feet were black boots of some sort that Naruto had given her, as a part of her training, which in reality was weighted clothing. Enough said. As the group traversed deeper, and to the end of the treachery circle of Nakai, did Naruto narrow his eyes upon feeling something up ahead. This something though was in fact 2 Yaokai's signatures, one of which he already knew of. But the other he was not so sure about, for at first it was like Yami's own, but at the same time it wasn't. Who is this other person? 9th circle of Nakai treachery final floor. Within the final floor in the 9th circle of Nakai could we find Hellwing and his group finally stepping upon the final floor. And what they saw sent many of the women's faces into a state of both awe yet curiosity. Around them, spiraling up from within the ice-stick-covered column that never ended. Going on up was glaciers of sorts on the walls, and within these glaciers was living people, naked, as the day they were born, screaming an agonizing silent scream, as their bodies showed were blue or purple or even black, from the immense coldness they were suffering from within the giant glaciers. As all the women gazed around, as did Naruki, Naruto himself was staring straight ahead at something that had caught his eye. And that was actually a prison cell in the circle, known for its self-made prison with ice. He could feel that energy from before within there, and it was making him all the more interested in what exactly was inside there. He frowned though when he slowly glanced downward, only to see a pair of glowing green eyes staring back at him. He let out a grunt, getting the other female's attention, as the ice before them slowly started to crack and break apart, as a giant entity slowly rose up from beneath the giant crystallized ice sphere. This being made Naruki gaze in slight wonder, as it did the other 3 females, for they were staring up at what could be seen as a 50-foot-tall serpentine-like demon with a giant skull of a demon upon its head, with his hair being live snakes itself. His 6 limbs clenched and unclenched, showing his massive fists. The demon's green glowing eyes peered down on them all, as its yakai seemed to pulse from him. Hellwing, what in Yami-sama's name are you doing here of all places? Spoke the giant snake demon. Naruto though just gazed up at him boredly before looking over at the prison cage behind the giant demon. Taking a step forward, as he spoke he did not spare a glance toward the demon that was peering at him, as if he was the most interesting object in Nakai. That is of no concern for you, Astaroth. I'm only here for something of personal value, and it would be in your best interest to get out of our way. He said his words calm, as ever. Yet without missing a beat, Naruto stopped, as a giant fist came crashing down in front of him, making the area around them shake chaotically. Slowly glancing at the demon that blocked his path, did he meet the equally gaze of a pair of green slitted eyes staring back at him. That is impossible, Hellwing, for no one is allowed past me, unless it was Yami-sama other than him. Anyone else is to leave or die by my hand. I was assigned by my master Yami to not let anyone pass this point, and, as Lucifer's former top general, and Yami-sama's 3rd strongest commander, I will not allow anyone, even you, pass by me. Said the giant snake demon, as he clenched his 6 fists, making him arms bulge in muscle and girth. His yakai seemed to burst from him, making Mito, Kushina, and Akemi break out in a small nervous sweat. Naruki would have been harmed by this if not for Naruto standing in front of her, easily standing against the Yokai pulse. If anything, it only made his hair billow slightly. Sighing, Naruto idly glanced at the battle-ready demon before slowly glancing at the prison cage, feeling the power within slowly spiking before calming. Before anything else, what is inside that cage? Or the fact, why would a cage be in the last circle of Makai when its prison is the glaciers itself? He asked curiously. He was yet not going to admit it. The demon's name being called, slowly turned its head toward the prison, and glared at his Yokai, spiking just a bit more. You ask of something that's been kept secret, and all, but named a rumor in Makai. For within that prison cell made by Yami-sama himself is a being that Yami wants to stay locked up here. No cell in this circle can hold this being. That cell is all that's keeping that person within. For within that cell is the rumored bastard child of Yami-sama himself, if that truly answers your question, Howling. Spoke the demon guardian. Upon hearing this, Naruto's eyes widened slightly at the news. His eyes seemed to glint a bit with an interesting flicker as he looked upon the cage behind Astaroth. He knew of the rumored child of Yami, god of Makai. The child being born a special hybrid of deity and devil like himself. It made him a bit interested in what lay within that cell, but right now he had more important matters to attend to. Slowly glancing upward, did he see the glinting piece metal around Astaroth's giant neck. It was a skull medallion of sorts, but was a pure pitch black with 2 violet gems in its eye sockets. He suddenly smirked before speaking, as he let his Yokai spike just a bit. Astaroth, it is unfortunate for you that I'm not in the mood for games. Mito, Kushina, Akemi, you 3 stay back, you've done enough for today. And you Naruki, go to your mother, he said, to which all 4 nodded, with Naruki following his command without hesitation. Seeing this done, Naruto looked back at Astaroth before he let loose a small glare, as his purple eyes now shifted into a more violet one that seemed to radiate an overwhelming power. Channeling his power outward, did Naruto let out a small grin, as he watched Astaroth slither quickly at him, throwing a meteor-sized Yokai-infused punch with enough power to level half of Ninjinkai itself. Boom. Within the prison cell. The sound of an overbearing explosion rang true, shaking the very foundations of the final circle. The ice prison's cracked or shattered, rattling chains sounded from within the pitch-black prison cell. Another explosion made a figure within this prison cell twitch, the person's face hidden from view, as well as gender from the person's body too delved in the darkness. When the 3rd explosion happened, a pair of pale aqua-colored eyes slowly opened. They showed the rushing feelings of confusion, an overwhelming hatred, a vengeful anger with a slight sign of betrayal. They lazily glanced around the prison that had been the inmate's prison for so many years. That was when the person's eyes widened slightly, when suddenly looking out at the frozen hell, as it was called, did the giant guardian demon known as Astaroth full right in front of the prisoner's cage. Only the demon was missing his head. What the? Was the rough, dry yet surprisingly feminine voice from within, as the person's eyes gazed upon the once thought undefeatable guardian. The prisoner's eyes now wide, as can be seen at the dead demon in front of the prison. That is until the sound of footsteps could be heard. With Naruto, we could find him standing in front of the decapitated Astaroth's head, holding the medallion he held in his hand. He gazed at it for only a second before pocketing it away for now. After seeing Astaroth dead with a well-placed darkness-made blade, he had grown a bit bored. So to sate his boredom, and his ever-growing curiosity, he had walked over to the prison that was held within the famed bastard child of Yami. Following him quickly was the slightly stunned group of girls. As they followed after him, or in Naruki's case, ran up to his side, and looked at the prison in confusement. Coming toward the prison, did Naruto slowly glance inside only to see a shadowed figure within. He couldn't tell who or what it was because of the Yokai blocking metal cage. He did however see a pair of pale aqua blue eyes staring back into his own purple ones. His own filled with impassiveness yet slight interest, while the other was filled with both suspicion, yet a great amount of shock for some odd reason. So you're the rumored child of that oh so mighty Yami. Naruto neither cared whether he angered the person before him or not. Though he was pleasantly assured this child of Yami's held any love for him, at the sight of the prisoner's eyes blazing up in a wrathful anger at the mere mention of the god of Makai's name. That fool isn't mighty at all, he is nothing more than a liar, and a traitor even to his own family. I'd rather see him die by my hand than care for his pathetic traitorous ass. Naruto raised an eyebrow, as the cold tone the person spoke in, as it was filled with such spite and coldness that only he could give when truly annoyed. I see, so there's more to this than the rumors say, he muttered. That is before Naruto peered back into the prison, his purple eyes staring back into pale aqua ones. He looked into the eyes of the rumored legendary child of Yami, one of his greatest of enemies, and yet he didn't feel compelled to end this one's life, or just leave the prisoner locked away. If anything, he felt the urge to actually release the person within. It was an urge to do so that he was quickly getting used to. As he stared into the eyes of the bastard child of Yami, he could see the emotions clear as day, and what he was seeing made him quirk an eyebrow. Do you want to be released? He asked, and just then Naruto saw it for the briefest of seconds, a flicker of hope in his words. The brief thought of finally escaping the prison was such a great feeling. Yet there was always a price. I do, but in payment what would you want in return? The voice cold and questioning, as always. Naruto remained impassive to the question, as he just leaned forward grasping the prison's cage. You really think I want anything of physical value from you? No, I do not. All I truly want from you is information about Yami, other than that it's up to you on what you want to do when you have attained your freedom. He said, neither caring that much, seeing as his suspicion was confirmed of Yami at least having a child. He waited for a response, which he soon got after a few seconds passed. Information on my father. If it will do anything to harm him, then all I know is that his weaknesses from back then was he wasn't by any means a close combat specialist. Despite the rumors and legends, Yami is afraid to fight up close and personal due to his overall weakness in physical strength. His power lies with the elements of darkness and hellfire long-range attacks and the deity spells that bore him fruit as a deity. That is all I know before he imprisoned me in this god-forsaken prison. Raising an eyebrow, this Naruto closed his eyes in thought, replaying the information given to him. He at first, when he was younger, was told Yami was an all-around fighter that led him to be well-versed in all forms of combat. But with this new information for his battle against Yami that would most assuredly happen, he had no doubt in his mind it would bring him a somewhat edge over the deity of Makai and darkness. After a few 10 seconds passed, Naruto slowly opened his eyes before he grasped the prison's cage. Ignoring the Yaokai blocking offensive spells, he spoke. Very well, thank you for the information. I know you do not lie, for I can sense the honesty in each word you spoke. I can see you clearly despise Yami, as do I, probably not as much, but enough so to say you'd like nothing more than to see him die. And with a quick show of his ungodly strength, Naruto ripped off the cage's door like it was nothing before throwing it away from him and his group, resulting in an echoing clang of steel hitting ice. Taking a step forward, Naruto pulled a lever at his right, which made the suspended prisoner's chains slack, before lowering said prisoner to the ground, before the sounds of restraints being released with a loud click. Shortly after, the sound of slow small steps could be heard to where the shadowed person could be seen walking toward Naruto, who had Kushina, Mito Akemi, while Naruki was at his other side looking on curiously. After this, the light from the outside able to come through after being blocked for so long by the door settled in, thus giving birth to the appearance of the chained-up prisoner inside. And what everyone saw upon the person walking into the new light was quite the sight to see. What everyone saw made Naruto let out a small smirk, as what he saw, the child of Yami that had been so mysterious until now, was in reality a female, since the gender was kept secret, and a secret that's been locked up tight. And what a beautiful, interesting female she was. For upon him right before his very eyes was a woman of such beauty, despite years upon years of imprisonment, kept her goddess-like body. For the woman stood at a good 5'7" with a perfect herbless figure that one could say was purely divine in a way. Her fair slightly pink skin tone gave birth to a natural shine in the light, as her rosy pink lips showed briefly of an almost permanent frown. Her most distinguishing feature was her long, somewhat spiky pink hair that flowed past her shoulder blades, with two other bangs of her pink hair going over her shoulder. Her hair went somewhat to her mid-back, as it somewhat spiked in a natural flowing way. She wore a form-fitting sleeveless midnight black overcoat with it covering a crimson turtleneck-like shirt. Her DD cup bust looked to be restrained yet was still recognizable. Upon her left shoulder was a metal pauldron, the color of which was pitch black with streaks of violet. Strangely, the pauldron looked reminiscent to a piece of armor from Naruto's own devil form. Spikes jutted out of the pauldron that sparked ever so lightly. On her left arm down she wore black fingerless gloves with metal placings on the knuckles, while on her right arm down had the same glove, only on up was a red ribbon of some sort tied around her right arm. Below she wore a crimson-colored miniskirt that left an underlying teasing visage, and also resulted in showing her perfectly slender legs. Her knee-high black combat boots with crimson metal spiked greaves strapped over, said boots gave fruit to her more unique appearance. Lastly, strapped on her left side was a crimson cape of sorts that bore no symbolization, other than it having the mark of Yami's army crossed out, signifying the woman's past with the deity's army forever gone. Lastly, attached behind her waist and down to her right was a black leather case about 5 feet in length. Well, from what could be seen, a metal handle of some sort that glinted in the light, as did the woman's long pink hair. Upon looking at the woman, Naruto could definitely see how this woman gave off his same type of energy, seeing as she was the famed hybrid of a god and a devil like himself. He couldn't help but mentally chuckle at this new revelation. Truly it was an interesting concept, yet ironic as well. The devil race has always been mortal enemies to the deities, yet to see cross of the two in the person he saw now made him beg to question the deity of Makai's way of thinking. Then again, the fool has been said to be slightly insane. He pushed away those thoughts for now. As he beheld the woman before him, he could see his slaves were surprised at her appearance, or in Naruki's case, awed at such a beautiful woman's presence such as hers. Truly, even he had to admit the woman's appearance was unique. Greatly so. But he was more inclined to the woman's attitude and power than appearance overall. But what he didn't know was the woman was checking him out as well. Her eyes trailed over his appearance. What she saw was a handsome-looking male that could ever rarely be seen in the realm of Makai, where demons of such disgusting nature it was ever so rare to find a handsome-looking one out of any. But what she really saw was the man's signature markings that gave fruit to her suspicions of who exactly was before her. Even in her time of being locked up, she always heard news from the outside from Astaroth giving her that much. And she liked what she saw. The power coming off this man was enough to make her question if he was stronger than her own father Yami, for it just kept growing and growing by the second. Yet she could feel he was the same, as she was only a full-blooded devil while she was half of the same race. She knew her power was immense for sure, but the power she sensed from Naruto's made her own look ever so small in comparison. It was like comparing a deer to a lion. No match whatsoever, and that thought strangely excited her in a way. Was it because of the enticing feeling of finding someone who could utterly annihilate you so easily? She didn't know, but for now all she will do is pay her respects to the man of Makai's legends. Slowly she kneeled down, bowing her head. As she did so, my greatest of respects for freeing me despite the information I gave you. This is the most someone has ever done for me. To have freed me from my eternal imprisonment set by my father, you have gained my unending respect and undying loyalty. As my mother has taught me before she died, to you howling Naruto, famed supreme devil of Makai, and strongest demon titan, I hereby swear my allegiance to you forever. She said her tone was cold, as always, yet dignified, and respectful to the one she was speaking to. Now upon hearing this, Naruto raised an eyebrow. He wasn't expecting something like this, especially not from the child of his second most hated enemy, second only to Lucifer himself. Then again, the woman hates her father with an undying hatred of some kind. Plus he could sense her power, and while it was nothing compared to his own, it was nothing to sneeze at. It's around Kushina's, and Mito's own level if anything interesting. Looking down at the woman kneeling before him, did he eye her for a few seconds before letting out a sigh. I see, then get up, for if honor does compel you to do this, then I shall not stop you. All I will say is that if you truly are wanting this, then you are welcome to do so, but do tell me the name of my new ally. He asked, to which the woman slowly stood back up to his request before giving a subtle nod. I thank you graciously for accepting. As for my name, it has been so long that I have almost forgotten it. My alias would be Lightning, but the name my mother gave me would be Claire Nightwing Claire, she said with a small smile, which seemed to light up her face all the more, thus making her all the more enticing. With that, Naruto and his group just gained another one to their group of, and very special ally in the fight against Lucifer and Yami. Though if only Naruto truly knew how much Claire would be to him in the future. Oh, if only he knew. Howling Castle, Naruto's bedroom. Back at Howling Castle, the group of 5, now 6, returned to the castle, as well as giving Claire a place to stay seen, as she had nowhere to go. It took a while to get back, but they did, and upon doing so did they situate themselves, as well as having the girls set up Claire's own room within the giant castle. Surprisingly, the girls were already growing attached to Claire in such a small amount of time. It surprised even Naruto. Hell, even Naruki was calling her Light-Ni-chan, if you could really believe it. Hell, Mito, Kushina, and Akemi took to her very quickly, like when Naruki started to take to her. Since the trip back to the castle from the circles of Makai was a 4-day trip, it was understandable. Even the cold lightning had taken to the 4 girls in just those 4 days, especially Naruki. The exuberant preteen was an energetic little thing that always made a smile come up on her face, despite how small it was. It was like she had gained a new little sister to the new life she was given. But the woman in just those 4 days could see that her new ally, and more so leader, was a strange man yet a dependable, powerful entity of that she was most definitely sure of. She's been told of his latest actions against Lucifer, Yami, and even against heaven itself, and it honestly shocked her. To hear this man she allied herself with, fought and rebelled against all possible supernovas of Makai, and attacked one of heaven's most powerful legionary forces, despite it being they provoked him, was just plain insane. Yet impressive all the same. Her respect for him grew by leaps and bounds with each action he's done in the past told to her by Mito or Kushina, but the true thing that she respected was that he wasn't some lust-filled being like many others in Makai. To have so many beautiful women in his presence and not stare at them lustfully like a wild dog was something that impressed her. At the moment within Naruto's very room, we could find him asleep in his bed, along with both Mito and Kushina, seeing as they surprisingly enough shared the same bed with him. Not in a physically romantic sense of course, but with them sleeping on one side, and he on the other, yet at times during the past 7 years, as he caught them sleeping near his body or to the extreme hugging themselves to his body when he first wakes up. Though right now we could find him sweating with his eyes clenched tight, as he kept shifting his head back and forth, his hands clenched the sheets tightly, borderline ripping them, as he dreamt his dream. But was it somehow a nightmare with how he was acting? In the depths of his mind we could find Naruto holding and clutching his head in some type of pain, as multiple voices of a woman ranging from a young girl to a child passed him by. It made him hit the ground beneath his feet, causing it to crater and reshape, as it was his mind. Letting out a small grunt of discomfort, did Naruto try to block out the voices in his head. Naruto saw him. Look, I did it. spoke a young girl's voice, her long purple hair framing her childish face, her white excited ruby red eyes looking at him with such glee only a child could give, as a big grin split her face. What? Naruto-kun, I'll catch up to you, just you wait, I will be the best apprentice you ever had, said an older yet same voice of the young girl only appearing much older, around the same age as Naruki. The girl's sharp ruby orbs gazed up at him with a happy smile adoring her face. It can't be no. Naruto-kun, I just wish this could all end, but like you've taught me, war is never ending in Makai or in the other two realms. It's a disease that never goes away, no matter how much you wish it to just disappear. Lucifer's intent though is worse than anything, and one day it's going to rupture Makai, unless something happens, spoke the same girl only older than before, around the age of 18, her face now not a single shred of baby fat, yet her heart-shaped face desirable by all. Her narrow gentle ruby gems with her long flowing purple hair framing her face perfectly, giving her the more divine serene appearance. Naruto's eyes snapped open upon seeing this other memory before he repeatedly smashed his fist into the floor, causing a crater each time, getting bigger and bigger. That is before the same woman's voice spoke, only this time it was different. Slowly appearing in front of his kneeling position was the same woman, only this time her face was smiling at him. Somehow she was truly looking right at him, tears of both sadness and love cascading down her face. A somewhat fearful yet pleading expression upon her face. Her words soft as silk and gentle as the softest breeze echoed into his ears. Naruto, help, please help me. Naruto couldn't lost it. His anguished outraged roar sounded from within the depths of his mind before on the outside. Naruto's eyes snapped open before he rose up with a quick snap. His eyes were wide as his shoulders trembled, sweat of nervousness poured down from his head and face. He grasped his face with his hand while muttering, "Are you calling for me, Mia?" The end. Thanks for watching my video, and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic. Link is in the description. See you next time. Till then, sayonara.